This guy fell from a plane and slammed right into a building's window. The couple inside, who were just about to do some secret work, was furious. The secretary doesn't have much time to seduce her boss. After the crash, the protagonist was exhausted and lay there for a few minutes to rest. Then, a little girl startled him, asking if he was a beggar and if he was tired because he was hungry. The MC sat up to rest a bit more and thanked the girl for offering him some food. He felt embarrassed seeing how girls in this era wear such short and revealing clothes. The truth is, 1 hour earlier, 3 people were at the top of a cliff. They told a boy that in his next life, he should have better luck. At that exact moment, an explosion shook the entire region, an energy so massive that the 4 corners of the world felt its effects. A man emerged and leaped up to the clouds. He had finally finished his training. When he reached the sky, he realized the landscape was totally different from what he remembered. A voice called out to him, asking to talk. He obeyed and landed in front of a man who was actually a hologram. He explained that establishing Wu's foundation took 2,000 years. Wu's old master said that so much time had likely passed that the world's spiritual energy is now weak or even depleted. Hearing this, the protagonist was terrified to think he had been training for 2,000 years. He had only planned for 2 days. When the hologram disappeared, Wu flew off to see with his own eyes that 2,000 years had indeed passed. That was when he saw 2 guys kicking another man off the cliff. Even though he didn't sense any energy coming from them, the men shot at him to eliminate witnesses. Wu stopped the attacks from those strange weapons with ease. He used a tiny fraction of his energy and reflected the attacks back at the men. Unexpectedly, the men couldn't defend themselves and fell down dead. The protagonist went down to the boy at the bottom of the cliff. Next to him was a strange, glowing device. Curious, he picked it up and heard a voice screaming. This device had no spiritual energy, but could transmit a voice. This confirmed that 2,000 years had passed and strange things existed now. There must be dangers he doesn't know about, so assuming a new identity seemed like the best choice. Looking at the boy, he said he would keep his things and give him a proper burial. Now wearing the young man's appearance, he thought this person must have had a lot of problems to meet such an end. As an extra reward, he decided to seek revenge for him. In a shop in Haijo City, a girl was depressed because she didn't want to marry the person her grandfather had chosen. Her friend assured her that as long as she was there, her parents wouldn't force her into marriage. The protagonist was flying around the world when he was almost run over by a giant metal flying creature. That was the moment he crashed and interrupted that couple from having their secret fun. When he fell and decided to rest, that little girl was kind and gave him food. An elegantly dressed woman was looking for the girl and finally found her. The little girl jumped up quickly to go to her mother. One of the woman's bodyguards moved even faster and almost hit him. The man grabbed his head and arm at the same time, trying to twist his arm and smash his head against the bench. But using just his mental energy, the protagonist made the guy fly back several meters. Meanwhile, the little girl started clapping, saying the big brother was very strong. Worried, the mother asked what Yin Yin was doing with that man. After hearing her daughter's explanation, the woman ordered the bodyguard to apologize for his behavior. Bowing, he apologized to the protagonist sitting on the bench, claiming he suspected he was a kidnapper. The woman gently thanked him for taking care of her daughter and handed him a package. The car was ready to leave, but the girl wanted to say goodbye to the friend she had made. As he held the girl's hands, he realized that despite her age, she had a strange illness. He thought curing her wouldn't be difficult. So, he whispered to the girl that this pill was a piece of candy, and she should eat it when she wasn't feeling well. He said goodbye to the family, and the driver informed them that the appointment with the country's best doctor was scheduled. The driver also noticed the girl was holding something strange. The girl insisted on playing with it before throwing it away. The girl was fascinated by the pill, but then a sudden, sharp pain made her faint. Extremely worried, the mother ordered them to drive as fast as possible to find the miracle doctor. The girl didn't forget the big brother's words and held onto the pill tightly. At Dr. Shu's residence, known as Divine Hands, the doctor carefully observes through the window. At that moment, a couple rushes in, and the woman pleads with him to save her daughter. Calmly, the doctor reassures Mrs. Wang, explaining that healing the sick is his duty, and he will therefore examine the young girl. After a careful examination, however, the doctor regretfully informs them that nothing can be done, asking the mother to prepare for the worst. At this, the woman falls to her knees and begs Dr. Zhu to save Yin Yin. She declares she's willing to die to cure her, but the doctor replies that all he can do is alleviate her pain. He then explains that to restore Yin Yin's health, the Nine Revolving Rejuvenation Pill would be needed, a divine medicine from 2,000 years ago, whose formula has been lost. Although he laments only possessing a fragment of the recipe, he suddenly notices a strange smell coming from the girl. Soon after, he finds something in Yin Yin's dress pocket. Holding the pill, the doctor notices that its aroma and shape exactly match the formula's description, while the mother wonders how it got there. At that instant, she remembers that a young man gave the pill to Yin Yin, claiming it could help her heal. Upon hearing this, Dr. Shu announces that the object might be the Nine Revolving Rejuvenation Pill. Surprised, the mother asks if this means Yin Yin can be saved. Raising his arms, the doctor wonders who could possibly outboast him now. In a confident tone, he asserts that Yin Yin will recover after a period of rest, leading the mother to thank him, deeply moved. Still, he clarifies that the thanks shouldn't be directed at him, but rather at the young man who delivered the pill. He then asks Mrs. Wang to introduce him to the young man, but she replies that she doesn't know him either. At that moment, the woman realizes the young man must have noticed Yin Yin wasn't well, which is why he offered the medicine. Her husband adds that they found the young man at Haiju University, leading the doctor to speculate if he might be a student. Mrs. Wang agrees they need to go to the university and states that their family must repay such kindness. To Dr. Shui, a sacred being must be living as a mere student, and it's necessary to help him keep his identity a secret. Reinforcing this idea, the woman states that someone capable of providing such a high-grade pill cannot be ordinary, and the Wang family needs to strengthen this relationship. Meanwhile, Yewu walks down a busy street when his phone, which hadn't rung in a long time, suddenly starts ringing. While eating, the young man answers the call, and a voice questions why the people sent to pick him up ended up losing track of him. From the other end of the line comes an invitation to lunch, causing Yewu to immediately recognize that voice. A tear rolls down his face as the memory of a woman offering him a sweet treat flashes in his mind. He confirms he'll arrive in time for lunch, and at the same time, wonders why that aunt's voice sounds so similar to his master's wife's. He then reflects on already having met a young man with the same name as his, and now a woman with a familiar voice, questioning if it's all just coincidence or if there's something more to it. Before leaving, his master left some belongings stored at Wanbao Lu, a place where he hopes to find answers to these questions. For now, he decides to meet Aunt Zhou first, and arrives at a residence in Yunwu Mountain Villa, where a voice complains about the unexpected visit. Soon after, another voice curiously comments, wondering if Yewu is handsome. Jiang Xiaoru asserts that appearance doesn't fill the stomach, but Lin Qianqian teases her, mentioning someone named Zheng Xiong. In response, Jiang Xiaoru compares him to Zheng Xiong, the student council president, while Lin Qianqian laughs at the situation. Suddenly, a male voice asks if Aunt Zhou is home, leading Jiang Xiaoru to comment that the tone is quite pleasant. Looking through the peephole, Yewu wonders if this place is indeed the Yunwu Mountain Villa mentioned by his aunt. The two young women comment that the young man is handsome, but they show concern about being alone in the house. Lin Qianqian suggests calling the Lion King to scare him away, while Jiang Xiaoru fears the animal might hurt the visitor, though she eventually agrees. The Lion King advances towards the gate, and Lin Qianqian questions if he'll manage to scare the young man. The creature roars at Yewu, making Jiang Xiaoru recall that the Lion King was the national competition champion the previous year. Undeterred, Yewu approaches the gate, pets the animal, and comments that it's just a dog, until a female voice asks if he is Wu. At that instant, the memory of his master's wife returns forcefully, making him wonder if that woman is really her. Yewu calls her his master's wife, but she questions this form of address. She asks him to call her Aunt Zhou, just as he did when he was little, and he readily agrees. Jiang Xiaoru runs to hug her mother, while Yewu notes her resemblance to his master's wife. Soon after, the girl complains that he scared Lion King. At this, her mother gives her a light tap on the head. Firmly, she scolds her daughter for being rude and reminds her that she used to follow Wu Gei everywhere. Jiang Xiaoru then asks if that man is really Ye Wu. Her mother reminds her that as a child, she used to say she'd marry Wu when she grew up. Aunt Zhou says she needs to take care of some things and asks her daughter to show the visitor around the house. He greets her, calling her sister Xiaoru, but she responds by asking him to keep his distance. As he watches Jiang Xiaoru walk away, Ye Wu remembers how his master's wife had always been like family to him. Because of this, he decides that he will continue to treat her like his own family, even after 2,000 years. Suddenly, he feels something strange and stops in his tracks. A demonic formation appears around the village. This formation begins to consume the vitality of his master's family, with the clear intention of wiping out their entire lineage. He comments that whoever set up such a formation hasn't even learned the basics, and a group from 2,000 years ago would have no difficulty dealing with it. Zhang Xiaoru asks if he also finds it hard to believe what he's seeing, comparing the scene to the open field, and he agrees it's unbelievable. Then, she turns to tell him that the place used to be the largest abandoned property in Haizhu. She also says that 18 years ago, her grandfather found a feng shui master who altered the earth's veins, transforming the place into the prime residential area for the wealthy. Ye Wu asks if this feng shui master is powerful. She comments that, although she doesn't fully believe in it, the man is quite famous in the world of metaphysics. She adds that not long ago, her grandfather became seriously ill and was saved by this same master. To Ye Wu, the story of someone who modified the earth's veins 18 years ago and then saved Mr. Zhang sounds suspicious, leading him to decide to watch him closely. Finally, she changes the subject and invites him to continue looking around the place. They walk down the mansion corridor until a man approaches, calling for the young lady and young master Ye Wu. He then informs them that lunch is ready and the mistress is waiting, but Jiang Xiaoru corrects him, asking him to just call him Ye Wu. At this, he smiles and decides he'll be kinder to everyone, seeing as Master Zhou's wife shows such kindness. After lunch, Jiang Xiaoru collapses onto her bed, completely exhausted. A little later, she sits up and complains to Lin Qianqian that country bumpkin is a flatterer with ulterior motives, especially since her mother even allowed him to stay in the mansion. Lin Qianqian advises her to stay at school and avoid coming home, also suggesting she join Professor Wang's project team. Zhang Xiaoru decides she'll call Professor Wang as soon as classes start, intending to join the team, and also plans a month-long vacation for the servants, leaving Ye Wu all alone. Lin Qianqian considers this cruel, but the young woman retorts that if he's willing to carry bricks and collect trash, he'll earn enough money not to starve. Outside, Ye Wu hears the entire conversation, but he reassures Aunt Zhou, telling her that everything is fine. Then, he hands her a pill inherited from his family, explaining that its health benefits will be particularly good for Grandpa Jiang. With Aunt Zhou's help, he gets a legal identity and plans to go to Haizhu University the next day, after resting. Suddenly, he feels a strong murderous intent. A group of men runs through the forest with orders to kill the boy from Yunwu village, seeking to avenge the deaths of their leaders. They hide among the bushes, watching the village entrance carefully. Ye Wu stands still before the open gate, clearly sensing their presence. Soon after, the men quickly surround him. One of them throws a dagger in his direction. However, Ye Wu dodges the attack with an agile move. Then, the group moves in to attack him, while one of the men accuses him of having killed their comrades. The group leader states that Ye Wu has the courage to kill and believes he's tired of living. He then offers the young man two choices: options. The first is to kneel and take his own life. However, as he was about to announce the second option, Ye-woo suddenly vanishes, leaving the others wondering where he went. One of the men informs the boss that their target is gone, and the leader remarks that someone capable of killing his two best men can't be ordinary. Because of this, he orders the group to split up and search the area, as he believes Ye-woo is still nearby. Soon after, he decides to use his secret weapon, an artifact capable of finding someone even if they flee to the ends of the earth. To his surprise, he notices the object's pointer aiming right at himself. At that very moment, Ye-woo appears behind him and asks what that could be, making the leader realize, too late, that the young man was right at his back. The young man strikes him with an object, knocking him to the ground while the man mumbles about someone being there. Ye-woo demands that the tied-up men reveal who they are and why they are hunting him. However, one of them informs his boss that they were captured before they could even act. The leader concludes that the young man's abilities surpass those of a common martial master, but he finds this other individual equally frightening. Because of this, he decides it's better to take the secret to his grave. Immediately after, all the men start bleeding from their mouths. Ye-woo observes the bodies and wonders what kind of person managed to anger him so much that he'd send death squads who resort to suicide by poison. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he concludes that he needs to train even harder, as the mastermind behind this clearly isn't an ordinary person. With this in mind, he decides to head to Haiju University, aiming to better understand the current era. Meanwhile, in a control room, a superior orders a check on Hayes' team's location, as there's no news from them. Soon after, the team leader is informed that the vital signs of all 5 members have disappeared. A figure shrouded in shadows questions if everyone is dead. Drone footage reveals signs of struggle at the location where the vital signs vanished, but no other clues are found. He slams his hand down on the table, calling them a bunch of idiots. Immediately after, a message is sent to a new group. The order to send someone truly competent to kill him reaches a new squad. Meanwhile, Ye-woo gets off a bus in the city. As he walks, he reflects that the deadly weapons of the current era are terrifying, and because of this, he needs to act discreetly to avoid trouble. As he proceeds down the street, he concludes he wouldn't stand a chance of surviving if he provoked those machines. Suddenly, a man passing by him clutches his chest. Ye-woo turns around, noticing the strange situation, while people nearby warn him to be careful, claiming the old man is trying to trick him. Witnessing this, he questions the indifference present in this chaotic world, right at the moment the man collapses to the ground. Recalling his master's words, who said that when walking through the mortal world he should act in the face of injustice, he decides to intervene and places a pill in the man's mouth. Shortly after, the man stands up, and Ye-woo comments that he was lucky to have found him. He then walks away, asking those present to be good people. Another man helps the recovered man steady himself and asks how he's feeling, while the man himself wonders how he could be well after the attack he suffered. In his mind, a memory surfaces. Amidst the daze, a young man gave him a pill, and upon waking, he felt as if he had never been sick. Because of this, he orders them to spare no effort in finding his benefactor, and his subordinate promptly agrees. Birds flew over the Haiju University campus. Inside the classroom, Lin Qianqian celebrated finally escaping the country bumpkin, while Jiang Xiaoru agreed that with school starting, her mother wouldn't be able to pressure her anymore. A classmate mentioned a new transfer student arriving, but Jiang Xiaoru scolded her for always thinking about boys. Soon after, the teacher asked for silence and welcomed the new classmate. As soon as the student entered, the girls started commenting on his good looks and how familiar he seemed. Jiang Xiaoru and Lin Qianqian debated whether it could be the same guy, but eventually concluded it was just a coincidence. Next, the teacher asked the new student to introduce himself to the class. He turned to the class and introduced himself as Ye Beichen, choosing to use his real name. The female students whispered about his brief introduction, and the teacher offered to find him a seat. Hearing the name, Jiang Xiaoru felt relieved, realizing that even though the surname was the same, his given name sounded much better. One of the students raised her hand and offered the empty seat beside her. However, the teacher turned to Jiang Xiaoru and asked her opinion on the matter. The young woman replied that she would also like to sit with Ye. The teacher started to speak, trying to make a decision. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen walked down the classroom aisle, even as the student called for him to sit next to her. He approached another student, asked if he could sit there, and the girl readily agreed. Some students commented that Jiang Xiaoru seemed interested in the newcomer and decided they would warn him after class. Shortly after, a group of guys surrounded Ye Beichen in the hallway and asked if he'd ever heard of Zhu Shang from Haiju University. The group leader warned him to stay away from Jiang Xiaoru, and Ye agreed, thinking it was best to avoid trouble. As he walked away, he promised to keep 1,000,000 miles away from her, which made the others consider him clever. Despite his agreement, Ye found the guy arrogant and discreetly cast a fire spell. The group walked off, bragging, until suddenly the leader's hair caught fire. Someone shouted for them to put out the flames, while Ye Beichen calmly walked away from the scene. Reflecting, he concluded that using just half his power had been enough, and wondered what the point was of showing off strength without any real cultivation. With that, he decided to go to the library to better understand this era. Elsewhere on campus, a student complained to Jiang Xiaoru that Ye had invited her, but then sat next to another girl. Suddenly, both of them saw Ye walking in their direction and wondered if he was looking for one of them. He walked right past, only briefly noticing Jiang Xiaoru and her friend. At that moment, a bird flew overhead and ended up pooping on Ye Beichen's foot. Quickly, he knelt in front of Jiang Xiaoru to wipe off the bird poop. Lin Qianqian found the scene romantic, believing the guy had knelt to confess his feelings to Xiaoru. At this, Jiang Xiaoru declared she was still too young to date and ran off. Ye Beichen stood up and grumbled, explaining that he wasn't declaring his love, but just trying to clean the mess the bird had left. From a distance, the leader of the earlier group watched the scene and convinced that Ye was confessing to Zhang Xiaoru, swore he would kill him. One of the men comments that the boy entered the guarded library, while his partner tells him to calm down and continues sharpening knives. Another man, squatting, carefully sharpens his blade, planning to castrate someone so they'll never bother his goddess again. Inside the library, Ye Beichen is studying a book on cultivation. A group watches him, and Lin Qianqian calls him a fool for learning pinyin. Soon after, he spots a board with familiar inscriptions, believing it holds records of high-level cultivation methods. The group starts mocking him when Ye Beichen heads towards the ancient documents room, finding it amusing that someone just learning the basics would want to read such complex texts. The noise ends up waking a man who was sleeping, leaning against a bookshelf, prompting him to ask who was causing all the commotion. A guard appears next to Professor Wang and demands silence, reminding everyone that this is still a place of study. He then asks if the professor needs a book, but Professor Wang replies that he came to retrieve ancient documents for a project. Upon reaching the door, Professor Wang realizes someone has entered the room, and the guard apologizes for leaving his post unattended. Without wasting time, he rushes inside, promising to capture the intruder. Inside, Ye Beichen is studying a book on combat when he's interrupted by the guard, who warns him that unauthorized entry is forbidden. The guard grabs the young man's shoulder and orders him to leave immediately. Calmly, Ye Beichen simply asks why he can't read. The guard scoffs at his presumption, saying that not even the professor has fully understood those texts. At that moment, Professor Wang approaches and asks the young man to carefully put the precious document back. When the guard offers to throw him out, he's stopped as the professor recognizes Ye Beichen's familiar face. Professor Wang comes even closer and identifies Ye Beichen as his benefactor. Still, the guard insists on punishing him, but the professor demands that he apologize to his young friend. Only then does the guard realize he has offended someone with a powerful connection while trying to please his superior. A crowd begins to gather, questioning why the rules don't seem to apply to Ye Beichen. Calmly, Professor Wang simply comments that those boys enjoy making noise. For him, the situation turns into an opportunity to test if his benefactor truly understands the ancient texts. With that, the professor turns and asks Ye Beichen to demonstrate something. The young man begins to read the text aloud, describing a sequence of martial arts movements. The professor watches everything with an expression of complete astonishment. As Ye Beichen continues to recite, the professor explains that every word corresponds exactly to his own art, even with the incomplete text, causing the guard to fall to the floor in shock. The crowd watches from below and, judging by the professor's reaction, realizes the reading was correct. Ye Beichen turns and asks if the man is okay. He then rushes to support Professor Wang, who starts to faint but insists it's nothing. Shortly after, the professor finally recognizes him as the young man who gave him a pill. Upon this, Ye Beichen concludes that he's just faking it to try and get more of his pills. Without delay, he announces he has something to take care of and rushes out, leaving Professor Wang to wonder if his benefactor always acts like the wind. Soon after, the professor orders the guard to check which book his young friend had borrowed. The guard finds and presents a volume titled Learn Pinyin with Me. Confused, Professor Wang concludes there must be a profound meaning behind that choice and decides to study the book himself. Outside, the men see Ye Beichen leave and decide to follow him. He realizes that, at last, they've come for him. He also notices two different groups following him. With a slight smile, he decides he'll have some fun with the situation. A few hours later, he arrives at the gates of Yunwu village and turns around, asking his followers if they don't want to take a break. Surprised to have been discovered, three men jump over the gate. The one wielding the blade declares that this is the perfect moment to castrate him. Suddenly, another person leaps over the vegetation at high speed. The newcomer charges directly at the man with the blade. With a precise kick, he sends him flying. Meanwhile, the second group surrounds Ye Beichen and orders him to return the item. One of them threatens him, demanding its immediate surrender, but he merely asks what they're talking about. Without waiting for a response, one of the men tries to attack him. At that instant, Ye Beichen begins to float and states that they've conveniently offered themselves up for training. One of them shouts to chase the boy who tried to escape, but suddenly, everyone is paralyzed. Trapped by chains, they realize they were tricked and beg for freedom. He then explains that someone behind the village had set up a sinister formation, and he was thinking of how to destroy it. Seizing the opportunity, he uses the trap's own energy to break the formation. He then declares that since they voluntarily gave themselves up, they will be used for a good purpose. All the collected energy is directed at a single target. The attack results in a huge explosion within the property. Far away, an older man spits blood and wonders who is capable of destroying his formation. Sitting among the wreckage, he calls out for someone. A young man named Alan presents himself, and his master orders him to go to Haizhu immediately to investigate what happened. Watching from a distance, another man realizes the boy eliminated all his troops and decides to request a special team from his superior to kill him. Under the moon, a voice declares that no matter who he is or how strong he becomes, anyone who dares to compete with them will die. Very far away, Ye Beichen walks down a busy street, wondering why he's sneezing. At that moment, a young man running in the same direction suddenly spots him. Unable to stop in time, he ends up colliding with Ye Beichen's back. The man stands up and faces Ye Beichen, staring at him in silence for a moment. Then, he dashes off at high speed, running straight past him. Ye Beichen suddenly turns around, shouting that his wallet is gone. The thief looks back as he continues to flee. Sitting in an alley, Zhang Ziwen throws the empty wallet to the ground, complaining about having wasted his time. Later, in the male dormitory of Haizhou University, Ye Beichen walks calmly down the corridor. He stops in front of room 601, and a voice from inside asks who it is. Zhang Ziwen opens the door and comes face to face with Ye Beichen. As he looks closer, Ye Beichen feels that face looks looks familiar. Soon after, he recognizes him as the man who stole his wallet, while Zhang Ziwen wonders how that could be possible. Even so, Ye Beichen decides to pretend he knows nothing, since they will now be roommates. With a smile, he introduces himself as Ye Beichen, a freshman newly arrived at the dorm. Zhang Ziwen also introduces himself and, overwhelmed by guilt, decides to treat him very well, inviting him inside. Upon entering the room, Ye Beichen comments that it's the portrait of a 21st century dormitory. To celebrate their first meeting, Zhang Ziwen invites him for a late-night snack. In the courtyard, he explains it's nothing special, just what was available at the moment. A young woman approaches, bringing the food, and Ye Beichen recognizes her as Wu Ting. She also recognizes him and asks what he's doing there so late. She then explains that she works part-time at that place. At another table, a man bangs his fist and complains that his grilled fish still hasn't arrived. Wu Ting apologizes and assures him the dish will be ready soon, but he demands compensation for the lost time. Insisting that apologies won't do, he starts to pressure her, leaving her unsure how to react. Soon after, he suggests she accompany him to a hotel room as payment, causing the young woman to beg him to stop. The man stands up and asks if she's being disrespectful. Then, he grabs her arm forcefully, questions if she knows who she's talking to, and forcibly invites her to the hotel next door. At that moment, Ye Beichen's hand intercepts the aggressor's arm. The customer turns furious, asking who dares to meddle in his affairs, while his companion threatens Ye Beichen. Zhang Ziwen suggests calling the police, but Ye Beichen states he can't just stand there and orders the two men to back off. The man points at him and tells his henchmen to attack. One of the men charges at him, shouting for him to die. Then one of them swings a glass bottle in his direction. Without difficulty, Ye takes down the men, defeating each with a single blow. Zhang Ziwen watches the scene stunned, unable to believe his friend managed to beat them all. Wu Ting is also surprised and wonders if her classmate practices martial arts. The group leader can barely accept what just happened. Ye Beichen holds one of the henchmen and calmly states that he isn't easily scared. The man still tries to advance with a pair of handcuffs, but Ye Beichen simply shows him the key. Completely defeated, the aggressor kneels on the ground and apologizes for what he did. Wu Ting thanks him for his help, and he replies that there's no need for formalities between colleagues. As it's already late, he asks Wu Ting what time she's going home, and she asks him to walk her. He takes her hand and they walk together. During the journey, he asks why she works until so late, and Wu Ting explains that her mother is sick. Suddenly, Ye Beichen stops walking and looks up. She asks what's wrong, but he just says he got distracted and resumes their path. When they arrive at her doorstep, the two say goodbye. After Wu Ting goes inside, he turns and observes the energy emanating from the building. Once again, he feels that familiar aura and recognizes it as spiritual energy. The intense concentration of this energy indicates that the place is special and needs to be investigated. At that moment, he seems to have an idea how to do it. The next day, Zhu Sheng and his men find their target in a bathroom and declare they will have their revenge. They approach from behind, cover the person with a large sack, and prepare to beat them. Loud screams from the men's restroom caught the attention of everyone outside. Inside, the attackers knelt, begging for forgiveness. But Ye Beichen wondered if it could really be that simple. Seeing this, Zhu Sheng asked what it would take for them to be released. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen grabbed him and demanded a price. Zhu Sheng offered 100 as an attempt to make a deal. The offer was refused with a slap, followed by a question of whether he was being treated like a beggar, which made the aggressor raise the amount to 1,000. Even so, another punch followed, leading Zhu Sheng to wonder if his life was worth so little. Feeling the pain, he asked Ye Beichen to stop hitting him, questioning if 1,000 wasn't enough. Then, the demand for 10,000 came, leaving the other completely shocked by the requested amount. As he left with the money in hand, Ye Beichen remarked that 100,000 would be enough to rent a house, while the group bid him a respectful farewell. Among them, one of the men questioned whether they should accept such humiliation, but Zhu Sheng decided it was best not to tell anyone about what happened. Soon after, he decided they would treat their injuries first, and only later think about how to deal with that kid. In a classroom, the teacher announced they would begin a new lesson. At that moment, Ye Beichen turned to Wu Ting and asked if her family was looking for a tenant, explaining that he'd seen the sign on their door. He then offered to rent the place, surprising her with the unexpected proposal. Without beating around the bush, he confirmed his intention and stated he already had the rent money ready. Annoyed by the murmuring during class, the teacher reprimanded him and threw a piece of chalk in his direction. In response, he advised her to take some medicine, claiming her health seemed to be getting worse. Irritated by the comment, the teacher demanded to know exactly what he had said. Trying to smooth things over, Ye Beichen attempted to explain himself. Still, she ordered him to leave the classroom, leading him to decide to study on his own in the library. Before leaving, he asked Wu Ting to remember to keep the room available for him. After he left, the teacher decided to continue the lesson as usual. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Professor Wang on the other end. The professor requested that she invite Ye Beichen to join his new project team, and she agreed to look for him immediately. Soon after, she turned to the class and asked who Ye Beichen was. Wu Ting raised her hand and informed her that he was the student who had just been expelled from class. Realizing she might have offended someone important, the teacher rushed out. Meanwhile, Ye was sitting in the library, reading calmly. After some time, the teacher finally found him, and he asked why she was there instead of teaching class. Approaching cautiously, she apologized for her previous behavior. She then explained that Professor Wang had personally invited him to join the team, admitting she had been wrong about him. Pretending not to know what she was talking about, Ye Beichen reacted with disinterest, while the teacher informed him the project was at the History Museum. She then encouraged him to go there and take a look. However, his simple reply was that he first needed to finish his book, which visibly left her awkward. Meanwhile, in the university infirmary, Zhu Sheng was slowly recovering. His men gathered around the bed, asking what their next move would be. After thinking for a moment, he decided to call call the regional boss, intending to have him teach Ye Beichen a lesson. At that moment, one of them spotted the target walking outside the window. Cell phone in hand, Zhu declared that this time he would cripple him. He then called a man named Chong and asked for help with a problem he had with someone. On the other end, the man, who was in a restaurant, asked for the target's name, and Zhu replied without hesitation. Soon after, the aggressor accelerated his scooter and informed his brothers that it was time to act. He sped off at high speed, even knocking some of his own henchmen onto the asphalt. In front of a large building, Ye Beichen wondered where the museum was when he heard someone shout his name. Without delay, Zhu accused him of stealing his money. Calmly, Ye Beichen turned and asked if they wanted another beating. Zhu, with a mocking tone, replied that he had called a man named Chong to sort out the situation. Shortly after, Chong's group arrived at the scene, with him leading on his scooter. As soon as he stopped, he asked one of his men where Ye Beichen was. Without wasting time, Zhu pointed out the target's location to the newcomer. However, Chong recognized him instantly and wondered why that person was there. The memory of almost being killed last time surfaced, making him realize that Li Ju was trying to push him to his death. Ye identified the newcomer as the reinforcement, while Zhu ordered Chong to attack. The response was unexpected, a direct slap to Zhu face. Confused, he questioned the reason for the assault. Immediately after, Chong bowed before Ye Beichen and asked for forgiveness, ordering Li Ju to kneel and apologize as well. Faced with the scene, Zhu was shocked and began to wonder if Ye Beichen was some kind of hidden boss. Stepping on something on the ground, Ye Beichen suggested that since Chong wouldn't do anything, Zhu himself should act. Without delay, Zhu knelt on the ground and admitted he was wrong. Ye Beichen asks why he'd come back even after being let go, while Zhu, kneeling on the ground, pleads for forgiveness. Next, Ye Beichen demands to know how much Zhu is willing to pay for the mental distress he caused. Zhu stays sprawled on the ground, clearly shocked to hear he'd have to pay a fee for mental damages. Impatient, Ye Beichen warns that he won't be so polite if he doesn't get paid, prompting Zhu to offer another 10,000. At that, Zhu hands over a credit card as collateral. With the card in hand, Ye Beichen bids them farewell and even invites the group to visit him again, while Zhu grumbles about having no money left. From a distance, a hidden man watches it all, remarking that the kid has a few tricks up his sleeve, but nothing special. As he walks along the sidewalk, Ye Beichen suddenly stops. In that moment, he realizes the trap set in Mist Mountain Village has been destroyed and his master's wife is in danger. Without wasting a second, he dashes off at high speed, leaping across the city rooftops. Elsewhere, someone reports over the phone that the kid has already departed. As he nears the village, Ye Beichen senses a suspicious aura that's no longer active. Intrigued, he wonders who could have done it, while his gaze lands on the mansion, revealing several people inside. Faced with the scene, he simply finds the situation interesting. Alon points at the approaching young man and orders his men to encircle him. Quickly, the group positions themselves around Ye Beichen, ready for a fight. In a confident tone, Alon commends his bravery for showing up and declares he'll die for disrespecting his master. Immediately after, he grabs Ye Beichen and demands to know why the formation was destroyed, but the young man pretends not to get it. Annoyed, Alon calls him an idiot and attacks, only to have his blow blocked at the last second. Without breaking a sweat, Ye Beichen takes down a few opponents and warns the rest to get out of his way if they don't want to die. Leaping over them, he scoffs and calls them trash for daring to face him with such pathetic strength. On the ground, Alon demands to know why his men are just standing there and yells at them to capture Ye Beichen. Obeying the order, the henchmen charge forward in formation to attack. Soaring over the forest, Ye Beichen muses how amusing it is to find yet another brainless organization waiting for him. Hidden among the trees, another group gets ready, their leader determined to get back the two books. Spotting Ye Beichen approaching, the leader tells his men to await his signal. As soon as he lands, Ye Beichen sees everyone is there and provocatively invites them to play. Next, he shouts for the cowards who are following him to come out of hiding. From a distance, Alon is surprised to see the target actually has reinforcements. Annoyed, the group leader grumbles about attracting so many people along with their target. Still, he decides to ignore the problem and orders his men to kill everyone. Suddenly, one of them drops to the ground and vanishes in a puff of smoke. Without hesitation, Alon charges forward to attack, while the other group's leader yells at him to get out of the way. Just then, an object is used to block Alon's axe. Immediately, the two groups start fighting each other in the forest. Perched on a tree branch, Ye Beichen calmly eats an apple and orders them to fight to the death for his amusement. The leader watches the entire confrontation through his artifact. During the battle, Alon realizes his opponent is surprisingly strong. Finally, landing among the fallen men, Ye Beichen asks if they've settled their issues or still need his help. Alon turns around, surprised to see Ye Beichen just arriving. The man already on the ground comments, "You finally showed up." He then demands to know what Ye Beichen is doing there, swearing he'd kill him if he got the chance. It's then that Alon realizes they've all been tricked by him. Ye Beichen, with a hint of irony, asks, "Who said I was just muscles and no brain?" He adds that he was even being too kind. Suddenly, Chong declares that he now understands everything. Ye Beichen simply calls him an idiot. Enraged, Chong lunges at him, vowing to kill him. Ye Beichen intercepts the attack, asking, "How dare you show such incompetence with these mediocre skills?" With a swift move, he violently slams Chong to the ground. Alon, watching, comments on the impressive power of Ye Beichen's footwork. Chong gets back on his feet, admitting that to take down so many of his men, Ye Beichen truly has some skill. Ye Beichen, looking bored, says, "Fighting you one by one is exhausting. Why don't you all come at me together? Let's not waste time." Annoyed, Alon grips his weapon, telling him not to be so arrogant. He then smashes the ground, declaring that he alone is more than enough to kill him. Ye Beichen easily dodges the attack, remarking, "That wasn't a bad move, actually." He then adds that flashy moves are useless against him. Without warning, he flicks Alon on the head with a finger, making his brain explode. Chong stares in disbelief, wondering how that's possible, as Ye Beichen stands calmly over the fallen body. Turning to Chong, Ye Beichen declares, "Now it's your turn." Chong calls him a freak. The man in the suit decides to retreat, figuring he'll let this go for today, and attempts to flee. But Ye Beichen intercepts him, asking, "Do you really think you can escape my sight?" He effortlessly defeats his opponent, advising him, "Train harder in your next life." With that, Ye Beichen leaps away, leaving all his enemies sprawled on the ground. The scene shifts to Haiju University. Inside a room, a woman muses, "It's been a while since I joined the Zunbu project team. I wonder what kind of person he'll be." Just then, Zhang Xiaoru enters and greets senior sister Chu with a good morning. Chu announces to everyone that there's a new team member and asks them to introduce themselves, but Zhang Xiaoru asks where he is. Chu calmly replies that he must still be on his way. A moment later, a man appears at the door, asking if this is the Qin project team. Recognizing him, Zhang Xiaoru exclaims, "Ye Beichen!" Chu stands up and confirms it is indeed the Qin project team. She then deduces that he must be the new member, and the young man introduces himself as Ye Beichen. Chu comments that brother Ye is very handsome and says it'll be great to have him on the team. Watching the scene unfold, a man in a purple suit notices Chu's obvious interest in the newcomer. Because of this, he decides he needs to teach the rookie a lesson. Ye Beichen asks for Professor Wang, and Chu explains that he's in an important meeting and won't be able to make it today. Discreetly, someone removes an object from Ye Beichen's pocket. The man in the purple suit notices the action and smiles, waiting to see what happens next. A short while later, Ye Beichen realizes something's been taken from his pocket. Suddenly, the man in purple shouts for security, accusing someone of theft. Two security guards quickly arrive, asking who dared to steal anything. Without hesitation, the man in the purple suit points directly at Ye Beichen and accuses him. Turning to Chu, Ye Beichen concludes this was all a setup to frame him. Confused, she asks what he could have taken, but he denies having taken anything. Despite this, the man in purple insists on the accusation, claiming he saw him steal the Suho pearl and that it must be on him right now. Ye Beichen then challenges the guard to search him, and the security guard orders him to submit to the inspection. The guard proceeds to pat down Ye Beichen's body. When he's done, he turns and states, "There's nothing here." The man in purple, incredulous, declares, "That's impossible." Finally, Ye Beichen announces that the Suho pearl has been found, adding that someone will have to pay for his troubles. The man in the purple suit got annoyed hearing the accusation of slander, but Ye Beichen challenged him to let security search him. After hesitating for a moment, he agreed to the search, claiming he had nothing to fear. With that, the security guard ordered him to open his hands. As the search was happening, the man in purple silently wondered what was going on. He had placed the pearl there himself, yet it hadn't been found. A moment later, the security guard found the pearl in his pocket and announced the discovery aloud. Seeing the object, he exclaimed that it was impossible. Without hiding her indignation, Chu accused him of trying to frame someone else while being the real thief. She regretted having misjudged him, even though he tried to deny it. Still, he insisted he had thrown the pearl onto Ye Beichen's clothes, and that for some reason it had ended up in his own pocket. Calmly, Ye Beichen questioned if, with that level of intelligence, he really dared to go up against someone like him. It was then revealed how Ye Beichen had moved the pearl from his own pocket and discreetly placed it into the purple-suited man's pocket. Given the revelation, Chu stated that framing someone was a serious offense, and that the project team wouldn't tolerate that kind of character, deciding to fire him. As he was dragged away by the guards, he pleaded with senior sister Chu for another chance, but the guard told him to save his breath. Watching all of it, Ye Beichen commented that he was just reaping what he sowed. After that, Chu apologized to Ye for what happened on his first day, and he replied that it was fine, as long as the truth had come out. As a form of compensation, she suggested a team dinner to welcome him and apologize, and he affirmed it would be an honor to accept. Soon after, everyone made a toast, raising their beer mugs. During the barbecue, Ye took a sip and commented on how refreshing the drink was. Curious, Chu asked why he chose a barbecue when there were so many other places nearby, and he replied that he wanted to boost the business of an acquaintance. Just then, Wu Ting arrived, bringing the dishes, and Ye asked when she would take him to see her place. Finally, he suggested they do it that very night instead of waiting, and Wu Ting agreed. Zhang Xiaoru wondered what was going on, sensing there was something different between Wu Ting and Ye. Ye said goodbye to everyone, explaining he had to take care of something, and Zhang Xiaoru replied that they understood. He then took Wu Ting's hand and announced they were heading to her apartment right away. Observing the scene, Zhang Xiaoru commented that the two clearly had something going on and made a beautiful couple. Once at the apartment, Ye praised the pleasant view, while Wu Ting explained the rent wasn't expensive, costing only 500 yen a month. Right away, he handed her a card with 10,000 yuan, saying he would pay the rest when he moved in, which left her surprised by the amount. Seeing her reaction, Ye explained that he intended to rent for a long time, and that the amount was nothing significant, leading Wu Ting to agree to settle any difference later. Soon after, she said goodbye, telling him he should rest early, while Ye just waved as he watched her leave. Alone in the apartment, he noticed that the surrounding spiritual energy was abundant and flowed naturally inward. So he sat down to meditate, but his concentration concentration was interrupted by a noise coming from outside. His expression immediately changed at the sudden sound. Without hesitation, he turned toward the window to see what was happening. On the street, Ye wondered what the Lion King was doing there, as a large white creature began to materialize. Immediately after, an enormous beast covered in white fur let out a terrifying roar. The creature charged at the lion, and someone questioned if it was a spirit beast. Observing closely, Ye stated that he now understood the reason for such dense spiritual energy in that place. In response, he punched the ground, which cracked under the force of the impact. With his gaze fixed on the creature, he began to focus his attention on it. He prepared his attack with his hands. Giving no time for reaction, he charged directly at the white beast. With a powerful kick, he delivered a blow that hit the ground in front of him. At that, the white beast slowly began to dissipate into the air. The creature dissipates into the air as Ye watches from the street. However, in its place, a small white wolf appears and stares directly at him. Seeing this, Ye prepares to attack the small creature. Without hesitation, he delivers a powerful punch. Then, he absorbs the spiritual energy that still lingers in the air. Soon after, large wings form on his back, allowing him to float in the sky. When he returns to the ground, the Lion King barks at his feet. Curious, Ye asks if he isn't happy that his prey was devoured. In response, the dog runs to a pile of trash and starts barking, leaving Ye puzzled about what the beast is trying to show him. Intrigued, he approaches and discovers a spiritual vein hidden among the debris. Surprised, Ye realizes he didn't expect to find a spiritual vein there. This explains both the presence of the beasts and the strong energy, leading him to conclude it's an excellent spot for cultivation. Because of this, he decides to try the 1,000-mile eye technique. As soon as he starts the technique, a book materializes in front of him. Soon after, one of his eyes activates, and he confirms that with such abundant spiritual energy, the technique works perfectly. His vision passes through a door, allowing him to see Wu Ting in the bathroom. She quickly realizes something is wrong. The next morning, an ambulance is parked in front of a building. The noise wakes Ye, who wonders what's happening so early. Then, he sees Wu Ting outside, asking her mother to wake up and trying not to scare her. At that moment, a nurse announces there's no more space in the ambulance and suggests she take a taxi to the hospital. Soon after, the ambulance leaves, leaving Wu Ting alone in the street as Ye approaches. Concerned, he asks what happened, and she explains that her mother suddenly fell ill and has already been taken to the hospital. Then, Wu Ting asks him to take her there to see her mother. In the operating room, Wu Ting's mother lies on a gurney, surrounded by doctors. Finally, one of the doctors states that it's useless to continue and that she can't be saved. Another doctor claims that not even a divine physician could save her, as the disease is extremely rare. However, Ye asks everyone to wait. At that moment, Wu Ting rushes to her mother's side and anxiously asks if she's okay. Desperate, she pleads with the doctor to save her, explaining that this is the only family she has left, but she hears in response that the illness is too rare. Seeing this, Ye approaches, analyzes the condition, and diagnoses it as an unusual combination of energies, stating that there is a way to treat it. One of the doctors questions him, doubting his abilities, while Ye responds that he's merely stating the facts. The older doctor asks where he studied to act with such arrogance, and the simple response comes, he's self-taught, which leaves the other incredulous. The younger doctor demands that he leave, but Ye challenges him to allow the attempt, reminding him that a life is at stake. At that instant, the elder doctor interrupts him and, when asked if he believes him, admits that he actually hopes Ye gives up. Still, he imposes the condition that Ye obtain the family's consent and take full responsibility if he fails, which is promptly accepted. Confident, Ye says he's ready for the gamble, while the other doctor shows disbelief in the possibility of a cure. Turning to Wu Ting, the doctor asks if she agrees to the treatment, and Ye asks her to trust him to save her mother. With a trembling voice, she agrees, explaining that her mother's condition is critical, and this is the last alternative. After this, Ye asks the doctors to let him proceed. Next, he opens the scroll, revealing a set of needles. Without hesitation, he inserts one into an acupuncture point, ready to connect the meridians and regulate the energies. Soon after, Wu Ting's mother expels dark blood. The doctor accuses Ye of going too far, claiming he killed the patient. But Ye's calm reply is, "Who said anyone died?" Sternly, the doctor tells him to stop denying it and see for himself. Just then, Wu Ting gasps in surprise as she sees her mother wake up, completely perplexing the doctor. She quickly asks how her mother is feeling, and the woman replies that she feels much better, even though she still can't stop coughing. Calmly, Ye explains that the treatment just finished and assures them she'll be fine in half an hour. Intrigued, the doctor asks who he really is, but Ye simply replies that he's just an ordinary student. The younger doctor then apologizes for not recognizing his skills sooner. Ye replies that there's no need to apologize, just asking him to pay closer attention next time, and the doctor agrees. Then, Wu Ting's mother asks her daughter who the young man is. She introduces him as her classmate, Ye Beichen, explaining that he saved her life. Later, Wu Ting comments that she doesn't know how to repay him for all his help, and he replies that it's simple, just take him back to her place. Confused, she asks why, but he just smiles. Back at her house, Ye devours an entire feast with piles of empty plates stacked beside him. Satisfied, he announces that he's finally full, while Wu Ting stares at the mountain of dishes. Curious, she asks if the payment he mentioned was making her cook all that food. Getting up from the table, he simply asks, "Wasn't it?" Then, he announces that, now satisfied, he's going to his room to rest. Wu Ting agrees, finding it all a bit too simple. Alone at the table, she wishes Ye good night. Silently, Wu Ting concludes that Mr. Ye is a good person and thinks it would be great to marry someone like him. As he meditates, Ye realizes that cultivating here is twice as effective and knows he needs to speed things up. However, a dog's bark interrupts his concentration. Ray Leon bites his sleeve, and Ye wonders if he's trying to warn him that someone in the mansion means harm to Aunt Zhou. At that moment, he realizes someone has dared to conspire against his master's wife and declares that everyone involved will pay with their lives. Without hesitation, Ye leaps from the building with the dog right beside him. The scene shifts to a demolition site. A man explains to a woman that, luckily, Master Yi warned them in time for everyone to evacuate, saving the family from a huge loss due to the explosion. Master Yi laments that the Yinfeng formation has been destroyed and states that to prolong the old master's life, it will need to be remade. The woman replies that he can ask for anything. Calmly, Master Yi explains that he doesn't need anything valuable, just a drop of her heart's blood, which can be extracted without surgery. Even so, the woman agrees to endure the procedure as long as it saves her father. With that, he invites her inside to get the heart's blood. From a distance, two men watch the scene. One comments on how easily she was tricked, while the other urges him to quickly remake the formation. The younger man reassures his older brother not to worry, saying he's already mastered the Yinfeng formation and can set it up quickly. He then throws a talisman into the air. The talisman multiplies, forming a large structure in the garden. The formation activates on the ground. Soon after, a huge energy vortex begins to form in the sky. The young man wonders why there are such strange celestial disturbances at this moment. From afar, Ye comments that he's finally arrived. Pointing at the sky, the young man tells his older brother that someone is flying on a sword. However, the older brother corrects him, revealing it's actually a dog flying in the sky. Upon closer inspection, Ye realizes someone is remaking the Yinfeng formation and understands why Ray Leon was so excited. One of the men comments that they found a yokai, and this will be interesting, while the other states they can't let him destroy the formation. Without hesitation, one of them launches an attack of dark thorns and yells, "Kill him!" The thorns burst from the ground, rapidly advancing towards Ye and the dog floating in the sky. In response, Ye raises his sword and unleashes a wave of energy against the heretics. The attack slices through the thorns heading his way. Realizing the situation isn't in their favor, one of them shouts for the other to get out of the way immediately. The impact throws the two cultivators backward. Yebeichen then lands, accusing them of setting up the Yinfeng formation and asking if they aren't afraid of shortening their own lifespans. The elder brother realizes they were tricked, understanding it wasn't a monster. The younger brother comments that he was almost scared when Yebeichen pretended to be a ghost. Furious, the elder brother orders them to kill Yebeichen, accusing him of trying to stop the formation's activation and calling him trash who only scares people. Yebeichen then asks if anyone else is involved, stating that their cultivation level is too shallow to create the Yinfeng formation. Without a word, the elder brother draws his sword. He then suggests to his younger brother that they use the Tong Yin matrix to fight Yebeichen, and the younger brother agrees. The elder brother then announces the Celestial Heart Demon spell, which can kill without form and disturb the mind. Holding a banner, the younger brother declares the matrix activated. The Tong Yin matrix manifests on the ground, trapping Yebeichen right in its center. The elder brother then invokes the demon god to appear and help him slay gods. Immediately, his body transforms into a demonic form. Watching this, Yebeichen comments that it's interesting to still find people connected to the demon race in this day and age. However, before he can even finish his sentence, the demonic form is suddenly struck and begins to disintegrate. Despite this, the creature lunges forward, screaming for Yebeichen to die. Effortlessly, Yebeichen blows a gust of wind that hits the target directly. The elder brother screams, "Impossible!" as his body completely disintegrates. Yebeichen then appears before the other fallen cultivator, asking why he uses his abilities for evil. Giving him no chance to react, Yebeichen grabs him by the neck, stating that this was a conscious choice. For that reason, he says, the only thing left is to do what's right. Yebeichen then throws him aside. The younger brother crashes hard onto the ground, while the elder brother desperately calls out to him. With difficulty, the younger brother warns that the opponent is too strong and extremely fast, prompting the elder brother to turn and flee. Before escaping, the elder brother glances back. He then vows to find their master and avenge his brother. Just then, Yebeichen appears in front of him and coldly asks if he truly has a master. Using shadow steps, Yebeichen blocks his escape path. Yebeichen then grabs him, demanding to know where his master is and if that person ordered the Yinfeng formation to be set up. Desperate, the elder brother begs the great immortal to spare his life, promising to reveal everything he knows. Without delay, he confesses that their master is inside the mansion and was the one who assigned them to set up the formation. This leads Yebeichen to ask who exactly this man was. In response, he explains that their master was a former grandmaster of Longhu Mountain, expelled after violating rules and developing a demonic heart. After that, the master founded his own sect and began recruiting numerous disciples. He explained that many years ago, the master discovered a treasure beneath the mansion that would take 100 years to emerge, so he devised a plan to accelerate the process. He also secretly set up the Yinfeng formation to absorb the residents' yang energy, boosting the treasure's growth. Still on the ground, the elder brother begs once more for his life to be spared, claiming he has told everything. Yet Yebeichen merely questions if someone like him truly deserves to live. He then declares that evil cultivators only deserve death and attacks to dissipate the man's soul. Afterward, Yebeichen realizes his master's wife is in danger, and he needs to see her immediately. However, he realizes that acting directly would expose his cultivation level, so he needs to hide it. Meanwhile, Aunt Zhou tells Master Yi she is ready to begin the heart blood extraction. Master Yi confirms he'll extract it right away. When she questions the dagger's presence, he replies it's for the extraction. Suspicious, Aunt Jo accuses him of lying, reminding him he had said cutting her flesh wouldn't be necessary. Just then, Master Yi lunges with the dagger, declaring it's too late for her to realize his deception. Frightened, she recoils in the chair and cries for help. Before the blow can land, Ye Beichen suddenly appears and grabs Master Yi's wrist, stopping the attack. Ye Beichen forcefully throws Master Yi against the wall. Then, he positions himself next to Aunt Jo and calls Master Yi an old villain, accusing him of harming innocent women in broad daylight. Satisfied, he realizes that with his TV show outfit on, his master's wife wouldn't be able to recognize him. Recovering, Master Yi gets to his feet and asks who the insolent young man is that dares to show off in front of him. Right after that, he throws a talisman at Ye Beichen and declares that he's looking for his own death. The talisman immediately summons a spirit that rushes forward. Ready for combat, Ye Beichen states that, as a cultivator, Master Yi acts maliciously and against the will of the heavens. With a single punch, he effortlessly destroys the spirit. Next, he strikes the ground and declares that the man deserves to be punished. In disbelief, Master Yi can't believe that the malevolent spirit he cultivated for 10 years was instantly eliminated. Approaching, Ye Beichen coldly asks what he's looking at. Trying to defend himself, Master Yi creates a barrier and claims he's not easily frightened. Even so, the defense is broken with a single punch, making the older man admit that the young man isn't simple and possesses some skills. With no other choice, Master Yi kneels and begins to command the malevolent spirits. Invoking them as his greatest trump card, he challenges the young man to stop them. In response, Ye Beichen summons thousands of gods and saints to protect his true spirit. Chains appear in the air and rush directly towards the malevolent spirits. Shocked, Master Yi asks who he really is, surprised by such cultivation strength. Advancing with one of the chains, Ye Beichen shouts that he's his father. Filled with irritation, the older man complains that it's a terrible day. Without thinking twice, he jumps out the window and shouts that he's giving up. With disdain, Ye Beichen provokes him, telling him to run and see how far he can get. Desperate, Master Yi runs through the forest, relieved to have escaped quickly and avoided bigger trouble. Suddenly, a giant dog appears behind him. With a swift attack, the animal knocks him down and pins him to the ground. Right after that, Ye Beichen approaches and tells the Lion King that the man called him a dead dog, suggesting he deal with it without delay. Ready to attack, the Lion King lunges at Master Yi. After the blow, Ye Beichen pats the animal's head, praises its intelligence, and invites it to follow him from then on. At that moment, he realizes that his master's wife is approaching with reinforcements. Near Master Yi's body, a voice orders everyone to leave. Obeying, the men in suits are ordered to quickly catch up with the old Taoist. Soon after, Aunt Jo approaches and finds Master Yi lying on the ground. She comments that the man was killed by a true master, and states that she will offer a gift if she's lucky enough to find him. Far from there, Ye Beichen comments to the Lion King that he's used up a lot of spiritual energy and they need to replenish it. Because of this, he decides to cultivate in that spot for a while and asks the Lion King to protect him in exchange for spiritual energy. Suddenly, a hand grabs his shoulder and warns him that this isn't a place he should be. Turning around, Ye Beichen asks who they are and why he can't stay there. In response, the man explains that they are Mr. Huo's bodyguards. Furthermore, he states that no one can disturb the master as he's practicing his fist technique. With disdain, Ye Beichen comments that it's nothing but extravagant footwork. Offended, one of the bodyguards accuses him of insulting the elder master. At the same time, the other states that he's looking for death. Before the situation escalates, the old master appears and orders both of them to stop immediately. The bodyguard tries to explain himself to the elder master, but he interrupts, stating that he's already aware of what happened. Next, the master turns to Ye Beichen and asks what he meant about the technique. The young man explains that it lacks fluid movements and real power. Indignant, the elder master states that the technique was passed down by his ancestors and declares he won't forgive Ye Beichen if he can't prove his accusation. In response, Ye Beichen proposes to help him perfect the technique in exchange for using the training grounds for his own cultivation. Calling him arrogant, the master accepts the proposal, adding that he would even acknowledge Ye Beichen as a true master if he succeeded. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen agrees to the condition. Soon after, he warns that he will demonstrate only once before executing the moves. Then, he positions himself for the strike. To his surprise, the elder master can't believe that, using the exact same technique, the power displayed is several times greater than his own. Nearby, the bodyguards comment among themselves that the young man is incredibly strong, and that fortunately, they didn't end up attacking him. Approaching, the master says he now understands the technique, recognizing Ye Beichen as a true master. With that, he thanks Ye Beichen for the guidance and asks for forgiveness, while one of his men asks if the training grounds will indeed be given up. Without backing down, the elder master confirms he is a man of his word and declares that, from that moment on, the place belongs to Ye Beichen. In response, the young man asks him to take his men away, as he needs peace and quiet. Granting the request, the master orders their withdrawal, and everyone obeys. As soon as they are alone, Ye Beichen sits down and tells the Lion King that he can start keeping watch. As he walks away, the elder master discreetly orders his men to investigate the young man's past. During his meditation, Ye Beichen reflects on the many recent events and feels that the situation is more complex than it seems. At that moment, he realizes that Aunt Jo and his master's wife are very similar, just as he notices that the young Taoist and Master Yi were also cultivators. Because of this, he begins to wonder if it's all just a coincidence. With that thought, he takes out his phone and concludes that he needs to find out more. So, he calls senior sister Chu and asks if there's any place in the school where he can find information about events from 2,000 years ago. She replies that few records are available, but explains that the project team is going to an an archaeological site with a tomb from that era and invites him to join. After hearing the proposal, Ye Baichen agrees to meet her that same night. Ye Baichen wonders if he will finally find the truth he's looking for inside that 2,000-year-old tomb. Once at the site, he asks senior sister Chu if that's the tomb she mentioned, and she confirms without hesitation. Next, he asks who the other people present are, while she explains that they are bodyguards hired by the school, as the tomb is strange and a previous team never returned. Jiang Xiaoru nervously comments that she shouldn't have come, as the place is too frightening. Because of this, senior sister Chu asks them to stop talking nonsense and warns that everyone will descend together. Soon after, the group enters the dark cave. Upon reaching a wider area, the girls are surprised by the size of the space, with one of them commenting that even her house isn't that big. Senior sister Chu then explains that the mission is to find the missing archaeological team and bring valuable antiquities back to the school. Suddenly, Ye Baichen sharply turns his face. Noticing his reaction, she asks what happened, but he replies that it's nothing, just saying he felt a bit dizzy. Meanwhile, hidden, 3 masked men comment that another team has arrived and state that their organization sent them to retrieve the treasure. The leader holds an object in his hands and declares that, besides them, no one else will leave that place alive. Without warning, he launches the artifact, which fires several projectiles towards the group. Immediately, Ye Baichen yells for everyone to watch out for the ambush and pushes Chu away from danger. He manages to catch the projectiles with his bare hands. Surprised, the masked man doesn't understand how the attack failed. The bodyguards draw their weapons and shout, demanding to know who's there. Soon after, the 3 masked figures emerge from a thick fog. Frightened, one of the girls screams that they are ghosts, but senior sister Q tries to calm them, assuring them they are not. With their weapons pointed, the bodyguards order them to stop or they will shoot. In response, the masked leader taunts them, challenging them to fire. One of the bodyguards replies that they are asking for death and pulls the trigger. At that very moment, the masked man advances at high speed, throwing the projectiles he was holding. The 2 bodyguards fire multiple shots in quick succession. Even so, they end up being hit by the needles. The 2 girls embrace in panic, one of them screaming that they've been killed. At that moment, one of the masked men comments to his brother that the 3 women look interesting and that they haven't had fun in a long time. The leader agrees with a cruel smile and suggests that each of them take one to have some fun before killing them. Hearing this, Ye Baichen asks if they've simply forgotten about his presence. Surprised, one of them turns around and comments that his presence is so subtle it almost went unnoticed. The other man offers to fight, telling his brother that the guy looks weak and that he already has experience with this kind of situation. Calling Ye a show-off, he throws a sphere towards him. With disdain, Ye Baichen calls him arrogant as the object approaches. Effortlessly, he stops the sphere with his hand and states that the man couldn't even break a thin branch. Immediately after, the object explodes in a cloud of smoke, and the masked man starts laughing, saying the guy was fooled. Startled, the 3 girls cover their faces amidst the thick smoke. With a simple gesture, Ye Baichen disperses the smoke and calls him despicable and disgusting. Surprised, the man asks why he didn't react. In response, Ye Baichen questions if he really believes a cheap smoke bomb would be enough to take him down. Filled with rage, the masked man draws a dagger and accuses him of humiliating him. He then charges forward, yelling that he's going to kill him. However, Ye Baichen holds the blade with just 2 fingers. The dagger shatters into pieces instantly. Immediately after, he strikes the man in the neck with his fingertips. Seeing their brother fall, the other 2 realize they underestimated their opponent, understanding that he's no ordinary person. Ye Baichen stares at them coldly and asks if they'll come at him together or one at a time. Hesitantly, one of them asks his brother what they should do, while the leader tells them not to be afraid, asserting that he still possesses skill. At that moment, he reveals he has a secret weapon. Upon seeing the object, Ye Baichen recognizes it and asks if it's a soul-sealing lamp. Arrogantly, the leader replies that since he knows what it is, he should kneel and beg for mercy. The younger brother comments that he believes Ye Baichen is scared, then mocks him, saying that if he kneels at their feet, he might still have a chance to survive. Before he can finish his sentence, Ye Baichen interrupts him with a direct kick to the groin. Screaming in pain, the masked man warns his brother that Ye Baichen dared to kick him and is looking for death. Then the leader activates the lamp and yells that it's Ye Baichen who is seeking his own destruction. Calmly, Ye Baichen comments that the soul-sealing lamp is really interesting and that he likes it. As he turns, chains begin to move around him. With a single strike, he uses one of the chains to hit the other masked man. Realizing the situation has become unfavorable, the leader panics. The soul of the hitman is ripped from his body by the chains. As his brother begs for help, the leader tries to pull the chain back. At that instant, the lamp falls to the ground and emits a pulse of energy. Desperate, the masked man kneels before the fallen lamp and apologizes to his brother. Ye Baichen approaches, holding the lamp's light, and coldly invites him to join the other. Immediately after, the leader's soul is also ripped from his body. Now he holds the lamp while the chains continue to move around him. At that instant, Ye Baichen feels something strange inside the cave. Ye Baichen held senior sister Chu and gave her the rejuvenation pill he had brought, calmly explaining that she would wake up as soon as she swallowed it. Meanwhile, the other 2 girls started getting up, complaining of headaches and trying to figure out what happened. Suddenly, one of them turned around and saw the bodies sprawled on the floor. Frightened, she hid behind Ye Baichen, pointing and exclaiming that there was a corpse there. Soon after, the other 2 also stared at the fallen bodies. Senior sister Q asked what was happening, and Ye Baichen realized he had forgotten to deal with the situation. Without hesitation, he quickly invented a story. After their bodyguard died protecting them, he managed to grab a weapon and win by sheer luck. The girls praised him, saying he was incredible, while he modestly replied that they were exaggerating. terrifying. Next, Ye Beichen mentioned that he had found a strange wall earlier. Touching it revealed a secret passage, and he was intrigued, wondering what could be inside. Excited, one of the girls exclaimed that it must be the entrance to the main tomb. Thrilled, they decided to go in and take a look. Ye Beichen observed that the spiritual energy inside was extremely concentrated and wondered if there would be other cultivators like him in that place. Soon after, the group came across several skeletons sitting in a circle on the ground with a sword stuck in the center. Confused, one of them wondered what those people were doing there and why they all died in the main tomb. Senior Sister Chu approached the sword stuck in the ground. She reached out to touch the hilt of the weapon. Immediately, Ye Beichen yelled for her not to touch it. Ignoring the warning, she grabbed the sword. Instantly, she was violently thrown backward. Ye Beichen quickly caught her and told her to be more careful. He kept her steady on the ground while the other girl watched, startled. Outside, lightning flashed across the night sky above the mountain. Zhang Jiayun observed the phenomenon and wondered if it was a magical event related to lightning. Soon after, she noticed that the spiritual energy of the tomb had suddenly intensified and questioned if a treasure had appeared. At that moment, a man informed her that they had lost contact with the people sent inside. Hearing this, she ordered a team to accompany her to the tomb while the others stayed to guard the entrance. Inside the tomb, Ye Beichen asked Senior Sister Chu if she was all right. She replied that she was and thanked him for the help. Frightened, the other girls said that there really was a ghost there and that everything was very scary. Suddenly, one of the skeletons slowly began to rise. Ye Beichen told everyone to be careful and stand behind him. Now standing, the skeleton questioned who dared to invade its master's domain and ordered them to retreat. Unintimidated, Ye Beichen asked what its master's name was. The creature replied that, as servants, they could not call their master directly by name. At that moment, the other skeletons advanced, shouting for the intruder to die. Seeing this, Ye Beichen simply said that since they didn't want to talk, he would give them a fight and leap towards the enemies, challenging them. With the impact of his attack, the skeletons were sent flying. Stunned, Senior Sister Chu wondered what was happening and how Ye Beichen was able to use magic. The surviving skeleton, fallen on the ground, asked who he was exactly. Wielding the sword, Ye Beichen stated that his identity wasn't important. He then declared that what really mattered was that they had irritated him. With a single strike, he shattered the remaining skeletons. Turning to the 1,000-year-old remnant soul, he told it that it had been disturbed enough and could now reincarnate in peace. Senior Sister Chu approached him again and asked who he truly was. He simply told her not to be afraid, assuring her he was a good person. At that moment, the sword stuck in the center of the room began to vibrate lightly. An enormous energy explodes from the sword plunged into the ground. Seeing this, Ye Beichen wonders if it might be a thunder sword capable of containing lightning magic. The three girls look up surprised by the sudden phenomenon. Immediately after, Zhang Jiayun's group leaps into the tomb. With a satisfied smile, she exclaims that, as expected, there really is treasure there. Confused, Senior Sister Chu wonders what's happening and why everything feels like a movie scene. Zhang Jiayun keeps her confident smile. She then points her sword at Ye Beichen and demands that he hand it over, stating that they've been watching that treasure for a long time. Unfazed, Ye Beichen simply asks if this is yet another wave of enemies. One of the men offers to lead a team and deal with him, saying the young man seems to have some cultivation level. Without hesitation, Zhang Jiayun orders the attack and everyone charges forward. One of them lunges with a sword, declaring that this territory belongs to them and Ye Beichen should disappear. He easily dodges the strike. Next, he lands a punch to the aggressor's chest, knocking him to the ground. Then, he delivers a kick that sends another opponent flying, all while asking if they truly intend to rob him. Surprised by the ferocity shown, Zhang Jiayun comments that they'll need to use their brains, as they can't resolve this by force alone. At that moment, one of the men grabs Lin Chengqian and threatens her with a sword, while Jiang Xiaoru desperately asks what he plans to do. Zhang Jiayun states that she won't hold a grudge for him killing her men. Still, she makes it clear that the thunder sword behind him belongs to her and demands he hand it over. As a threat, she adds that if he refuses, his friends will be next. Terrified, Jiang Xiaoru begs Ye Beichen to save her, saying she doesn't want to die. Faced with this, he raises his hands and says he gives up, stating that she can take the sword herself. Zhang Jiayun then orders her men to keep watch over the women. Confidently, she leaps towards the sword and celebrates, believing the treasure finally belongs to her. However, chains suddenly appear inside the room and bind her men. Their souls are ripped from their bodies as they scream for help. Ye Beichen asks if everyone is all right, and Senior Sister Chu replies that they are. Annoyed, Zhang Jiayun questions why he dared to attack her men after pretending to surrender. Calmly, he replies that since she's the only enemy left, there's no one else to worry about. She admits he has skills comparable to hers, but states that now, with the thunder sword in her hands, he's doomed. At that moment, two dragons emerge from the sword she wields. The creatures advance fiercely towards Ye Beichen. He calls her rude and asks what she can really do with the thunder sword. In response, he lifts a huge slab from the ground to defend himself. Zhang Jiayun is astonished, not understanding how that's possible. Immediately after, Ye Beichen hurls the slab directly at her. Advancing next, he states that the thunder sword is a spiritual object, and he'll teach her how to use it correctly. Furious, she curses at him, saying he's looking for death. Zhang Jiayun attacks with the sword. However, she realizes too late that she only hit an afterimage. The next instant, Ye Beichen appears beside her and asks what she's looking at since he's right there. With a quick movement, he snatches the sword from her hands. Then he asks her to watch carefully as he holds the weapon. A powerful energy wave hurls her backward. Next, he demonstrates the true use of the thunder sword, unleashing overwhelming power against her. Trying to resist, Zhang Jiayun attempts to shield herself from the impending attack. Even so, the energy released by the sword hits her directly. Ye Beichen holds her and wonders if there's some active spell on her. Upon closer inspection, he notices runes engraved on the sword's blade. Zhang Jiayan fell to the ground after being hit by an energy discharge, her body then violently thrown upwards. Two young women watched the scene, one of them screaming, convinced someone had just died. Just then, Ye Beichen appeared, assuring them she was still alive and telling them not to be afraid. One of the girls asked him who he really was, and why he could use something that looked like magic. Calmly, he replied that it wasn't magic, but cultivation, as a sword materialized by his side. Ye Beichen explained that he had stumbled upon the Nine Heavens thunder spell, making the journey far from a wasted effort. Outside, lightning flashed across the night sky. In the distance, Master Yi observed the phenomenon, wondering if a treasure had emerged from the ancient tomb. He then pulled out his phone, trying to find out if Jia Yun had managed to obtain it. However, the screen showed the number he called was switched off. Realizing this, Master Yi immediately understood something was wrong. Back in the tomb, Ye Beichen opened his eyes, remarking that he was ready. He then looked at Zhang Jiayun, who was now coughing, still sprawled on the ground. He observed that she was incredibly tenacious, as even that attack hadn't been enough to kill her. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen grabbed her by the neck and she pleaded for her life. He then asked who she really was, and Zhang Jiayun revealed she belonged to the Guanshan sect, having been sent to retrieve the Thunder Sword. After releasing her, Ye Beichen concluded that, as he'd expected, cultivation sects still existed in this era. He then declared that the Thunder Sword now belonged to him and told her she could leave. However, Zhang Jiayun stopped him, grabbing his arm and asking him to wait. He asked if she still wanted the sword, but she instead asked to follow him, promising to do anything he wanted. Faced with this, Ye Beichen questioned her motive, and she explained that she had failed her mission and would be killed if she returned. Even so, he coldly replied that he wasn't interested. Immediately after, he turned to the other girls and called for senior sister Chu, telling them it was time to leave. Lin Qianqian cheered, relieved, saying they could finally get out of that strange place. Zhang Jiayun asked him what he would do with his friends, and he replied that he would simply erase some of their memories. He explained that his cultivation had been exposed, and to avoid problems, he would remove their recollections of the events. The narrative then advanced to the next day. In the project team's office, the three girls were sleeping together in one bed. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen analyzed ancient manuscripts from the tomb, commenting that despite everything, they weren't particularly valuable. Q woke up and asked where they were. He turned, noticed she was awake, and explained they were in the project team's office. Curious, she asked about the tomb exploration, and when they returned, but he replied that everyone had fainted from lack of oxygen. Suddenly, Ye Beichen's stomach rumbled loudly. He mumbled that he was feeling a bit uncomfortable. He then asked Chu to rest a bit longer, saying he needed to go to the bathroom. In the hallway, he asked an employee where the men's restroom was, and the man pointed to an unmarked door. Gratefully, Ye Beichen headed towards the indicated spot. However, upon opening the door, he found a woman inside. She immediately accused him of being a pervert and pushed him back. Then, she advanced furiously, demanding to know if he dared to spy on her in the bathroom. Without giving him time to react, she rushed towards him to attack. The woman hit him with needles, explaining that the poison could immobilize someone for an entire day. Preparing a kick, she declared she would make him smell like pigs and manure all day. Seeing him fallen, she announced that he was just reaping what he sowed. Already seated on the toilet, Ye Beichen complained, saying he was a victim too. Two students were chatting in the hallway about a new teacher. One of them asked if her name was Jiang Xiaohua. The other confirmed, adding that she was a brilliant doctor in her early 20s. As they walked, one of the girls tried to open a door but realized it was locked. Her friend replied that it seemed like someone was inside. Inside the restroom, Ye Beichen complained that the woman had been merciless, blocking all his meridians. Still, he managed to mobilize his internal energy to free himself, determined not to be trapped there all day. Soon after, the needles were expelled from his body. As he stood up, he celebrated his accomplishment and declared he needed to find her to settle the score. In an office, the woman introduced herself to an employee as the new teacher, Jiang Xiaohua. The employee commented that she had heard a lot about her and handed over some materials. The new teacher thanked her and took the documents, but then the office door burst open with a bang. A man entered, accompanied by two henchmen, saying he had finally found her. The employee tried to scold him, warning that unauthorized people were not allowed inside. Impatiently, he told her to shut up and pulled out a dagger. With a swift movement, he stabbed her in the chest. Liu Guisheng declared that now they could talk, but Jiang Xiaohua simply asked what he wanted. He reminded her that at the last auction, she had bought the celestial fragrance herb he had wanted. However, she replied that she had already given the herb away. Annoyed, Liu Guisheng ordered his men to tie her up. She was dragged to the back seat of a car, screaming to be released, but one of the henchmen told her to be quiet. The vehicle sped off. Passing by the scene, Ye Beichen observed what was happening and wondered if that woman had been kidnapped. Given that, he decided to check what had happened. An hour later, the scene shifted to a warehouse. Liu Guisheng approached Jiang Xiaohua, who was tied up, and gave her one last chance. He threatened her, demanding she make a call and retrieve the herb, or he wouldn't show any mercy. In response, she spat in his direction. Without backing down, she stated that the herb was hers and he had no right whatsoever to steal it. Furious, Liu Guisheng slapped her hard. He then threatened to kill her if he didn't get the herb back, but she defied him fearlessly. Soon after, he began to tear her clothes, while the young woman screamed for him to stop. Suddenly, the warehouse door was kicked in with a loud bang, making Liu Guisheng turn to see who had arrived. Ye Beichen entered and commented that the atmosphere seemed quite lively. The two henchmen confronted him, asking who he was and why he was invading the place. Jiang Xiaohua wondered how he had managed to get there, considering she had paralyzed his body with a poisoned needle. Liu Guisheng questioned if he intended to play the hero, and Ye Beichen replied that he advised him to kneel and apologize. Incredulous, the man asked if he really expected him him to do that. Zhang Xiaohua yelled for Ye Beichen not to interfere and to run away, warning him that Liu Guisheng kills without hesitation. One of the henchmen stated that their young master didn't agree with the idea of letting him leave. Given this, Ye Beichen said he had already given them a chance to apologize, which led Liu Guisheng to order his men to kill him. The two henchmen advanced with knives in their hands. The young woman screamed for him to be careful. One of them lunged at him with a knife. Ye Beichen grabbed the blade with his hand and then used the attacker's own knife to counterattack. Watching the scene, Liu Guisheng commented that the guy was really strong. Finally, Ye Beichen turned to the young master and declared that now it was his turn. Ye Beichen throws the knife at Liu Guisheng. However, Liu Guisheng uses Zhang Xiaohua as a shield and cries for help. Seeing this, Ye Beichen stops his attack, calling him useless for hiding behind a woman and glares at him coldly. At that moment, one of the thugs gets up and attacks, but Ye Beichen meets him with a precise kick. In a few moments, Ye Beichen takes down both men again, then realizes that his opponent is a cultivator. Desperate, Liu Guisheng calls for Zhang Qiang, who promises to cut the young man into pieces. Zhang Xiaohua screams for Ye Beichen to run, explaining that Zhang Qiang is Liu Guisheng's main henchman and a martial artist. Confident, Zhang Qiang boasts that he never misses a target and that the boy will die right there. Calmly, Ye Beichen replies that he'd like to see how Zhang Qiang plans to kill him. Without wasting time, the man lunges forward, declaring that Ye Beichen is looking for death, and then strikes with his blade. Ye Beichen acknowledges his opponent's skill, but remarks that it's only passable before striking him. Liu Guisheng and Zhang Xiaohua watch, unable to believe what they've just seen. Lying on the ground, Zhang Qiang realizes the young man is also a martial artist. Mercilessly, Ye Beichen asks why he's lying there if he wasn't trying to kill him. Zhang Qiang admits he made a mistake by underestimating him and launches a new attack. However, Ye Beichen easily dodges and hits him in the back. Without understanding what happened, Zhang Qiang loses his life instantly. Liu Guisheng despairs upon seeing his henchman killed so quickly. Ye Beichen turns to him and states that now it's his turn. Trembling, the young master kneels and begs for forgiveness, while Ye Beichen asks where he went wrong. Liu Guisheng confesses that he shouldn't have coveted the herbs or kidnapped Zhang Xiaohua, admitting he deserves to die. Without another word, Ye Beichen raises the knife over him. In a swift motion, he slashes Liu Guisheng's arm, then declares that this is the price for the kidnapping and orders him to leave. The man agrees and flees in a hurry, clutching his injured arm. Ye Beichen approaches Zhang Xiaohua and tells her she's safe now. Even so, the young woman only asks who he is. He introduces himself as Ye Beichen and tells her she can call him a colleague as she begins to apologize. Calmly, the young man explains that he was the one who entered the wrong bathroom, and despite wanting an explanation, he ended up playing the hero. Suddenly, a speeding truck crashes into the warehouse, driving directly towards Ye Beichen. Without hesitation, he shoves Zhang Xiaohua away and is hit full on, the impact sending the young woman flying to the side. From the truck, a woman orders another to get down and check if the young man is the one they're looking for. At that moment, a man named Lin Kunyi threatens Zhang Xiaohua, demanding she hand over the treasure. Ye Beichen gets up, complaining and asking who the blind person was, who drove a truck into the warehouse. Zhang Jiayun points at him and reveals that he's the young man who took the treasure from the tomb. Surprised, Lin Kunyi can't believe Ye Beichen survived being run over. Zhang Xiaohua rushes to Ye Beichen, asking if he's okay, and he replies that his left arm is broken and his body is a bit numb. She tries to reassure him, saying she'll find silver needles to treat him and that he'll be fine. Ye Beichen responds that it's no problem as he has healing pills. However, the instant he tries to take one, a blade pierces his hand. Lin Kunyi questions him for ignoring him, stating that he's dreaming if he thinks he can heal himself without handing over the treasure. Calmly, Ye Beichen merely asks what will happen if he doesn't. The man then replies that he'll take the treasure himself and throws several daggers his way. The blades descend rapidly towards Ye Beichen and Zhang Xiaohua. He yells for her to be careful and steps in front, shielding her from the attack. Ye Beichen throws them to the ground to shield them from the incoming daggers, which embed themselves in the wall just behind them. Then he embraces her, telling her to hold on tight as a cloud of dust spreads across the area. Lin Kunyi warns him, saying there are some things he can't have. Even injured, Ye Beichen mutters that he can't use his full strength in this state. Without wasting a moment, the man quickly charges at him. He grabs him by the collar and threatens him again, demanding he hand over the treasure. Just then, Zhang Xiaohua appears from behind and hits him with a piece of wood, shouting for him to release Ye. The blow lands on the side of his head. He turns around furiously and asks if she really dared to attack him. Immediately after, he lunges and stabs her, telling her she's asking for death. However, a large sword appears, blocking the blow at the last second. Ye Beichen glares at Lin Kunyi and challenges him to take the treasure if he dares. The man smiles coldly, replying that in that case, there will be no turning back. Undeterred, Ye Beichen asks if he intends to take his things like that, then hits him with an electric shock. Annoyed, Lin Kunyi complains about being ambushed, claiming it's dishonorable. Charging through the daggers, Ye Beichen yells for him to die. Even so, his opponent easily dodges the surrounding blades. One of the daggers, however, manages to strike Ye Beichen's chest. From the weapon, a serpent projects itself and lunges towards him. The creature hits him squarely, sending him crashing into the wall. Approaching, Lin Kunyi comments that he thought the boy would be tougher. He picks up the sword lying on the ground and calls him useless. Moving in for the final attack, he shouts for Ye Beichen to go to hell. At the last moment, Ye Beichen manages to dodge and grab the healing pill. Lin Kunyi raises his sword above his head, declaring the weapon a treasure, and orders him to die. Even so, the young man manages to grasp the blade with his bare hand. He explains that he was only holding back because of his injury. Incredulous, Lin Kunyi says this is impossible since he looked completely helpless. Impatient, Ye Beichen calls him ignorant and lands a punch. Watching him closely, he asks asks if he's trying to escape. Right after, he declares he wants to see how far he can run, then strikes him with the sword. Zhang Xiaohua looks at the bodies on the ground and wonders if she should call the police. Suddenly, Ye Beichen clutches his head, saying he used too much spiritual energy and everything is spinning. Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua rushes to support him, calling his name worriedly. Realizing she doesn't have her silver needles, she quickly decides to call an ambulance. She then contacts emergency services, informing them there's an injured patient. Half an hour later, an ambulance arrives at the scene. Inside the vehicle, she holds his hand and pleads with him to stay awake and remain with her. At the hospital, a nurse tells Zhang Xiaohua that the chief physician is in the emergency room and she'll have to wait. She checks Ye Beichen's pulse and finds it stable, almost as if he's just in a deep sleep. Soon after, the nurses are called away urgently to attend to another patient who fainted. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua decides to go to the Chinese medicine department to get silver needles to try and cure him. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen wakes up, slowly sits up, and wonders how he ended up in a hospital. He quickly realizes he needs to go to a spiritual mine to absorb energy, otherwise he'll keep falling unconscious. Outside the building, a huge billboard announces a traditional Chinese medicine event featuring a divine miracle doctor. In an office, an assistant informs his boss that preparations for the event are almost complete, and the man asks about the actors. Confused, the assistant repeats, "actors," not understanding what he means. Irritated, the boss calls him useless and explains that they hire people to pretend to be patients during events. Startled, the assistant promises to fix the problem right away and rushes out. Half an hour later, he gathers a group of men and explains that payment will be doubled if they cooperate properly. Just then, Ye Beichen approaches the group and asks where the hospital exit is. The assistant is startled, and the young man walks towards him, commenting that this doesn't look good at all. Not understanding, the man grabs him and says he doesn't need to act so realistically, just because he wants to be an actor. He then shoves him into a van, praising his convincing performance. The vehicle immediately departs as the man orders the driver to head to the event location. Back in the hospital room, Zhang Xiaohua calls out for Ye, saying she's returned. However, she finds the bed empty and wonders where he's gone. Outside, many people begin to gather to watch Dr. Zhu's live medical treatment. Inside the hall, several men in suits are already seated, waiting for it to begin. Confidently, the assistant assures his boss that all the actors are ready. Soon after, he goes on stage and asks everyone for silence. Then, the assistant announces that the Divine Doctor's event is officially starting. He then invites Dr. Zhu Juzhen to the stage, asking everyone to welcome him with warm applause. Dr. Zhu thanks the audience for coming and states that a doctor's mission is to save lives and heal the wounded. Soon after, he reveals a set of silver needles, explaining that it's a rare treasure he managed to replicate. In the audience, two men comment to each other on how incredible it looks. Dr. Zhu then announces that if this rare treasure can be promoted, many people will benefit, as he intends to offer it at a special price. One spectator questions if it really works, noting that it all sounds like an advertisement. Confidently, the doctor assures them it works and asks for the patient to be brought in. The assistant then appears, pushing a stretcher with Ye Beichen on it, announcing the patient has arrived. Turning to the audience, he explains that the needles will be used to cure a critically ill patient and prove the method's effectiveness. At that moment, Dr. Zhu prepares to pick up one of the needles. Suddenly, a jade pendant in his pocket starts emitting energy. The energy flows directly from the object into Ye Beichen's body. Confused, Dr. Shui wonders what's wrong with the actor, since he woke up even before the needle was applied. At the same time, the young man wonders where the spiritual energy he just absorbed came from. He quickly realizes the source was the jade pendant. The doctor scolds him, asking if he's a professional and demanding he cooperate with the act, otherwise he won't be paid. In response, Ye Beichen just asks what act he's talking about. At that instant, he finally understands the whole situation. Calmly, Ye Beichen states that he can continue with the charade, but demands the jade pendant instead of money, threatening to expose the scam if they refuse. With no alternatives, Dr. Shu stutters and agrees to the exchange. Satisfied, Ye Beichen just confirms everything is fine. Next, the doctor pushes him back onto the stretcher and tells him to lie down. He then applies one of the needles to the young man. However, Ye Beichen immediately stands up. Two men in the audience applaud, commenting on how impressive Dr. Shu's needle technique is and how immediate its effects are. Next, Dr. Shui Juzhen states that Ye Beichen went too far, and this is the price for coveting his jade pendant. In response, Ye Beichen asks for the pendant and invites him to the second floor to sign a trade agreement. 10 minutes later, the doctor questions if he truly believed he could take the jade pendant. Not understanding immediately, Ye Beichen asks what he means. At that moment, Shui Juzhen stands up and accuses him of trying to steal his pendant, telling him to keep dreaming. The young man calls him a swindler for selling fake products and then trying to turn the tables. Irritated, the doctor asks what he intends to do about it. Then, he shouts, calling for his henchman, Big New. Bursting through the door, Zhang Qiang appears, announcing that the boss called him. Along with two other men, he surrounds Ye Beichen. Sarcastically, Shui Juzhen asks if the young man is scared now. In response, Ye Beichen extends his hand and advances towards him. Without warning, he slaps the doctor across the face. Falling to the ground, Shui Juzhen orders his men to capture Ye Beichen. Confirming the order, Zhang Qiang charges forward with a wooden club. However, Ye Beichen dodges the blow and strikes him in the chest, demanding they hand over the pendant to avoid more suffering. Another henchman grabs him by the shirt, saying he doesn't want to die. Effortlessly, Ye Beichen throws both men aside and shouts for them to get out of his way. Watching the scene, Dr. Zhui comments on the young man's excessive strength. Giving him no room to escape, Ye Beichen grabs him by the collar and asks if he'll hand over the pendant. Under pressure, Shui Juzhen agrees. He extends his hand and offers the item. Taking it, Ye Beichen comments that some people only learn when they face danger up close. Before leaving, he warns the doctor to be careful about continuing to sell so many fake products. The scene shifts to a school courtyard. Inside the classroom, Zhang Ziwen asks if Ye Beichen has finally decided to come back to classes. He warns him about attendance checks, but Ye Beichen just asks for silence so he can rest. Agreeing, Zhang Ziwen decides to take a break and rest his head on the desk. Sitting calmly, Ye Beichen holds the pendant and comments that the item is perfect for training his clairvoyance. Elsewhere, Lin Kunyi asks Master Yi if they can send the valuable goods. The master explains that they took over the construction site because of the goods hidden underground. Soon after, he reveals they found a stone fragment with the inscription Treasure Pavilion. Suddenly, Ye Beichen teleports away. Zhang Ziwen turns around, startled, and asks what happened but sees no one. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen runs towards the gate of a construction site. Along the way, he wonders if the treasure pavilion left by the Qingyun sect is really inside. Upon arriving, two workers confront him, asking what he's doing there. One of them asks if the young man is also looking for a job. Without thinking much, he quickly confirms. The worker comments that many people are looking for work. Then, he suggests he go in and try for a job as a brick carrier, and Ye Beichen accepts. Suddenly, a strong impact from inside the site makes the gate tremble. Surprised, the worker asks what happened. Ye Beichen comments that it seems an accident has occurred. Soon after, he orders the other man to hurry and check the situation. The workers stared at the huge crater, commenting that the site had collapsed again. They recalled that last time many people had died there. Just then, Lin Kunyi arrived, accompanied by Master Yi, telling everyone to clear a path. One of the men recognized Master Yi as they approached the edge. The old man then asked everyone to step back, stating he would personally check what was inside. After analyzing the place, Master Yi commented that there was an extremely strong spiritual energy. Curious, Lin Kunyi asked if there was any treasure, and the master confirmed there was, and a lot of it. Excited by the news, the young man cheered, calling it excellent. Soon after, Master Yi instructed him to take a group of workers to explore the site. Lin Kunyi understood he'd need to gather more people. A foreman then called out to the men, announcing the discovery of treasure and asking for volunteers to descend. Several workers immediately volunteered for the task. Ye Beichen also volunteered to join the group. Without delay, the foreman ordered everyone to get ready to descend into the hole. He then informed Lin Kunyi that the group was ready, and his boss approved the decision. Turning to the men, Lin Kunyi instructed them to stay alert and descend with him. Excited, the foreman yelled to the workers that they were all going to get rich. Once inside the cave, Lin Kunyi commented that the space was vast and didn't look like a tomb. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen noticed the spiritual energy here was even denser, just as a worker pointed to something in the distance. In the distance, the site of an ancient underground palace emerged. Surprised, Lin Kunyi questioned if that was really a palace. The men then realized they were standing before an ancient ruin filled with treasures. Excited, one of the workers yelled for everyone to run and grab the treasures. Observing the architecture, Ye Beichen wondered if this wasn't the legendary treasure pavilion. One of the men found a chest full of jewels and celebrated, saying he was rich. Suddenly, however, he was pulled upwards and vanished without a trace. Confused, the foreman wondered if another landslide was occurring. At that moment, a floating figure appeared, questioning who dared to invade Yangshin Palace. Hidden behind a rock, Ye Beichen recognized the entity as a 1,000-year-old soul. Lin Kunyi smiled nervously, wondering if he was seeing things or if ancient spirits still existed in this place. The workers panicked and started running, shouting that there was a ghost. Soon after, two spirits emerged from a passage, yelling that the intruders must die. The creatures attacked and began to injure the workers. Desperate, the foreman pleaded for Lin Kunyi's help. Without hesitation, he leaped towards the spirits, accompanied by a flurry of daggers. Advancing with a confident smile, he let the blades fly. The daggers struck both targets, and the foreman cheered, asserting that with his master's intervention, everything would be all right now. One of the creatures stared at him and asked if he was a practitioner. Lin Kunyi stepped forward, declaring that the spirit must know the pavilion's location, and said he would interrogate it. In response, the entity called him an ignorant child and manifested a dragon on its arm. Then, it ordered the creature to kill him quickly. The dragon fired a burst of energy that hit Lin Kunyi squarely. The man was violently thrown backward by the impact. Advancing with a sword in hand, the spirit declared that this place belonged to the Venerable One, and invaders would be executed. Yelling in panic, Lin Kunyi pulled one of the workers. Immediately after, he shoved Ye Beichen in front of him as a shield, screaming for the spirit to come and get him. The spirit charged forward, screaming for the intruder to die as it swung its sword. The blade struck Ye Beichen directly. Lin Kunyi started to flee when he realized the spirit still possessed their cultivation power. He ran, pleased, certain he had found a scapegoat to take the blame. The spot where Ye Beichen was hit exploded into a dense cloud of dust. As he turned around, Lin Kunyi wondered why the young man was still alive, seeing him still standing. At that moment, Ye Beichen appeared behind the spirit and asked if it had enjoyed hitting him. Then, a circle activated on the ground, from which swords emerged and began to trap the enemy. Declaring that he wasn't an easy target, the blades completely pierced the spirit's body. The spirit then dissolved in a violent explosion of energy. Lin Kunyi watched everything, astonished by the power that man had displayed. The other spirits were enraged by the death of their elder brother and swore revenge. One of them launched a snake-shaped attack, trying to take Ye Beichen's life. However, the young man activated an item in his hand and broke the soul imprisonment seal. Chains appeared shortly after and wrapped around the snakes. Recognizing the object as the soul-capturing lantern, the spirits panicked. One of them yelled for the others to flee immediately. Still, the chains reached them and bound them all. The three ended up tied together by the chains. The foreman watched the scene in shock, wondering if that boy could be a warrior. Ye Beichen held the lantern and remarked that he hadn't even noticed the item before. Lin Kunyi approached and said he wasn't bad at all. all. Then, he added that he already knew his strength and wanted to provide him with some training. Ye Beichen thanked Master Lin for the opportunity. The workers gathered and praised Lin Kunyi for his keen eye for talent. The young man watched them and called them flatterers. Then, Lin Kunyi ordered them to stop the praise and resume their exploration. The group advanced to the palace's main hall. Inside, one of the spirits was dragging itself across the floor. Lin Kunyi stepped on its back and told the workers to collect the treasures. Holding the spirit's head, he commented that it was very strong. Next, he questioned its identity and the location of the treasure pavilion. In the background, Ye Beichen heard the mention of the treasure pavilion. Even so, the spirit defied him, stating it wouldn't provide any information. Lin Kunyi became annoyed and accused it of seeking its own death. Then the spirit self-destructed, swearing to take someone with it and knocking Lin Kunyi down. He yelled a warning for everyone to quickly get down. An even bigger explosion threw him further away. The workers gathered around Lin Kunyi, who lay on the ground. The foreman helped him up and asked if he was all right. Lin Kunyi pushed the foreman away, telling him to leave because nothing could happen to him. As the smoke cleared, one of the workers called out to the master to see what had been revealed. Lin Kunyi and Ye Beichen looked in the same direction. The explosion had opened a new passage in the cave wall. Ye Beichen commented on the intense spiritual energy emanating from the spot. Lin Kunyi ordered everyone to drop their belongings and follow him inside. The foreman threatened the workers, stating they had to go in if they didn't want to die. They immediately agreed to the order. Ye Beichen advanced towards the cave. The group enters a vast cave filled with crystals. Ye Beichen claims it's actually a spiritual mine. Two workers start wondering what spiritual ore is, but neither of them knows the answer. Seeing this, Lin Kunyi slaps the foreman's head and orders him to go check the place out. The foreman asks his master if it's safe inside. Annoyed, Lin Kunyi tells him to stop talking and kicks him forward. The man crawls forward on his knees, carefully observing the cave around him. The space stretches ahead, with crystals scattered all over the floor. Soon after, he stands up and shouts to Lin Kunyi that the place seems safe. However, as he speaks, a leopard silently appears behind him. The creature immediately attacks him and bites his neck. The other workers panic, screaming for help and warning about monsters as they flee. The leopard turns towards the fleeing men and lets out a roar. Then, it leaps onto another worker. The creature opens its mouth and starts forming a sphere of energy. The sphere is fired towards the workers who were trying to escape. Soon after, the energy explodes, hitting them directly. Lin Kunyi wonders what kind of place this is, to even have spiritual beasts. The leopard then turns to him and declares that humans who invade its territory must die. Even so, Lin Kunyi refuses to be intimidated and advances with his daggers. The creature manages to deflect all the blades using only its paws. He's astonished, not understanding how that's possible. Next, the leopard strikes his arm with a powerful paw swipe. He clutches his injured arm while the creature stands by its prey. Then he turns and asks Ye, who is still disguised, for help. The young man removes his helmet and asks if he still recognizes him. Lin Kunyi recognizes him and questions how he's there. Ye Beichen states he had already warned him that he wouldn't be able to escape his grasp. Hearing this, Lin Kunyi turns and starts running desperately. As he tries to flee, he still glances back. In that instant, a sword hits him from behind, pierces his chest, and drops him dead to the ground. The leopard watches the scene, confused by what just happened. Ye Beichen approaches the creature and praises its talent for becoming a sentient beast. Still, the leopard warns that compliments won't save him, as invaders must be executed. It adds that since the spiritual energy in his body is useful, it might consider leaving the corpse intact. The young man calls it a brutal and ignorant beast. Then, he proposes a deal instead of fighting to the death, since both of them are looking for something. The creature asks him what kind of deal he's proposing. Ye Beichen offers to provide the spiritual energy it desires in exchange for what he's looking for. The leopard scoffs, asking if an insignificant human would be worthy of negotiating with it. Then it lunges to attack, telling him to go to hell. Ye Beichen prepares for battle, stating they'll fight if they don't reach an agreement. The creature is forced to retreat due to the strong pressure emanating from the young man. Sensing the danger, the leopard apologizes and admits it was wrong. Ye Beichen, with a smile, asks if they can continue their discussion. The creature agrees to discuss anything, as long as he doesn't kill it. Then, the young man asks just one question, wanting to know if the treasure pavilion exists nearby. The leopard questions what the treasure pavilion is, and warns him not to try and trick it. However, feeling the blade of the sword against its neck, it hastily confirms that the place does exist. Then it points in a direction and says it must be right over there. Ye Beichen leaps away, questions if that's true, and warns it not to lie. He finds only a small pile of bricks. Annoyed, he questions if this really is the Wanbao Tower. The creature explains that these spiritual bricks were forged for the tower's construction. Ye Beichen states that he's looking for the tower, not just bricks, while the leopard admits it doesn't know where the tower is. In a threatening tone, it says it would have killed him already if he didn't seem so harmless. Determined not to leave empty-handed, he holds the jade pendant. Then, he decides to absorb all the spiritual energy from the area. The leopard is surprised by the amount of energy being drained. Soon after, the young man decides to also take the gold and silver, knowing they will be useful outside. The creature pleads to be taken along, explaining that it depends on spiritual energy to survive. Ye Beichen agrees and comments that the Lion King might like a companion. Outside, Master Yi wonders why Lin Kunyi hasn't appeared yet. Feeling a presence, he questions who is there. Ye Beichen appears kneeling and says it's him. The master asks for his identity, and the young man replies that he's just a temporary worker from the place. Next, Master Yi asks where everyone else is. Ye Beichen coldly replies that everyone is dead. He then explains that monsters appeared, and everyone died trying to protect him. He turns to leave, but Master Yi is suspicious of the story. The master master's hand transforms into a claw. Lunging to attack, he shouts that the young man is too young to deceive him. Master Yi accuses him of lying and demands to know what really happened. At that moment, Ye Beichen realizes he's fallen into a trap, even though his goal was to extract information about the Wanbao Tower. He pleads not to be killed and says that after finding gold, Boss Lin died fighting spirits and monsters. Master Yi questions what the true treasures of the tower are, and the reply is that he only remembers seeing the bricks. The master shows confusion upon hearing the mention of the bricks. Then, Ye Beichen asks what the Wanbao Tower is and why he's so desperate to find it. Master Yi states that since he's a dead man, he might as well tell him. He reveals that years ago, they found ruins of the Qingyun sect with records about the Wanbao Tower, which holds countless cultivation techniques. Ye Beichen stands up and asks if there are any more clues about the tower. Annoyed, the master questions how he dares to stand up. With a smile, the young man says he hoped to get more clues, but everything he heard is garbage. Master Yi rages and asks if he's being mocked again. Then, he states that the young man must truly desire death tonight, but Ye Beichen summons his sword. The blade collides directly with Master Yi's claw. The young man questions if he truly believed he had a chance just because he was allowed to show off earlier. Then, a burst of energy hits him and throws him backward. Fallen to the ground, Master Yi asks who he really is, while Ye Beichen points the sword at his neck and states that he will spare his life if he bows. He then introduces himself as Ye Wu from the Qingyun sect. Master Yi reacts, saying that's impossible, as that sect disappeared a long time ago. Ye Beichen proposes a deal, stating that he doesn't owe him explanations, but will let him live if he helps him investigate the tower, and the old man eventually agrees. The young man then simply orders him to open his mouth. Soon after, he throws something directly into Master Yi's mouth. The master grabs his own throat and asks, in a panic, what he was forced to swallow. Ye Beichen explains that it's a poison that activates every 10 days, and warns him to investigate the tower without trying anything suspicious. Later, he reflects that the night was dangerous, and he spent a lot of spiritual energy, though he doesn't consider it a total loss. Suddenly, his stomach starts bothering him again. Because of this, he decides it's best to quickly find a place to resolve the situation. Yi squats among the forest trees. As he turns, he finds Zhang Xiaohua fallen on the ground, covering her eyes with her hands. She calls him a pervert once more, and hits him with a punch, throwing him far away. Zhang Xiaohua scolds Ye Beichen for spying on her, but he claims it was all a misunderstanding. He then asks Miss Jiang how she managed to find him there. She replies that if she hadn't been worried about him dying, she never would have gone around asking about him. Ye Beichen apologizes and promises to reward her with food, drinks, and anything else she desires. Still, the young woman looks doubtful and questions how much money he could actually have. Then he reveals a pile of treasures and asks if that would be enough. Ye Beichen invites her to pick some items she likes, and she asks if she really can. With a smile, he states that he doesn't intend to hold back. Soon after, she points to a first aid kit and asks to keep the items on the left side. He hands her a case full of jewelry and other treasures. Ye Beichen comments that he has more things to sell and invites her to come along, but she asks if he stole from someone. Without answering, he pulls her by the hand and tells her not to ask so many questions, just come along. Upon arriving at a shop, he places 2 pieces on the counter and asks the owner how much he could sell them for. The man begins to examine the items, while Miss Jiang comments that antiques are worth a lot these days. The shopkeeper examines the piece with a magnifying glass and considers it quite unique. Noticing that the 2 look like students, he prepares to offer a lower price. Then, he expresses regret, saying it's a pity, and Ye Beichen asks what's wrong. The man explains that the piece is well preserved but not very old, so it's not worth much. Hearing this, Ye Beichen says he'll look for another shop and takes the piece back. At that moment, the shopkeeper asks him to wait a second, just as the couple turns to leave. With a smile, Ye Beichen turns back and asks if he intends to force the sale. The shopkeeper admits he was just trying to haggle and agrees to buy, so Ye Beichen asks him to name his price. The man offers 5 million. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen corrects the amount to 50 million. The shopkeeper questions the counteroffer. Ye Beichen turns to leave, but the man grabs him and insists he'll buy it. He then hands over a check for 50 million, stating that the deal is simple. He pays, and he gets the goods. The young woman watches the check being handed over, surprised by the amount. Ye Beichen invites her to celebrate somewhere fun, and the 2 leave the shop. On the phone, the shopkeeper informs his boss that he's found a big fish, with even more valuable items. Inside the car, the young woman asks who he really is and if he's some kind of rich heir. He replies that, in a way, she could say that. A white sports car speeds down the road. The hurried driver yells for people to get out of the way, claiming he's late for a party. Soon after, he makes a sharp maneuver on the road. The man forcefully turns the steering wheel. The sports car tries to cut off a taxi. Ye Beichen pulls the young woman to protect her and yells for her to be careful. The taxi hits the back of the sports car, and the driver gets out furious, complaining about his new vehicle. He approaches the taxi window and asks if the driver is okay. Then, he grabs him and questions why he didn't get out of the way, but the taxi driver explains that the line was solid. The man slaps the taxi driver across the face. He demands payment for the damaged sports car, but the taxi driver claims he has no money. The guy in the vest lunges to punch the driver, telling him to drop dead. At that instant, a hand grabs his wrist, stopping the blow. Ye Beichen confronts him, saying that he was the one who drove recklessly and that he can keep dreaming about getting paid. Annoyed, the man tries to punch Ye Beichen. The blow delivered by the man in the vest slices through the air but doesn't hit anyone. Confused, he looks around asking where his his opponent went. At that moment, Ye Bacon appears behind him and lands a direct punch to his face. The man tumbles to the ground, complaining that not even his own parents had ever hit him. Consumed by fury, he pulls out a knife and lunges forward, shouting that this was unforgivable. Without hesitation, Ye Bacon blocks the blade's attack. The aggressor stares at the knife, surprised that he couldn't wound him. Suddenly, an arrow streaks through the air at high speed towards the two men. Alert, Ye Bacon notices the projectile approaching. He quickly shoves the man aside, causing the arrow to lodge deep into the vest-clad man's back. The body falls heavily to the ground as the taxi driver and the woman watch the scene, completely shocked. Without wasting a second, Ye Bacon orders both of them to stay put and rushes in the direction from which the shot came. In a nearby building, a masked figure hides immediately after firing. Ye Bacon searches for the shooter but finds no one and wonders if the person responsible had already fled. The young woman runs up to him, distraught, asking if he's gotten involved with the mafia. She then takes his hand, insisting they need to get him to a safe place. Soon after, the woman leads him down a corridor until they reach a door. Inside the room, she explains that it's her dorm and tells him he can hide there for now. Ye Bacon asks if Miss Jiang is worried about him, but she replies that it's just a favor since he saved her life. The young woman then assures him that he's safe now. Pointing to the bed, she tells him to go to sleep. Confused, Ye Bacon asks where he should sleep, and she responds bluntly that it will obviously be on the floor. She then tosses a blanket there for him. As the night progresses under the starry sky, both of them lie awake, neither able to fall asleep. The young woman comments that she can't sleep, and hearing his agreement, she asks if he's been lying to her the whole time. In response, he questions why she's asking, and she explains that after everything that happened, an ordinary person wouldn't act that way. Finally, Ye Bacon admits that he keeps some secrets. Zhang Xiaohua states that everyone has their own secrets, including her. Then she asks if he knows why she decided to come to that school. He replies, supposing it was just to study. With sincerity, she reveals that her family was pressuring her to marry someone she didn't like, which is why she ran away to this place. Interested in the story, Ye Bacon shows curiosity and encourages her to tell him more. The next morning, both are still sleeping when a sudden noise wakes them. Ye Bacon gets up and asks who is there. Soon after, someone bangs hard on the door, calling for Xiaohua and demanding she open it. She approaches, surprised, wondering how that man managed to find her. From the other side, a young man holding a bouquet of flowers says he finally found her, but she calls him Zhang Bing and insists they weren't meant for each other. Even so, he persists, claiming her parents approved the marriage and that they are perfect together. Irritated, Zhang Xiaohua throws the flowers on the ground and declares that she already has a boyfriend. The man, however, doesn't believe her, saying she won't be able to fool him. At that moment, Ye Bacon approaches from behind, wraps her in an embrace, and asks what's happening. Zhang Bing reacts with disbelief upon hearing the term "my dear." Ye Bacon then introduces himself as Xiaohua's boyfriend. The newcomer provokes him, questioning how someone like him could date her, but Ye Bacon kneels before them. Calmly, he opens a small box and proposes to her. Zhang Xiaohua watches his actions, surprised by his willingness to help her. Zhang Bing remains silent, staring at the large ruby set in the ring. With a confident smile, Zhang Xiaohua agrees to marry him. Outraged, Zhang Bing questions her decision, claiming he has something even better than the precious stone presented. Soon after, he shows off a diamond ring, which he guarantees is worth over 10 million. Provoked to show something superior, Ye Bacon simply tosses a handful of jewels onto the ground. Faced with the scattered items, Zhang Bing stares at the scene while Ye Bacon asks if that's enough. With no other choice, the young man admits he's met his match. Defeated, he points at his opponent and declares he won this time. Before leaving, Ye Bacon says goodbye, hoping never to cross paths with him again. Zhang Xiaohua turns and sincerely thanks him for the help. Casually, he replies that it was nothing more than a small favor. Outside, Zhang Bing grumbles, furious at being humiliated and outdone by a mere student. At that moment, a shadowy figure approaches silently from behind him. Startled, he turns sharply and asks who's there. Without a word, the unknown figure prepares an attack using their fingers. Then, 2 projectiles hit his head and back. As they walk, Zhang Xiaohua thanks Ye Bacon again and invites him for a meal, an invitation he accepts. Suddenly, his cell phone starts ringing in his pocket. Politely, he asks her to wait a moment to take the call. On the phone, senior sister Chu informs him about a project group test and asks him to go to room 601. After hanging up, he tells Zhang Xiaohua he has an exam, and she suggests they have dinner together that evening. Already in a classroom, the evaluator announces the start of the test and asks if Ye Bacon has arrived. A student comments that just by his name, he must be a failure. Another student defends him, saying he was handpicked by the professor, but the first retorts that's no reason to be proud. At that moment, Ye Bacon appears at the door, introduces himself to the professor, and says he's there for the group exam. The instructor turns and asks if he's Ye Bacon. The seated student calls him over to pick up the test paper. Then he announces that the tests are over. On the table, only one filled-out answer sheet remains. Calmly, Ye Bacon hands the sheet to the other student, saying he found one for him. The young man tells him to find a seat, stating there are pens on every table. Before that, he still calls him useless and a waste of a spot in the project. Time passes quickly, marked by the clock on the classroom wall. Soon after, Ye Bacon stands up with the test paper in hand and informs the professor he's finished. Surprised, the professor and the other student turn around, realizing he finished so quickly. He places the sheet on the table and explains he has another engagement later. Immediately after, he says goodbye and leaves the room. The seated student concludes that he handed in the test early just to get rid of it. Then, the professor approaches and asks if anyone saw the classical Chinese test he'd left there. He explains that, due to the difficulty of several texts, they prepared a test to consult specialists. The young man replies that he didn't see anything. Then the professor looks at the sheet on the table and wonders if that isn't his classical Chinese test. The student corrects him, saying that was the test Ye Beichen handed in. Upon closer inspection, the professor confirms it's the completely filled out classical Chinese test, while the student laments that it's been ruined. After a careful review, the professor states that it seems all the answers are correct, leaving the other student completely shocked. With this, the student finally realizes that the young man isn't a failure, but a true genius. Far from there, Ye Beichen walks content, happy that the exam was quick and that he can now have dinner with Miss Jiang. However, further ahead, a man in a suit waits for him on the path, gripping a dagger tightly. Ye Beichen dodged the dagger attack from the man in the suit. He then stepped back a few paces, keeping his distance. At that moment, he recognized the man and asked if it was him again. Without answering, the attacker charged forward, shouting for him to go to hell. With agility, Ye Beichen dodged another dagger attack. While defending, he noticed something strange about the man's movements. As he continued to protect himself, he also noticed the enemy's aura was different. Shortly after, the man in the suit was thrown against a wall. Ye Beichen watched the fallen body, wondering if he was dead. However, the man got back up and charged again. Suddenly, a sword appeared and a hand reached for it. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen grabbed the blade and pierced the attacker's chest. Even so, the man bit his arm. Faced with the unexpected bite, Ye Beichen reacted immediately, delivering a kick to the man in the suit who tried to block the blow. Observing the body on the ground, he noticed that even though it should be dead, it was still moving. A woman who was controlling the man underestimated him, stating he was just a cultivator. Ye Beichen focused his gaze to better analyze the situation, realizing his opponent was being controlled. The woman smiled, claiming she had finally found him. As the controlled man struggled in Ye Beichen's arms, Ye Beichen released a pulse of energy, breaking the imposed control. Surprised, the woman saw her puppet spell shattered. Decided, she pulled out 2 daggers and resolved to fight personally. Ye Beichen leaped towards her, shouting that now he had found her. His sword clashed violently against the woman's daggers. As he landed, he cracked the ground beneath his feet. The assassin wondered how anyone could be so strong. With the sword blade pointed at her neck, Ye Beichen stared at her coldly. He asked who she was, but the woman refused to reveal any information. Losing patience, Ye Beichen cut her with the sword, calling her attitude foolish. Before delivering the final blow, he stated that many people had already tried to kill him and wished her better luck in the next life. At an antique shop, the situation was reported in detail. A man informed the boss that the assassin they sent had failed the mission. Furious, the boss yelled at the shopkeeper, calling everyone a bunch of good-for-nothings. The older man apologized, admitting he hadn't investigated properly and hadn't known the target was a martial artist. The boss asked if he had discovered who the target was, and the shopkeeper handed him a photo. The image showed Ye Beichen next to the young woman who was with him. Upon recognizing him, the boss reacted and the shopkeeper asked if he knew him. He then revealed that the young man was the target the Juki Bureau had been looking for a long time. Surprised, the shopkeeper asked if he was the one who took the key, and the boss confirmed that the organization had already sent several groups, all of which failed. He then ordered that the young man's location not be revealed, as this was their chance to gain merit. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen and Jiang Xiaohua were enjoying a banquet, and she commented that the meal was on her. Suddenly, some men in suits approached and asked the young lady to accompany them. Ye Beichen points at the men, demanding to know who they are and ordering them to release Miss Jiang. Jiang Xiaohua calmly reassures him, explaining that they are just her family's bodyguards. At that moment, an older man appears and orders Xiaohua to come back with him, asking what kind of mess she's caused. Surprised, she turns, calls him dad, and asks why he's there, but he just questions if she even still considers him her father. Not understanding, the young woman insists on knowing what happened and why he's there. Then her father asks if Zhang Bing came looking for her, and she confirms he did. He then reveals that the young man is dead, leaving her completely shocked. The man explains that the Zhang family already knows what happened and is blaming their family, attacking them in the business world. He grabs her arm and insists they need to go apologize, but she refuses, stating that she didn't kill anyone. At that moment, Ye Beichen intervenes, confessing that he was the one who killed the young man, declaring he will take responsibility and handle the situation. Xiaohua's father asks if he really is the killer, while she pleads with Ye Beichen not to talk nonsense. Calmly, he responds that they don't need to worry, as he can handle everything. The older man warns him that the Zheng family is hiring assassins to hunt down the culprit and that he's sure to die. Unfazed, Ye Beichen turns and states that a real man owns his actions, adding that fate isn't set in stone yet. Then her father asks who the young man is, and Xiaohua replies that he's just a student from her school, leading him to question Ye Beichen's audacity. The scene shifts to the imposing Zhang Group building, where a large crowd is already gathering. 2 women comment that Zhang Zhong's son was murdered, and that the supposed banquet is actually an event to hire assassins. Shortly after, Ye Beichen arrives at the location and approaches the hall entrance. The 2 women approach him, asking if he also came for the Zhang family banquet, and he confirms. One of them comments that she heard there are many assassins present, and asks if he's one of them, receiving only a smile in response. She then asks if, being an assassin, he knows who killed Zhang Bing, and if that person is handsome. She further explains that the Zhang family has caused a lot of suffering in the city, and that many admire the hero who finally put an end to Zhang Bing. Hearing this, Ye Beichen better understands the situation, and asks if the Zhang family is truly so hated. At that moment, a group of security guards clears a path, announcing the arrival of President Zhang. The president appears and thanks everyone for attending the reward banquet. Without beating around the bush, he announces that the event is to recruit black market assassins and invites those interested to step forward. Then, one of the men steps forward and asks if it's true that the offered reward is 30 million. President Zhang corrects the announced amount and declares that the reward will be 50 million, transferred immediately after the assassin is killed. With a confident smile, the group leader states that, given such generosity, no one intends to hold back. He then turns to his men and orders them to find the assassin within 3 days. Before they can leave, a voice interrupts them, revealing that they don't need to search, as the assassin himself is right there. Everyone turns, shocked, while the women who were talking to Ye Beichen question how he could be the target. Faced with the revelation, President Zhang shouts at the hunters, ordering them to kill him if they want to receive the reward. Without hesitation, the group leader advances with 2 daggers in hand, ready to attack. Ye Beichen simply stares at him, unmoving, as the man approaches for the strike. The assassin is surprised to realize how quickly his attack is evaded. With a precise kick, Ye Beichen repels him and asks if he truly believed he could defeat him. Soon after, 2 other men leap towards him, calling him arrogant as they descend to attack. Calmly, he watches the enemies approaching from above. Then, in a swift movement, he grasps both blades with his bare fingers. The 2 assassins are incredulous, seeing their daggers stopped by bare hands. Unimpressed, Ye Beichen comments that their strength is pathetic and then breaks the blades. He then extends his hand and tells them to reincarnate and train harder. Filled with fury, the leader punches the ground and swears he will still kill him that very day. Soon after, he raises his hands and makes the floor in front of him shatter. Shards of rock fly towards the crowd, who begin screaming for help. In the center of the hall, a large explosion of debris forms. With a satisfied smile, President Zhang asks if they managed to get him. Amidst the rising dust, the leader of the assassins emerges and asks if that's all they've got. Amidst the rubble, Ye Beichen floats in the air. The guests look up, wondering what's happening and if it's some kind of supernatural phenomenon. Witnessing the scene, President Zhang realizes the young man is also a martial cultivator. He then declares that death is near for the one who dared to attack him from behind. Around them, the debris starts to move, advancing towards him. The leader of the assassins is hit squarely and falls violently to the ground. Annoyed, he complains that these assassins are utterly useless. Meanwhile, the 2 women observe everything, impressed by both the young man's strength and his good looks. Ye Beichen walks towards Zhang Xiong, who recoils in terror, begging him not to come closer. Without hesitation, the young man grabs him, confesses to killing his son, and demands that the pressure on the Zhang family cease immediately. In disbelief, Zhang Xiong questions how he dares to make demands in such a situation. Before he can continue, Ye Beichen cuts him off with a slap, telling him to stop talking nonsense. He then warns him one last time to stop oppressing the Zhang family, or he will die. Zhang Xiong just stares, unable to utter a single word. The scene then shifts to the Zhang family residence. In his office, Xiaohua's father examines some documents, his face heavy with worry. He complains that the Zhangs forcibly bought all their companies, leaving them with no way out. At that moment, his daughter enters and tries to comfort him, saying she doesn't believe the Zhang family can control everything. Even so, he blames her for running away from the marriage and forbids her from getting close to that suspicious young man. Xiaohua defends him, stating that Ye Beichen was the one who saved her, but her father scoffs, calling him just some poor kid. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rings, and he answers. On the other end, the secretary informs him that the Zhangs have withdrawn all acquisition plans and that business can return to normal. Unable to believe what he's hearing, he listens as the secretary adds that it was Ye Beichen who went to the banquet and sorted everything out. After hanging up, Xiaohua's father is completely speechless. Aloud, he wonders who this young man is to wield such power, while Xiaohua asks what happened. With a subtle smile, he reveals that her friend was the one who dealt with the Zhangs, leaving her stunned. He then praises the young man's capabilities and asks her to invite him for a meeting to thank him personally, and she agrees to contact him immediately. As he walks down the street, Ye Beichen reflects that the powerful Zhang family wasn't as unbeatable as he had imagined. Just then, his phone starts ringing in his pocket, and he takes it out to see who's calling. Answering, he hears Zhang Xiaohua thanking him and inviting him to her house. Curious, he asks where she lives and gets Fuyuan Estate as the reply. A short while later, he flags down a taxi passing on the highway. Once inside the vehicle, he tells the driver his destination, Fuyuan Estate. The driver smiles and asks him to buckle up. Suddenly, the car accelerates sharply, while the man locks the doors and slams the accelerator. Ye Beichen questions him, asking if it isn't too fast. With a carefree smile, the driver replies that this is nothing fast yet. Soon after, he leaps out of the moving car, telling the passenger to enjoy the ride. Immediately after, the taxi explodes in the middle of the street, sending up a massive cloud of smoke. The driver lands further ahead and comments on how simple it was to complete the mission. Elon praises him for the job, but the man asserts that since the target is a martial artist, he's probably only injured. Elon's boss then orders them to bring him back to interrogate him about the key's location. Without hesitation, the driver turns, ready to follow the order immediately. Soon after, he walks towards the still smoking wreckage of the vehicle. Suddenly, a hand emerges from the broken asphalt. Ye Beichen rises from the hole, calling him a sneaky rat. He then declares that he is truly angry now. With a single punch, he hits the driver's face. The man is hurled high into the air by the force of the impact. Elon commented that they had underestimated the young man's strength, as he had emerged from the explosion without a single scratch. Hearing this, Ye Beichen turned and recognized the older man. He then confronted him, asking if he wasn't satisfied with buying the jade pendants and had now come to kill and steal. However, Elon intervened, stating he didn't care about that trash and demanded the key be handed over immediately. Ye Beichen stared at him, not not understanding who this person was or what he was talking about. Then, Alan threatened him with a blade, giving him only 10 seconds to hand over what they wanted. The young man claimed he knew nothing about a key, but warned that if they touched him, no one would leave there alive. Annoyed, Alan called him stubborn and lunged forward with his weapon. However, the blow was stopped by an invisible barrier. Surprised, he was shocked to see his attack frozen in midair. Seizing the moment, Ye Beichen dodged and prepared to counterattack. With a precise kick, he hit Alan squarely, sending him flying backward and making him drop his weapon. The older master watched the scene, completely stunned. Soon after, Ye Beichen questioned the old man about the key, but was told it was a secret matter, far above his level. Impatient, he pointed at the elder and called him useless, declaring it was time for him to die. With a single flick of his finger, he struck the man's head. Afterward, he looked at the ring on his hand and decided he needed someone to investigate the whole situation. With a simple gesture, he sent a message through the air. In a distant location, a white-haired master meditated in complete silence. The message reached him, ordering him to uncover everything about the Bureau of Rarities. Back at the Jiang household, Xiaohua's father asked if Ye Beichen would really come, while she reassured him. At that moment, the young man appeared, waving and apologizing for the delay. The host welcomed him with a sincere smile, happy to finally see him there. During a handshake, he thanked him for everything he had done for the family. He then invited everyone inside, explaining he had prepared a banquet as a sign of gratitude. Already at the table, Xiaohua's father reiterated that without his help, the family would have been in serious trouble. Soon after, he stood up with a glass of wine and proposed a toast. Ye Beichen accepted, saying it was his responsibility to resolve the situation he himself had caused. He then downed the glass in one go. The host encouraged his daughter to drink more, as their guest had already finished his wine. However, the butler quietly warned him, reminding him that the young lady was known for not holding her liquor well. Even so, the father whispered that if he didn't get them drunk, nothing would happen between them. He concluded by saying he needed to make them drink, as he would rarely find such a good son-in-law again. Time passed as dinner continued. Ye Beichen and Xiaohua kept toasting and drinking, encouraging each other not to stop. Observing the scene, the father asked the butler to take them to a room to rest. Soon after, he questioned if the servant was stupid, making it clear it was his own daughter's room. The butler then ordered a maid to take the young lady and Mr. Ye to the same room. The woman settled them in bed and said it was time to sleep. Half asleep, Ye Beichen questioned why he was being called young master. The maid just smiled and closed the bedroom door. Xiaohua snuggled into him while sleeping. Amidst murmurs, she asked what that hard thing was. He embraced her and asked her not to move, just sleep. The night passed and a new day dawned. Jiang Xiaohua slowly opened her eyes. Turning over, she found Ye Beichen sleeping peacefully beside her. Suddenly, she sat up in bed and covered her face with her hands. The sudden movement woke him, making him ask what had happened. In response, she simply slapped him across the face, calling him a pervert. Waking up, Ye Beichen asked what was happening and how he ended up in her room. The young woman then questioned if he had done anything the night before. He promptly denied it, assuring her he hadn't done a thing. Still, she pointed to his underwear and asked why he wasn't wearing pants. Without arguing, he turned to get dressed, claiming it was all just a misunderstanding. Soon after, he grabbed his things and hurried out, telling her to go back to sleep. Outside, two men watched him leave, with the older one commenting that the deed was already done. Already far away, Ye Beichen scratched his head, trying to recall what had happened the night before. Suddenly, Dr. Shu appeared and greeted him. As he turned, Ye Beichen heard the man inform him there was news about the Wanbao Tower. Curious, he asked what that information was. Dr. Zhu then revealed they had found a place with bricks identical to those they had seen before, and the young man immediately asked to be taken there. A short while later, they arrived in front of a massive commercial building. Dr. Shui confirmed it was the place, explaining that his men had located the bricks inside the building. Without wasting time, Ye Beichen decided to check it personally, and the two headed towards the entrance. As he tried to go through the door, he collided with an invisible barrier. Confused, he asked what was happening, and Dr. Zui explained that permission was needed to enter. Just then, a man in a suit approached and used an access card. The passage opened before them. Finding the use of such a barrier in modern times interesting, Ye Beichen entered the place. Soon after, they found a room where three men were sitting in a circle. One of them commented that the power of that treasure would make him advance in level. When Ye Beichen asked where they were, Dr. Zui told him that the bricks had been found there, and that those men were also cultivators. Silently, he peeked through the door and wondered if the entire structure had been built to hide the tower. Suddenly, one of the men yelled, asking who was there. Ye Beichen told Dr. Shui they had been discovered, and told him not to be afraid. Since they had been spotted, he stepped out of the corridor. He walked towards the group to talk. The man questioned him about who he was, but Ye Beichen simply demanded to know where the Wanbao Tower was. Surprised, the men wondered how he knew about the tower. Then, one of them used his power to make a sword levitate. With the weapon in hand, he prepared to attack. In response, Ye Beichen decided to test his new technique, believing that anyone who knew about the tower couldn't be allowed to live. His companions commented that a single strike from the swordsman would be enough to eliminate the intruder. Even so, Ye Beichen proposed a deal: information about the tower in exchange for victory in the fight. The other two scoffed at his confidence, doubting he had any chance. Still, the challenger accepted the proposal. Soon after, he charged forward with his sword raised, ready to deliver the blow. Ye Beichen blocked the attack with his forearm. The impact of the collision pushed both of them back. At that instant, his companions realized he was also a cultivator. The swordsman declared that since the attack was blocked, things would be different now. He prepared to use a more powerful technique, and warned not to blame him for his cruelty. The opponent unleashed a tiger-like energy construct in his direction. In response, Ye Beichen materialized a sword in his hand to defend himself. He delivered a single strike. The blade intercepted the tiger and completely dispelled it. At this, the others couldn't believe the technique had been nullified. Calmly, Ye Beichen stated that his opponent's attack was too weak and told him to admit defeat. The blade stopped a few centimeters from the man's neck. Ye Beichen states that the man lost, and if he doesn't want to die, he must tell everything he knows. The man agrees. However, before saying anything, he slowly backs away. Then, he suddenly turns and attacks from behind, shouting that Ye Beichen should be the first to go to hell. Faced with this, Ye Beichen questions him, asking if he still intends to resist. The man then yells for his brothers to attack immediately. The other two charge forward with knives drawn, shouting for him to die. Soon after, they plunge their blades into Ye Beichen's neck. The opponent comments disdainfully that Ye Beichen wasn't that impressive after all. The others agree, saying that he deserved it for daring to provoke them. At that moment, Ye Beichen's body begins to transform into smoke. It completely disintegrates, leaving the men confused. They wonder what's happening and if it was just a fake body. Right behind them, the real Ye Beichen appears, warning them not to blame him for a lack of courtesy, since they didn't keep their promise. Without hesitation, he lunges forward to attack with his sword. The strike hits one of the men's protective barriers. With the impact, the barrier shatters. The explosion throws both of them far away. The survivor wonders how that's possible and what Ye Beichen's cultivation level could be. Ye Beichen walks towards them, declaring that the promise was broken. Then, he attacks again with his sword, stating that this is the price they must pay. The bodies of the two men disintegrate into smoke, while the last survivor wonders how that could have happened. In a panic, the man starts running, screaming for help. However, Dr. Zhui blocks his path, saying he can't leave without his master's permission. Trapped between the two, the young man finds himself cornered. Ye Beichen hits him with a punch, stating he didn't authorize him to flee. Lying on the ground, the man apologizes, while Ye Beichen asks where he went wrong. Desperate, he begs for his life to be spared. Faced with this, Ye Beichen demands he tell everything about the Wanbao Tower, and the man confirms that it truly exists. He explains that many years ago, the president of Longxing Group chose that land to build a building. During construction, the workers found a strange bronze door. Driven by curiosity, they entered a cave. The story continues, revealing that inside, an altar with a gem was found. The gem released a special energy that allowed for cultivation. The name Wanbao Tower was discovered engraved on a stele, which a specialist later came across. Back in the present, Ye Beichen asks where the entrance to the altar is, but the man hesitates to respond. Suddenly, the young man convulses in pain and starts bleeding from his mouth and nose. Dr. Shu asks what happened, and Ye Beichen explains that they've been discovered and someone stopped him from talking further. He picks up the gem and comments that the situation is far more complex than he imagined. Then he tells Dr. Shui they need to leave immediately. Elsewhere, a white-haired man is meditating. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and calls out to someone. A young woman appears and asks what he wants as he orders her to go kill a person as quickly as possible. Curious, she asks who needs to be eliminated. The man then shows an image of Ye Beichen and informs her that he is the target. Without hesitation, the young woman agrees and immediately leaves to fulfill the mission. One sunny morning, a classmate greeted Ye Beichen. He returned the greeting, remarking that after everything that had happened, current times seemed less and less straightforward. The existence of groups like Banshanmen, Jukuju, and Longxing made it clear that cultivation in the world had never truly stopped. It had just taken on new names. He knew Jukuju was after him for a key, though he still didn't know exactly what it was for. The questions of where this key was and if he'd lost part of his memory remained unanswered. Later, in the classroom, the teacher announced some good news for everyone. A new student would be transferring to their class. He then asked Sun Duo to come in. She introduced herself to her classmates and asked them to take good care of her from then on. The students immediately started whispering about the new arrival. Then, the teacher asked her to sit behind Ye Beichen, and the young woman agreed. She walked to the desk right behind him. As she settled in, she began observing him with a slight smile. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. Ye Beichen stood up and stretched, remarking that class was finally over. Just then, the new student approached and called out to him. She invited him to lunch, and he asked if the invitation was really for him. Some classmates commented on how lucky he was to be asked out by the new girl. Without giving him a chance to refuse, she pulled him by the hand, telling him not to be shy and to come with her. Once at the restaurant, he questioned why she was being so nice, especially as she offered to pay the bill. She replied that it was love at first sight, which thoroughly intrigued him, making him question her declaration. He told her not to be shy and to go get him some chili. While he wasn't looking, the young woman took the opportunity to put some powder in his food. Ye Beichen returned with the chili, and she thanked him naturally. Commenting that he was hungry, he began to eat. He finished his entire meal while she watched him from across the table. Time passed as they remained seated. Inside, she wondered why the poison hadn't taken effect yet, until Ye Beichen announced he was already full. Just then, a classmate approached their table and called out to him. The guy explained there would be a meeting in the dorm and that he couldn't find him anywhere. Ye Beichen agreed, saying it was a good opportunity to catch up with his classmates. He then asked his friend to take him there, and the friend eagerly agreed. The young woman tried to call him back, but he was already leaving. As he walked away, her hand began to bleed. Ye Beichen wondered what that woman, who clearly wanted to kill him, planned to do next. Back at the restaurant, the girl angrily questioned why the poison hadn't worked. Meanwhile, Ye Beichen arrived with his friend at the meeting spot. His classmate introduced him to the others as their missing roommate. The guys greeted him and invited him to sit down, keen to get to know him better. Suddenly, a man kicked the door of the room open. All the young men immediately turned towards the entrance. The man entered with his group, announcing that they had reserved the hotel and ordering everyone to leave. One of Ye Beichen's friends questioned if the place had actually been reserved. Another guy refused to leave, stating they had arrived first and that it didn't make any sense. Annoyed, the group's leader threatened him, asking if he was looking for death. Without warning, he stepped forward forward and landed a punch square on the young man's face. The red-haired young man, indignant, prepared to fight back, demanding to know how he dared to assault him. He then lunged forward, attempting to land a punch on the man, but his opponent just called him weak and struck him in the back. The impact sent him flying into the air. His friends quickly caught him, asking if he was okay. Losing patience, the group's leader ordered his men to kick them out. Just then, Ye Beichen stepped forward and said they couldn't just hit his friend and walk away. The men scoffed at his courage, suggesting they make an example out of him. His friend tried to persuade him to leave, but Ye Beichen insisted they had to pay for the medical expenses. The leader laughed at his demand. He then threatened him, ordering his men to kill him. The thugs charged forward to attack. With ease, Ye Beichen dodged the first punch. He calmly remarked that they were far too slow. Then he threw one of them over his shoulder, declaring he'd show them what a real fight looked like. Without pausing, he did the same to the other two. In a single swift move, he sent another crashing into the wall. The group leader wondered how any of this was possible. His friends remarked that the scene looked straight out of a movie and wondered if he was some kind of martial artist. Ye Beichen walked up to the leader and asked if he was ready to pay the medical expenses now. In response, the man pulled out his phone, declaring he was from Banshan Gate and shouldn't be underestimated. He then called his boss, asking for help and complaining that he was being bullied at the restaurant. Ye Beichen challenged him to wait, saying he wanted to see who this Banshan Gate boss was. Half an hour later, Dr. Shui arrived at the scene, asking who was bullying his Banshan Gate people. The man greeted him, saying he'd finally shown up. He then pointed at Ye Beichen, accusing him of attacking his men. Dr. Shui recognized Ye Beichen and called him Master. Ye Beichen smiled, asking if Dr. Shui was their boss. Immediately, Dr. Shui knelt down, apologizing for the trouble his subordinates had caused. Confused, the man wondered why his boss called Ye Beichen Master. Ye Beichen's friend was surprised to realize he had such an influential subordinate. Dr. Shui then called the thug closer. He grabbed the man's arm, who stared back, not understanding. Without warning, he twisted the man's arm, saying this was the price for offending the master. The man screamed in pain, clutching his injured arm. Dr. Zhui ordered him to get lost immediately. The thug obeyed, running out of the room. Ye Beichen praised Dr. Zhu's actions, and Dr. Zhui thanked him for the acknowledgement. Afterward, Ye Beichen asked if there was any news about Wanbao Tower, but Dr. Zhui replied not yet, though he did have information about the Juki department. Dr. Zhu explained that they were looking for a young man named Ye Beichen because of a key he possessed. Ye Beichen found the name quite a coincidence, and Dr. Shu asked if he knew the person. He denied it, saying it was just the name of an old acquaintance. He then dismissed Dr. Shu, stating he needed to continue his meeting with his roommates. His friend asked if he came from an important family, but Ye Beichen replied that he was just an ordinary person. Ye Beichen then proposed a toast to his friends. Hours later, everyone said their goodbyes, remarking on how late it was, and that it was time to go home and rest. He bid them farewell, confirming they'd see each other the next day. As he walked alone down the street, he commented that the wine had been strong and his vision was blurry. Suddenly, Sun Duo lunged at him, holding a knife. While Ye yawns and comments he's sleepy, a girl suddenly jumps towards him, brandishing a dagger. Then, he turns and asks if she's Sun Duo, his classmate. The young woman greets him shyly, trying to appear harmless. Ye Beichen then asks how she managed to appear there, since she should be at school. At that moment, the girl decides she needs to find a way to eliminate him when he's vulnerable. She grabs his arm and says she likes him, but the young man finds her behavior strange and asks what she's doing. In response, he simply lets out a Sun Duo insists, asking if he's sure about what he's saying. Taking on a confident pose, she confirms she's completely decided. Ye Beichen in turn questions if she's a cross-dressing boy, given how flat she is in front. Annoyed, the young woman asks if he's trying to insult her. Soon after, she pulls out a dagger and declares she won't pretend anymore. Then, she charges forward, screaming that she's going to kill him. Before the blade reaches him, the young man grabs her wrist and comments that she couldn't control herself and is also very inexperienced. He also observes that she must have put in a lot of effort to infiltrate and get close to him. Soon after, he launches an attack against his opponent. Sun Duo reacts and defends the blow using her daggers. Even so, the young man finds an opening and lands a precise kick. With the impact, she's violently thrown to the ground. Demanding answers, he asks who she really is, but the girl only asks when he noticed her infiltration. Ye Beichen replies that it was from the moment she put poison in his noodles. Surprised, the young woman then asks if he knew everything from the start. He confirms, saying he was just acting, and then asks what her intentions are. The young man states that he only wants to know who sent her, but she refuses to reveal any information. With a slight smile, he asks again if she's sure about that decision. Soon after, Ye Beichen grabs her clothes and warns her that he won't be gentle anymore, while she screams for help, and he claims he just wants to get closer. In tears, the young woman states that she'll tell him everything. At this, the young man warns that she only has one chance, and then she reveals it was Meng Jiang, leader of the Longxing group and one of the elders of the Juki Bureau. Ye Beichen quietly repeats the names of the group and the bureau. With a slight smile, he comments that, in that case, it's an old friend. Sun Duo asks if she can leave now, but he agrees only on the condition that she delivers a message, asking Meng Jiang to meet him the next day near the school. Confused, the girl asks what he's doing, and the young man explains that it's a challenge to settle scores with the Juki Bureau and the Longxing group. Surprised, she asks if he's gone crazy. Then, Ye Beichen disappears, saying he's not crazy and that he'll see her tomorrow. An hour later, in a city building, Sun Duo enters a room and calls out for her boss. The assassin master asks if she's returned and how the mission went, but the young woman apologizes and admits she failed. Annoyed, he crumbles the paper in his hands and questions how she dares to return after failing. The girl explains that she only returned because she received permission to bring a message, and then her master asks what it is. She relays the message, saying he's been challenged to a final battle the next day near the school, fool to settle everything. The man questions the origin of such animosity, and Sun Duo explains that the young man claimed he was being pursued by the Juki Bureau and wanted to settle scores. Intrigued, he wonders what kind of resentment that boy could have against them, and then he picks up his phone. The master asks the Grand Elder if he knows anyone named Ye Beichen, while the person on the other end of the line responds by asking if it's the Ye Beichen who took the key. Surprised, he asks if it was really Ye Beichen who took the key. With a smile, the assassin master comments that, after so much searching, the target simply appeared without any effort. Finally, he declares that he accepts the challenge, and Sun Duo agrees. Ye Beichen sits down to meditate in silence. As he concentrates, he states that the next day's battle will be grand, and he needs to prepare for it. Just then, a book slowly emerges from his mouth. Figures begin to come out from inside the book, then dissolve around him. Soon after, a sword materializes in front of him. He comments that the blade, when combined with the law of thunder, would be capable of defeating even an old monster. Lightning bolts begin to streak across the city's night sky. Watching the phenomenon from the window, the assassin master wonders who could be cultivating. Feeling the intensity, he realizes the power surpasses that of the old monsters and concludes that this city is dangerous. The sun then slowly rises over the buildings. Several figures land on a rooftop. One of the men asks if that was the agreed-upon location. At that moment, the assassin master arrives accompanied by Sun Duo, and the man confirms that it is indeed the place. The master comments to Meng Jiang that capturing Ye Beichen will be a great achievement, while Meng Jiang assures him that the young man will die. However, the other person corrects him, saying that the most important thing is to recover the key in Ye Beichen's possession, and Meng Jiang agrees. Without another word, he simply orders everyone to advance. The assassin master and Sun Duo jump from the building, and he tells her to follow him. One of the men comments that letting Meng Jiang handle this is being complacent, while another states that if Ye Beichen dares to show up, he will surely die. Next, Meng Jiang orders his subordinates to prepare a trap, just in case something goes wrong. The two men immediately jump off to carry out the order. He then looks at his watch and wonders if it was all just a bluff since lunchtime is approaching and no one has appeared. Shortly after, a subordinate returns, informing him that the trap is ready, and Meng Jiang tells them to keep waiting. Another man approaches and asks where Ye Beichen is, suggesting he must have gotten scared and given up. With disdain, Meng Jiang states that a boy like that wouldn't have the courage to challenge them, and it was all just bravado. Meanwhile, the assassin master wonders if he was tricked, but Sun Duo assures him the challenge was real, making him comment that perhaps he overestimated him. Just then, Ye Beichen appears in a nearby alley and asks who they were talking about. Surprised, Sun Duo quickly turns and informs her boss that he has arrived. The men on the rooftop comment that the boy truly doesn't fear death and that he showed up after all. Ye Beichen then asks if that man is Meng Jiang, and the master replies that he admires his courage but will spare him if he hands over the key. But the young man replies that he was the one who challenged them, and therefore, they are the ones who should be begging for mercy. Ye Beichen adds that he doesn't possess the key, but states that it's time to settle the score for all the persecutions. At this, the assassin master draws his sword and asks if Ye Beichen takes him for a fool, lying when he's at death's door. He then launches an attack and declares he wants to see how long the young man can keep pretending to be strong. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen stops the projectile with his bare hands. Surprised, the master and Sun Duo watch the scene, while he questions if the young man really stopped the blade with his bare hands. On the rooftop, Meng Jiang comments that he didn't expect that boy to have any skill. Soon after, Ye Beichen shatters the projectile. The fragments rapidly scatter towards the assassin master. He manages to deflect them with his sword and admits that the boy is stronger than he imagined. Some fragments hit Sun Duo, who ends up being thrown far away. At that instant, the young man appears, wielding a sword, and tells Meng Jiang and the members of the Juki Bureau to join the fight. Then he launches his own attack, stating that facing just one person isn't enough. The assassin master blocks the blow, wondering when Ye Beichen got so close. With the impact, he is pushed back, and his sword falls to the ground. Ye Beichen prepares to attack again, and tells him not to blame him for being merciless, as the chance he had was wasted. Soon after, he delivers multiple consecutive blows with his sword. The assassin master is violently thrown to the ground. Lying there, he wonders how any of this is possible. Sun Duo approaches and calls out to her boss, who remains slumped on the ground. Holding his sword, Ye Beichen remarks that he clearly overestimated himself, daring to challenge him with so little strength. From the rooftop, Meng Jiang's men exclaim that it's impossible. They had believed Meng Jiang was dead. One of them observes that the boy was clearly hiding his true strength. At that moment, Meng Jiang orders them to activate the trap, determined to make him pay for what he's done. Ye Beichen approaches Sun Duo and asks where the other members of the Juki Bureau are, but she backs away, pleading with him not to come closer. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet gives way, pulling him down. Moments later, he hits the ground, enveloped in a cloud of dust. Meng Jiang declares that this is the Purgatory Formation, a place from which no one has ever escaped alive, asserting that the boy is now dead. On his knees, Ye Beichen wonders where he is and if he's stumbled into some kind of formation. He then realizes that the Juki Bureau didn't dare face him directly, which is why they resorted to such dirty tricks. 3 mud monsters rise up around him. One of the creatures looms over him. The young man leaps back as the monster slams into the ground, making him question what on earth these things are. Soon, he finds himself completely surrounded by the creatures. The mud monsters advance, striking the ground all around him. He wonders if he's been trapped here just to be killed by these things. Then, Ye Beichen launches a sword attack, shouting, "Tianzhen!" The strike cuts through his enemies, slicing all the mud monsters in half. He then remarks that continuing like this isn't an option, and he needs to get out of here as quickly as possible. However, the creatures' bodies begin to regenerate. Surprised, he questions if these monsters have immortal bodies. The creatures completely reform and advance once more. Seeing this, he declares that if that's the case, he won't just cut the monsters, but the very space around them. The young man then prepares to face the creatures again. He announces the first form of the Heavenly Thunder Sword. Then, he unleashes the attack. One sword opens the heavens, which rips through the monsters. The sword strike tears apart the formation's space. Meng Jiang turns, shocked, and asks what that was. He and his subordinate realize that the formation's space has been shattered and wonder about the energy behind that sword. Meng Jiang watches in disbelief as Ye Beichen emerges from the rift, exclaiming that he actually managed to escape. Hidden, Sun Duo wonders what his cultivation level must be to possess such overwhelming strength. Ye Beichen shouts, demanding to know where the cowards of the Juki Bureau are hiding. He scans the surrounding buildings and quickly spots them. Meng Jiang realizes he's been discovered. One of his men asks if they should fight, while another suggests they could defeat him if they attack together. However, Meng Jiang states that the boy is strange, and they can no longer act so recklessly. He then orders a retreat so they can reconsider their plan, and his men agree. Ye Beichen appears in front of them and tells them to run towards the alley. Realizing this, Meng Jiang understands that the situation is far from favorable. Ye Beichen asked why they were retreating when they were the ones looking for him, and one of the men asked what he wanted. The young man replied that he intended to kill them to settle the score, but Meng Jiang warned him not to think they were afraid just because he'd killed their leader. One of the men declared that Ye Beichen was too arrogant to be spared, while the other suggested killing him and delivering his body to their master to turn him into a puppet. Hearing this, the young man just repeated the word master. The two charged forward, yelling to kill him, with one of them spinning a blade in the air. Ye Beichen blocked the spinning attack with his sword. He then remarked that their strength was decent, but still far from enough. As he pushed one of the men back, the other already leapt into the air, ready to strike. The two, now on the ground, shouted for him not to be so arrogant. A blade descended towards him. Unfazed, Ye Beichen simply commented that both of them were too weak. Then he plunged his sword into the ground, and lightning began to emanate from it. A dragon made of lightning formed and let out a deafening roar. The creature charged forward, hitting both men directly. Meng Jiang watched the fallen bodies on the ground and wondered what kind of power that was. Ye Beichen leaped toward him, asking why he was hesitating and stating that it was his turn now. Furious, Meng Jiang called him a bastard and said he was deceiving everyone. Then, he created several energy orbs and questioned if the young man really thought he was afraid. Immediately after, he launched the projectiles toward him, shouting for him to die. Ye Beichen parried the attacks with his sword. With a slight smile, he commented that Meng Jiang was a bit more interesting than the others. The young man then advanced at incredible speed. Meng Jiang looked at the sky, wondering where he'd gone, thinking he might have disappeared. However, Ye Beichen appeared behind him and said he was right there. He then cut Meng Jiang's arm. The man fell to his knees on the ground. Clutching his wound, he cursed Ye Beichen for daring to hurt him. Meng Jiang revealed a pill in his palm, saying he hadn't wanted to use it to forcefully increase his cultivation. Still, he ended up swallowing it, claiming he now had no other choice. Ye Beichen immediately noticed his presence had changed. An explosion of energy enveloped Meng Jiang. He then launched two energy tornadoes that surged toward Ye Beichen. The young man ended up trapped between the two vortices. At that moment, he realized he was trapped and couldn't move. Even so, he tried to free himself from the force holding him still. Meng Jiang declared that Ye Beichen wasn't all that impressive, and that he'd worried for nothing. With a confident smile, Ye Beichen asked if he thought he'd already won. Surprised, Meng Jiang questioned if he wasn't dead yet. Ye Beichen delivered a sword strike and declared that Meng Jiang was the one who would die. The attack hit him squarely. Meng Jiang was violently thrown against a wall. He turned around and commented that the Juki Bureau was a great disappointment. Then, he decided that with his revenge settled, it was time to deal with other matters. Suddenly, Ye Beichen fell to his knees on the ground. Sun Duo desperately pleaded for help, but he told her not to scream, as he didn't intend to kill her. The young man then approached the assassin master's body. He touched the man's forehead and commented that there was information about the Pavilion of 100 Treasures there, stating he would search his memories. Energy flowed from his hand into the master's head. The scene then shifted into a memory. In it, he found himself in a cave before a pool of strange liquid. A mustached man was submerged in that pool, and before everything disappeared, he said he would never forget Ye Beichen. Ye Beichen makes a phone call to check on Jindayu's location. Hearing that he is near the school, Ye Beichen asks him to wait at the main gate. After hanging up, he realizes the intelligence regarding the treasure pavilion is too vague. He will have to investigate it himself. Just then, Dr. Xu rushes over, bowing respectfully and calling him master, awaiting his orders. Ye Beichen hands him a mask and a card. Confused, the doctor asks what they are. Ye Beichen explains that it is a human skin mask and an identity card. When Dr. Xue asks whose identity it belongs to, Ye Beichen instructs him to wear the mask to infiltrate the Longxing group and investigate the treasure pavilion. He then dismisses the doctor, saying he needs to rest, and Dr. Xue vanishes. Meanwhile, Wu Ting is sitting at a table filled with various dishes. Ye Beichen enters the house and announces his return. She invites him to sit and eat, noting his timing is perfect. Surprised by the delicious spread, the young man grabs a bowl and says he won't stand on ceremony. Wu Ting advises him to slow down so he doesn't choke. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua bursts into the room, shouting Ye Beichen's name. She demands to know why he is there, accusing him of leaving her room just to meet another woman. She grabs his hand and drags him out, ignoring his protests that he hasn't finished eating. Outside a building, he asks what she wants. Zhang Xiaohua explains she is looking for a medicinal ingredient to treat her meridians, and drags him inside. Inside the shopping center, a vendor announces a new stock of medicinal materials. The young woman is confident she will find what she needs due to the conference happening that day. However, Ye Beichen comments that the scents are all mixed up. up, making it hard to distinguish specific herbs. Suddenly, a specific smell catches his attention. Intrigued, he approaches a table displaying various ingredients. Zhang Xiaohua asks what happened. He picks up a flower, noting how strange it is. His vision suddenly shifts. He sees a mustached man lying in a pool of liquid, with a flower growing out of his chest. The corpse suddenly opens its eyes and screams. The flower seems to shoot toward Ye Beichen, hitting him in the chest. Zhang Xiaohua quickly supports him, asking what is wrong. He replies it's nothing, realizing the flower contained a residual memory. Holding the herb, he wonders if this plant has the power to bring the dead back to life. The vendor asks if he wants to buy it. Bystanders whisper that anyone brave enough to buy the blood flower usually dies without cause. The vendor states that if he isn't afraid of death, the price is 10 million. Without hesitating, Ye Beichen produces a card and closes the deal. Zhang Xiaohua asks if he's serious about buying it, and Ye Beichen confirms, asking if he looks like he's joking. With an interested smile, the vendor extends his hand and asks for the card. He swipes the card, thinking it's his lucky day for finding such a fool. Annoyed, Zhang Xiaohua calls him useless for not stopping him. In the crowd, a couple comments that he must be a fearless fool, perhaps with something wrong in his head. At another stall, a vendor loudly announces that high-quality pills are for sale. Zhang Xiaohua asks what kind of pills they are, and he explains they help with longevity and cultivation. Excited, she rushes to the stall, declaring she's finally found what she was looking for. The young woman asks the vendor for the price, and he replies that each one costs 100 million. She's shocked by the price and questions how something like that could be so expensive. The vendor tells her to leave and stop disrupting his business if she can't afford it. At that moment, Ye Beichen intervenes, asking how he dares to sell such low-quality pills for that price. The couple watching from afar finds the situation interesting and decides to see how it unfolds. The vendor tells Ye Beichen to leave, but he insists he's not wrong and that the pill is indeed low quality. With disdain, the man stares at him and asks if he happens to have any better pills. Ye Beichen replies that he doesn't have any ready, but he can refine them, surprising Zhang Xiaohua. The couple scoffs at the claim, commenting that refining pills isn't something just anyone can do. The vendor then challenges him, saying that if he succeeds, he'll eat his own shot upside down. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen accepts the challenge and approaches a large cauldron as the vendor asks what he plans to do. With ease, he lifts the heavy cauldron with just one hand, astonishing the couple with his strength. Next, he throws a handful of herbs into the container. Smiling, he tells everyone to open their eyes wide and watch. Soon after, he tosses the cauldron into the air, declaring he'll show them what true pill refining looks like. Stammering, the vendor asks if he's a cultivator. The cauldron stops spinning, and only smoke begins to pour out of it. Zhang Xiaohua watches the scene, asking if it's just smoke. The couple laughs, saying the whole display was nothing but a sham. Suddenly, a beam of light shoots out from inside the cauldron. A single red pill slowly emerges from the object. Impressive aroma fills the air, and the couple reacts, the woman questioning if it's truly a high-quality pill. Stunned, the vendor wonders how it's possible, while Ye Beichen calmly confirms that he really did it. He then offers the pill to Zhang Xiaohua as a gift, and she asks if he's serious. With the pill in her hands, the young woman wonders if she's dreaming, surprised that he actually knows how to refine pills. Ye Beichen comments that the shop's ingredients aren't good quality and tells her to come to him whenever she needs anything. The couple admits that, in the end, they were the fools. Then he turns to the vendor and reminds him of the promise, but the man pretends he didn't say anything. Approaching with an intense gaze, Ye Beichen asks if he's sure, leaving the vendor speechless. With a single command, he orders the man to kneel, and he immediately drops to the ground. Desperate, the vendor doesn't understand why he suddenly knelt down on his own. Then, Ye Beichen calls Zhang Xiaohua to leave, and she agrees without hesitation. The vendor pulls out his phone and swears he won't let this public humiliation go unpunished. Soon after, he calls the president and reports that he's run into a problem. Already outside, Ye Beichen asks if she really needed the pill, and the young woman explains it's for her father's treatment. Hearing this, he asks what ailment afflicts the man. Zhang Xiaohua replies that they don't know for sure yet, as it's an extremely rare case. At that moment, a voice shouts for them to stop, making Ye Beichen turn to see who it is. The shop vendor appears, accompanied by several men, saying that he can't just walk away after humiliating him. He then orders his thugs to attack and cripple him. However, an older man, the association president, arrives with his guards and orders everyone to stop. The vendor points at Ye Beichen, but the president insists the association needs talent like him. The man is left utterly confused by this. Then, the president extends his hand, inviting Ye Beichen to join the association. However, the young man directly replies that he's not interested. At the refusal, the president's expression immediately darkens. Ye Beichen says he's in a hurry and tells them to get out of the way, but the man warns him. He states that he doesn't fear cultivators and was only interested in Ye Beichen's pill refining ability. Ignoring him, Ye Beichen tells him to stop yelling, finding him too noisy. Annoyed, the president curses him for his lack of respect. Immediately after, he orders his men to kill him. The four henchmen draw their knives and confirm the order. They surround the couple, shouting for him to die. Ye Beichen calls them annoying, just as lightning strikes everyone. The president is stunned by what he sees and tries to play it off, saying it was all just a test. Then, he announces that the show is just beginning. As his two bodyguards prepare to attack, the two slam their hands onto the ground, unleashing their powers. Pillars of fire and ice surge towards them, making Zhang Xiaohua scream for him to be careful. Nevertheless, Ye Beichen materializes a sword and tells her not to be afraid. He then charges forward, promising that no one will hurt her while he's there. The sword strike moves forward with immense power. The bodyguards are impressed by the technique, something they'd never seen before. Ye Beichen rapidly rapidly advances toward the two men. One of them realizes the imminent danger. With a single movement, the young man sweeps past both of them with his sword. The president is shocked to see his strongest bodyguards defeated so easily. Ye Beichen turns around and states that he didn't want any trouble, but they had gone too far. He then warns them not to blame him for what's coming next. A single strike hits both the president and the vendor simultaneously. He warns them that he'll spare their lives this time, but there will be no mercy next time. Confused, the president wonders who on earth he is. Jiang Xiaohua comments that Ye Beichen is full of secrets and anything but simple. He then calls her to go home, asking why she's still standing there. Soon after, they both arrive at her residence. Ye Beichen shows curiosity about the young woman's father's rare illness. She asks if he understands medicine, and he confirms that he does. Jiang Xiaohua enters the house and announces her arrival. Then she finds several men collapsed on the living room floor. Ye Beichen asks what happened in that place. Frightened, the young woman rushes inside, calling out for her father. She searches for him around the room, pleading with him not to scare her. At that moment, Ye Beichen activates an ability in his eyes. His vision reveals traces extending from the bodies on the floor. Intrigued, he wonders how something so pure could be there and states that something is wrong. The traces lead him to a mustached man standing in the middle of the room. The man turns around and asks who is spying. Ye Beichen exclaims that it's impossible. Surprised, he questions how something like that could still exist after 2,000 years. Jiang Xiaohua asks if with his abilities, he can find her father. Ye Beichen affirms that he already has a clue. Xiaohua asks if he's serious. He then tells her to follow him and the two run off. Ye Beichen leaps through the air, carrying Jiang Xiaohua in his arms. He lands at the entrance of a cave and announces their arrival. The young woman asks if her father is inside, and he confirms it's the same presence he'd sensed at her house. She urges him to go in and check the place. Inside the cave, they find a man submerged in a pool, while an object slowly descends towards him. Jiang Xiaohua recognizes him as her father and confirms he's indeed there. Ye Beichen asks if her father has any enemies, but she states that he's a peaceful person and shouldn't have any. Ye Beichen finds the situation strange, but the young woman rushes to help, saying that saving her father is the priority. At that moment, Ye Beichen shouts for her to wait. Suddenly, several arrows are fired in their direction. The projectiles almost hit her, and he yells for her to be careful. In an instant, he appears in front of her and projects a shield to protect her. The shield begins to crack under the impact of the arrows. The mustached man observes the scene and states that this young man is anything but simple. Seeing this, he decides he needs to investigate him more carefully. Ye Beichen stops her from moving forward, warning that the energy of this place is strange and she shouldn't act rashly. He says he will deal with the enemy while preparing an attack. A projection of his hand moves through the cave towards the target. Then, two identical men emerge from the pool. Ye Beichen pushes her to the ground, alerting her that someone is watching them from behind. A projectile hits the wall just above them, and Jiang Xiaohua asks what kind of monster that is. He stands up, lamenting that he only came to save someone and had no intention of causing trouble. Then, he draws his sword and declares that since his opponent likes to play games, he will play along until the very end, unleashing a powerful attack. The attack collides with spikes that rise from the pool. The form of a dragon manifests from the attack. The creature hits the surface of the liquid. The mustached man is surprised by what he sees. The dragon dives towards the other man, who is sitting in meditation. He creates a barrier to defend himself and comments that it's interesting to have been discovered. Ye Beichen pulls the man out of the pool and asks Jiang Xiaohua to protect him, stating that the kidnapper is no ordinary person. He instructs her to take her father and move on, but she hesitates. Then he urges her not to hesitate and to go quickly. The young woman asks him to be careful and says she will be waiting outside. Ye Beichen watches as she leaves, taking her father with her. The mustached man jumps and attacks the creature Ye Beichen invoked. The aggressor calls the manifestation an animal and prepares a counterattack. Then he launches a direct blow against the dragon. The man orders his attack to disperse. Ye Beichen simply observes his opponent's actions. The figure reappears inside the pool and wonders if it's really him. Soon after, he levitates out of the liquid and stares at Ye Beichen. He declares that they have finally met. Ye Beichen merely asks who he is. The man retorts, questioning how he dares to ask that after killing so many people from his organization. Ye Beichen asks if he is from the Juki Bureau, and the other replies that after his organization was destroyed, it's natural to seek revenge. Ye Beichen deduces that he kidnapped Jiang Xiaohua's father to lure him. The man praises his intelligence but claims he doesn't plan to seek revenge. Then he grasps the blade of the sword, explaining that he only wants to uncover Ye Beichen's secrets. His hand is cut by the blade. Then spikes form and surge forward, piercing Ye Beichen's body. Hit, Ye Beichen stumbles back, dropping his sword. He accuses the man of using a sneak attack and fighting dishonorably. The bearded man claims it won't be easy for Ye Beichen to escape. Then, more projectiles are launched his way. Facing this, he braces for the imminent impact. However, Ye Beichen asks who said he intended to run. Soon after, he projects another barrier to defend against the attack. With a simple gesture, he calls his sword back to him. The man is surprised to see the weapon flying towards him. Even so, he shrouds himself in energy and declares that retreating was never his style. The sword slices through the defense, shattering it completely. Ye Beichen then grasps the weapon as it returns to his hand. With his opponent down, he questions his identity, stating that this presence doesn't belong in this era. The man recognizes the technique and reveals he's part of the Qingyun Gate. Surprised, Ye Beichen asks if he really knows that technique. In response, the man says it's more than just knowing. He then begins to explain his connection to the Qingyun Gate. In a flashback, he appears before the gate's entrance, commenting on destiny. Back in the present, Ye Beichen questions him again, and the man explains they are similar but see different worlds. He extends a hand towards Ye Beichen, calling him Kid. Ye Beichen braces himself for whatever comes next. However, the man bids farewell, saying saying they will meet again, and vanishes into the cave wall. Ye Baishan observes the mark left on the rock and wonders if he truly left. Soon after, he calls the man strange and confusing. Even so, he begins to ponder if it wasn't a test, and the meaning of the man's words. The scene then shifts to a forest clearing. Zhang Xiaohua is beside her father, asking him not to scare her. She checks his pulse and realizes it has stopped. Urgently, she states that time is short and they can't delay any longer. Next, she adjusts her father's collar. Ye Beichen approaches and asks if the man has woken up yet. She replies that her father won't survive. At this, he asks what happened. Zhang Xiaohua explains that the injection she administered had no effect. Ye Beichen assesses that he's barely holding on, and not even a god could save him now. As the young woman falls into despair, he says there might be a method that could work. She, however, states it's useless as her father's condition is no different from being dead. He then shows a red flower and suggests they try using it. Zhang Xiaohua asks if he intends to save him with that, and Ye Beichen replies that it was an expensive item. He brings the flower closer to the man's chest, suggesting it might have some effect. Her father opens his eyes for an instant and yells for them to stop. Calling him crazy, he claims that flower is an ill-omened object. Even so, the flower is placed on his chest, and a petal falls. Desperate, the young woman shouts at Ye Beichen to remove the flower, saying it's a curse. She turns and calls out to him. Already standing, the man calls his daughter by name, Xiaohua. Next, he looks around and asks where he is and how he got there. The young woman bows, relieved, stating that he finally woke up. Ye Beichen holds the flower and muses that it loses a petal with each life saved. He wonders if the person would die if all the petals fell off. Zhang Xiaohua bows before him and apologizes for misjudging him. Finally, she kisses him on the cheek, leaving him utterly surprised. Ye Beichen sits under a tree, remarking that Miss Jiang is truly surprising. At the same time, he recalls an unexpected moment the two had shared. Shortly after, Zhang Xiaohua approaches and asks if she startled him earlier. She tells him not to mind, explaining she was just really excited, and he replies that it's fine. Ye Beichen smiles, saying he perfectly understands. Suddenly, a figure quickly passes by. He immediately turns and asks who's there. Dr. Xue reveals himself, stating he has important matters to report to the master. Hearing the word master, Zhang Xiaohua reacts with surprise. The doctor explains he used the identity card to locate a secret place, which might be the Wanbao Pavilion, and Ye Beichen asks if this is true. After confirmation, he's delighted to finally have reliable news. Next, he turns to Zhang Xiaohua, informing her he needs to deal with something important, and she releases him without hesitation. Dr. Xue says it's better they leave quickly, and the two leap into the night sky. Watching them depart, she comments that colleague Ye holds many secrets. 3 hours later, they arrive at a remote canyon. Ye Beichen asks if that's the mentioned clue, and Dr. Xu confirms. He asks the master to observe carefully, as the altar is identical to the one that was under Longxing. Ye Beichen agrees, saying that now that he mentioned it, the similarity is truly striking. Dr. Su explains that the bead they obtained should be able to connect to the altar, and suggests he test it. Ye Beichen looks at the sphere in his hand, questioning if that's truly the case. Still, he decides to perform the test. A column of energy rises from the structure, and Dr. Xue shouts for the master to be careful. The ground beneath Ye Beichen's feet begins to crack. Shortly after, he vanishes in an intense flash of light. Elsewhere, a bird peacefully lands on a branch. The man with a mustache appears, holding the sphere, and comments that the boy truly has many secrets. Back at the residence, Dr. Xue and Ye Beichen fall from the sky. The two land on the ground almost simultaneously. Ye Beichen stands up and stares at the gate in front of him. Then he asks what place this is. They observe a group of people walking away, as one comments that the elders gave an order, and another confirms something important happened. Dr. Zhui asks the master what's happening, and he replies that there's something strange about this place. An object appears in the night sky, causing Ye Beichen to turn and ask what it is. He then pushes Dr. Xu down, shouting for him to kneel. Both are forced to bow down to the ground. The doctor asks the master what's going on. Ye Beichen also shows confusion. Suddenly, the scenery changes, and he wonders what just happened. Dr. Xue questions if they encountered a ghost, but Ye Beichen states that it was just an illusion, and what they see now is reality. The doctor says he understands the situation. Even so, Ye Beichen comments that something is wrong, as he feels someone is watching them. At that moment, an enormous creature appears before them. Dr. Xue shouts a warning, but Ye Beichen already has his sword out. Without hesitation, he rushes forward and strikes the creature with a direct blow. The doctor tries to thank his master, but is interrupted when Ye Beichen says there's something strange ahead. Suddenly, Ye Beichen is taken aback by what he sees. A man meditating, surrounded by several creatures. He wonders if anyone is still alive in this place. He quickly notices the man's presence is incredibly faint, not like someone truly alive. Dr. Shui identifies the surrounding creatures as spirits. The spirits advance, and Ye Beichen remarks they are too strong to be easily contained. Suddenly, the creatures are struck and collapse. Confused, the doctor wonders what just happened. Ye Beichen states that even if the person isn't truly alive, saving them might provide some clues. The meditating man turns to face them, asking how anyone could still be alive. He then stands and declares he always knew there was still hope for humanity. The man swiftly moves towards Ye Beichen, then asks where he comes from and which sect he belongs to. Ye Beichen in turn asks what happened here and why there are beasts in this place, which only confuses the man further. He clutches his head, complaining of immense pain and saying he can't remember anything. He then collapses to the ground. Suddenly, his eyes fix on the sphere in Ye Beichen's hand. The man hastily gets back on his feet, asking how Ye Beichen obtained it and demanding he return it. Ye Beichen dodges the attack. He then states that since the man has no intention of handing it over, he shouldn't blame him for being rude. As he speaks, the opponent's body visibly grows grows more muscular. The man lunges at Ye Beichen. Dr. Zhu yells a warning to his master. Ye Beichen responds by attacking with his sword. The enemy dissipates and collapses to the ground. Still holding his sword, Ye Beichen remarks that since it was a manifestation of obsession, something truly terrible must have happened in this place. Dr. Shui then points to the sky, asking his master what it is. A key materializes in the air, making Ye Beichen question if it's truly a key. The object flies towards a wall, then slots into an invisible lock. A fissure opens in the wall, and Dr. Shui asks what's going on. Ye Beichen observes intently and concludes there's another world beyond. With that in mind, he decides they should enter and investigate. The two encounter a long staircase that descends into darkness. Ye Beichen wonders what such a hidden place might contain and tells Dr. Shui to remain vigilant. At the top, they find a grand hall supported by pillars covered in inscriptions. Ye Beichen explains they are memory inscriptions, and Dr. Shui asks what that signifies. He clarifies that in ancient times, they were used to record history through images, not words. The doctor wonders if such things truly exist. Suddenly, a beam of energy descends from above and strikes Ye Beichen. Ye Beichen clutches his head, commenting that the pain is intense. Then, in another scene, a young man approaches and asks why he is still there and hasn't ascended. Confused, Ye Beichen questions the meaning of the word ascend. He looks around, trying to understand what happened and if he wasn't hit by a memory inscription. The young man explains that this is the opportunity for ascension to the immortal world and asks if he hasn't yet reached the necessary stage. Scornfully, he calls him trash and attacks him with a sword, stating he should die. However, Ye Beichen grabs the blade with his hand and tells him not to overdo it. At the same time, the surrounding scene begins to shatter. He wonders what is happening. An energy sphere appears in the sky and starts to pull in the floating people. One of the men is pulled towards the sphere. Ye Beichen watches intently as the scene unfolds before him. The sphere collides with the ground, and a creature emerges from the impact point. In the vision, the creature attacks the people on the ground, while a voice states that ascension is a trap. Back in his own perception, Ye Beichen says he was affected by the inscription and that what he saw was a memory left there. He then wonders if that happened 2,000 years ago. In the present, he clutches his head again, complaining that the pain has returned. Dr. Zhu approaches, calling him master and asking if he's all right, showing concern. Ye Beichen reassures him, saying he's fine, and the doctor expresses relief. Then, he shows an object found nearby, and Ye Beichen asks what it is. Dr. Shui explains that it's a record from the Baibao Pavilion containing the method to open it. Curious, Ye Beichen asks what that method is. The doctor clarifies that the sphere his master possesses is one of two needed to open the gate. Ye Beichen questions if this is true. With this, he understands that someone is intentionally protecting this kind of object. He wonders why they would do that, and if it relates to that incident. Dr. Shui suggests they leave, sensing someone is watching them, and Ye Beichen agrees, ordering that the location not be revealed to anyone. The doctor accepts as his master walks away. Half an hour later in the canyon, the altar remains solitary. Ye Beichen and Dr. Shui reappear on the structure. Elsewhere, the man with mustache observes from a tree branch and asks if they're gone yet. He comments that the trip must have brought a good haul. Soon after, he disappears from the spot. In a classroom, time ticks on. Zhang Ziwen pokes Ye Beichen, who is sleeping slumped over his desk. Zhang Xiaoru appears with an excited expression. Two other classmates celebrate the news. Ye Beichen, however, doesn't seem to share the excitement. Outside, a bus parks near the building. The teacher leads a group of students out of the school. The day is sunny. Then, the bus continues its journey along a road. Suddenly, the ground under one of the tires begins to crack. The driver realizes the road is collapsing. Soon after, the bus plunges into a huge hole. The bus slid down a steep slope. Suddenly, a passenger cried for help, and soon after, the vehicle finally stopped, crashing into a tree. Inside the bus, students panicked amidst the wreckage, with one of them screaming that they didn't want to die. The teacher tried to understand how something like this could have happened, then stated he needed to get everyone out as quickly as possible. However, when he tried to leave, he realized the door was jammed and he couldn't open it. He then despaired, noticing the vehicle was destroyed and the driver was unresponsive. Ye Beichen approached and told the teacher he would open the door. The young man positioned himself and struck the exit. Even though the teacher said it was useless, claiming even he couldn't open it, the door still gave way. Bacon then told the students to get out and breathe some fresh air. They left the bus in a hurry, one of the students commenting that she'd almost died of fright. The teacher thanked him, and the young man replied it was just a small help. He then pointed out that there were some injured people who needed the teacher's care. The teacher praised his action, saying the school would recognize him, then turned to the class and asked everyone to take care of their injured classmates. Meanwhile, Baichen observed the slope and found it very strange that an accident had occurred there. Suddenly he turned, alert, and asked what that sound was. Zhang Xiaoru and another student looked up, questioning what was happening. Then, they spotted several large cocoons attached to the tree trunks. At that instant, a brief memory of his previous vision flashed through Baichen's mind, while one of the students wondered how they got there. Another student picked up a branch, saying the thing was moving and he was going to investigate. Before he could advance, Baichen yelled for him to stop. The young man turned around, annoyed, complaining he'd been startled. The blonde-haired student accused Baichen of being scared, while their black-haired classmate tried to reassure everyone, saying they were just cocoons. Even so, the first student insisted they shouldn't listen, and prepared to hit one of them with the branch. At that moment, a claw emerged from inside and grabbed the object. Startled, the young man asked what it was. Soon after, a creature emerged and leaped towards him. The monster attacked him, and simultaneously, all the other cocoons began to open. The students screamed that there were monsters and panicked, beginning to run. The two roommates wondered if they were dreaming, and how such creatures could exist. Meanwhile, the beings advanced towards them. The teacher yelled for the two to run away immediately, and both ran, screaming for help as they were chased. One of the creatures moved at high speed. At that instant, Ye Beichen stepped in front of his classmates. With a precise blow, he struck the approaching creature. The two young men looked back, surprised by his actions. As Bacon confronted the creatures, his blonde-haired roommate questioned if it was really him. Monsters fell around him as he landed, and he commented that he had already warned them not to touch those things. One of the students murmured that their classmate was a martial arts master, while another said he seemed more like a martial cultivator. The blonde student then realized Baichen already knew about the monsters, and the black-haired young man apologized for having mocked him. Suddenly, the remaining cocoons in the trees began to move, and Baichen realized the situation was not good at all. The creatures chase the students, who run desperately through the forest. One of the students screams for help as he's attacked by two monsters simultaneously. Zhang Ziwen warns that fighting alone won't be possible, and shouts for him to run away. Zhang Xiaoru just watches the scene, wondering if it's all just an attempt to show off. Just then, Ye Beichen summons his sword. Calmly, he states there are too many of them, and if they let them escape, everyone will end up dead. Wielding the blade, he attacks one of the creatures without hesitation. At this, the other monsters immediately turn their attention to him. Beichen jumps onto one of the creatures and starts provoking them, challenging them to chase him. The professor reacts in fright, asking if he intends to draw all the monsters away by himself. The creatures fully turn and stare at the young man. Realizing the plan worked, he starts running. Then he jumps away and states that the others will be safe once he lures the monsters further away. One of the students comments in a panic that he's surely going to die now. The professor grabs his phone and says they need help because everyone will die if they wait any longer. However, he soon realizes there's no signal at all in that place. Ye Beichen stops running and faces the approaching creatures. Firmly, he raises his sword and says he can truly fight now. In response, he summons a power that hits the creatures around him. One of the monsters is hit directly by the attack. Advancing without hesitation, he slices the creature with a single blow, shouting for it to die. The monster's head falls to the ground, rolling among the leaves. Observing the defeated creatures, he wonders what they are and why they were there. Soon after, the monster's remains start to clump together. Alertly, he watches the scene unfold before his eyes. The mass slowly unites, forming a single figure. Thus, a new humanoid creature appears before him. The being comments that there's a taste of 2,000 years here. Without wasting time, Beichen attacks with his sword and asks who or what that creature is. In response, the monster lunges towards him, stating that its great cause can be achieved. The young man follows the movement and wonders what kind of thing that is. The creature states it will be less painful if he's obedient. Next, it tries to grab his head. In reaction, he releases a blast of energy and shouts for it to get away. Beichen advances again, promising to destroy it no matter what it is. Running towards a flash of light, he keeps attacking. The creature grabs him and says he's brave but doesn't have what it takes to face it. Soon after, it starts squeezing his neck. The young man struggles to free himself while being enveloped by the creature. Suddenly, the man with a mustache appears, holding a strange object. Advancing, he says they meet again. Without delay, he places the object on Ye Beichen's head. Surprised, the young man asks how he got there. In response, the man reveals that he was the one who sent them to that place. Beichen questions if all of this was part of his plan. The man with a mustache hesitates, wondering how he should explain the situation. Meanwhile, the creature curses them for hurting it and promises they are doomed. Thrashing in the sky, it prepares to attack again. Even so, the man states he'll explain everything later, because first they need to resolve the big problem in front of them. With a firm gesture, the mustachioed man raises a crystal and orders the creature to retreat. The jewel then fires a beam of energy at the dark vortex. From the shadows, a humanoid figure emerges, cursing the situation. Surprised, it questions how anyone could possess such an item. Beside him, the young man watches the scene intently, wondering what's going on. Without hesitation, the man warns the creature to leave or face no mercy. Faced with the threat of no forgiveness, the figure prepares to flee. Soon after, it vanishes into the horizon, promising they will meet again. The mustachioed man comments that the enemy is finally gone, while the young man questions why he was saved. In response, he states that he didn't save him, but acted for his own benefit. Confused, the young man tries to understand what that truly means. Seeing this, the man asks if, after everything he's seen, he still doesn't understand the situation. He then reveals that he had been observing the truck the young man was traveling in along the road. He goes on to explain that the accident they suffered was something he himself caused. Coldly, he confirms he was responsible, having launched a power directly onto the road. At that moment, the bus appears overturned on the road, with cries for help. The young man confronts him, asking the reason for his actions and stating that if he sought revenge, he should direct it only at him. However, the mustachioed man clarifies that there was a misunderstanding, as he isn't there for revenge but to be his friend. Hearing this, the young man begins to wonder what that guy is really plotting. Calmly, the man explains that he knows both of them carry many secrets, and because of that, they are the same kind of person. Even admitting he's mysterious, the young man says he has no interest in knowing more. Still, the man insists that he needs to understand the truth, or both of them will die soon. Finally, he points to the sky and concludes that they will die at the hands of the people from above, leaving the young man even more confused. The man admits he doesn't know who these people are, but he's sure they exist. He then begins to recount that 2,000 years ago, a great wave of ascension occurred in the cultivation world. During that period, around 3,000 individuals ascended, but at the end of the event, a giant cocoon fell from the heavens. Soon after, the object crashed into a temple courtyard and split in half. From inside it, monsters emerged that fed on people's blood essence. The young man claims he's never heard of anything like that, while the man explains that this story was lost to time, and that he himself wouldn't believe it if he he hadn't seen those creatures. Still confused, the young man asks why he was sought out, and the answer is direct. Only by joining forces will both of them have any chance to survive the new crisis. Hearing this, the young man asks if the calamity from 2,000 years ago will repeat itself, and the man confirms that a new crisis is approaching. Without delay, the young man wants to know how they could survive something of that magnitude. The mustachioed man admits he doesn't know the answer, but states he hopes they can investigate the truth together, revealing that this was precisely why his group was founded. Uncertain, the young man says that it's all too strange and he can't give him an answer right now. Without showing concern, the man hands him a sphere and states that he will seek him out sooner or later. After that, he quickly says goodbye and leaves at high speed. The young man tries to stop him from leaving but can't catch him. Back with the group, one of the students comments that Ye Beichen was extremely noble to sacrifice himself to save everyone. Zhang Xiaoru adds that when they return, a grand funeral will need to be arranged for him. The professor states that despite the sacrifice, everyone needs to keep living, though he laments there's still no cell phone signal. At that moment, Ye Beichen appears behind them and announces that he's back. Surprised, the professor and Zhang Ziwen turn around when they see him there. Unable to contain his joy, Zhang Ziwen runs toward him, happy he's alive, and hugs him while exclaiming that he didn't die. The professor stares at him in astonishment and asks what kind of person he is to have escaped so many monsters. Approaching, he tries to apologize for not being able to save him earlier but is interrupted. With a calm smile, Beichen states that he has a way to get everyone back home. Hearing this, the professor reacts with surprise and asks if he's really capable of doing such a thing. Ye Beichen reached out to help Zhang Xiaoru up the embankment, telling her to be careful. He held her wrist firmly, then pulled her up with a single movement. Soon after, the professor supported her, while another classmate also urged her to be careful. Beichen apologized to the girl for using too much force. Shortly after, the professor approached to thank him for his help, saying that without Beichen's intervention, they would all be dead by now. In response, the young man simply stated that he had only done his duty. Suddenly, a shout echoed among the classmates. A student in an orange hoodie appeared with a bloodstain on his chest. Immediately, the professor turned and asked what happened. With difficulty, the young man replied that his wounds seemed to have reopened. Holding his chest, he complained of intense pain. Showing concern, the professor remembered there was no hospital nearby and realized there was a risk of death from blood loss. Desperate, the injured classmate said he didn't want to die. At that moment, Ye Beichen approached and offered to try and help him. The young man questioned his ability, but Beichen assured him he knew a way to cure him. Zhang Ziwen intervened, asking him not to overexert himself. She added that even though Beichen knew how to fight, healing wounds wasn't simple. Agreeing, the professor expressed fear that the situation might worsen. He then questioned if it wouldn't indirectly make him a killer. Calmly, Beichen asked everyone to relax and stated that he would take responsibility if the young man died. Annoyed, the injured student accused him of being reckless. Unfazed, Beichen told him not to be nervous and revealed a silver needle. He then claimed his movements were very fast. With the needle in hand, he asked the young man to hold on tight for just a moment. The young man screamed as Beichen applied the needles to his chest. Zhang Xiaoru and a blonde classmate watched the scene, and she commented on how cruel it looked. The other student said that even if he survived, the young man could end up crippled like that. Another classmate reiterated that it was extremely cruel. Faced with this, the professor told Ye Beichen that he couldn't continue with such recklessness. He then shouted for him to stop immediately. At that instant, the injured young man noticed something different. Surprised, he commented that he no longer felt any pain. The blood stain on his clothes began to disappear. Zhang Ziwen noticed the change. She exclaimed that the wound was healing very fast. In disbelief, the professor wondered if he had really managed to cure him. The injured classmate stood up, and the professor remarked that it was incredible. The young man confirmed he no longer felt any pain. Beichen stated that he was already well and advised him to go home and get proper rest. Emotional, the student thanked him, saying Ye Beichen was his savior. The professor commented that Beichen seemed to know how to do everything and admitted he had misjudged him. Zhang Ziwen agreed, saying she had also been wrong about him. The healed classmate reassured the professor, affirming that everything was fine. Finally, Ye Beichen suggested they all return to the city. The professor agreed, still showing some embarrassment about the whole situation. Time passed under a clear, sunny sky. 3 hours later, Ye Beichen was walking through the city when he received an unexpected call. On the other end of the line, someone asked him to come meet them. Later, he sat on a bench, calmly awaiting the person's arrival. Suddenly, a presence materialized beside him. Surprised, Ye Beichen turned and called him Master. Dr. Zhu informed him that he had found the key to the Tower of 100 Treasures. He then explained that he now needed him for an even more important task. With that, he made a formal request to his disciple. Soon after, he asked him to investigate an object he projected into the young man's hand. According to Dr. Zhu, it was essential to find out where that item came from. In response, Ye Beichen explained that this thing had appeared in a neighboring city. He also recounted that, hours earlier, a strange object had fallen onto one of the streets, and a monster had emerged from within it. The authorities tried to confront the creature, but were unsuccessful when they were attacked. During the confrontation, the monster advanced towards one of the police officers. Faced with this, Ye Beichen asked if the creature's origin had been discovered. Dr. Zhe replied that it hadn't yet. The young man decided he would go to the location to investigate personally. His master warned him, reminding him that the city was hundreds of kilometers away. He then questioned if Ye Beichen intended to walk all the way there. Ye Beichen agreed that the distance was indeed great. As he watched the modern cars passing on the street, he found it all quite interesting. Soon after, he suggested that perhaps he should get a vehicle for himself. The scene changed to the facade of a luxury car dealership. Ye Beichen entered the place and commented on the large number of cars on display. Approaching Approaching a black model, he praised the vehicle's design. At that moment, a saleswoman shouted at him not to touch the car. Surprised, he turned and asked if he couldn't even touch the car he intended to buy. The saleswoman looked him up and down with disdain. She then pushed him away from the car and told him to leave, stating that he couldn't afford it. Yebachin challenges her, asking if she can really claim he can't afford it just based on his looks. Without hesitation, the saleswoman replies that, looking like a student, he still dares to want a limited edition car. Mockingly, she asks if he really thinks he's a big shot. Then, she states that she's holding the car for Brother Lee. Immediately after, she tells him to leave so he doesn't disrupt her work. Just then, a male voice catches her attention. A bald man approaches and asks who wants to buy the car he's chosen. The saleswoman greets him promptly and remarks that he's finally arrived. She also tells him not to worry about the student, as the car was reserved for him. Without delay, the woman opens the car door. Then, she invites him for a test drive. Before they can proceed, Yebachin interrupts them. Firmly, he states that he'll take that car today. Furthermore, he declares that no one else will even touch the vehicle. At this, the saleswoman threatens him, saying she'll call security if he doesn't stop. The bald man puts his arm around the young man's shoulders and says the car costs $3 million, something he can't afford. Immediately after, he tells him to leave, while the saleswoman agrees and emphasizes that he should get out right away. Just then, a female voice emerges, asking who's making a ruckus in her store. The saleswoman turns and recognizes the newcomer as Miss Jiang. With a hurried smile, she greets her. Then, she explains that a poor student showed up insisting on buying a sports car. According to her, the plan was to send him away so he wouldn't disturb business. Hearing this, Miss Jiang asks which student she's referring to. Without a second thought, the saleswoman points directly at Yebachin. Zhang Xiaohua immediately recognizes him and calls him classmate Ye. Smiling, he asks what she's doing there. She replies that this is one of her family's properties, which is why she's there. The saleswoman is surprised to discover that the two are classmates. At this moment, she realizes she might have completely misjudged the situation. Yebachin comments that since it's her family's business, everything becomes easier. Meanwhile, he holds up his card, ready to make the car purchase. However, Zhang Xiaohua says there's no need to pay and that she intends to give him the car as a gift. Even so, Baichen insists on paying, stating that he wants to prevent certain people from judging others just by their looks. Given his insistence, she agrees to the request. Immediately after, she calls another employee and asks her to handle the paperwork for her classmate's purchase. The employee with white hair invites Yebachin to follow her to finalize the process. From a distance, the first saleswoman watches the two walk away and curses the situation. The saleswoman regrets misjudging the client. Then she complains that someone else ended up stealing her sale. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua turns around and informs her that she's fired, leaving her in complete shock. The woman falls to the floor, realizing she just lost her job. Meanwhile, the bald man, who had been ignored, asks what will happen to him now. Outside, Yebachin's new car is parked in front of the dealership. At that moment, the employee informs him that all the documentation is already inside the vehicle. He thanks her for the help, while the employee politely says goodbye. Once outside, Zhang Xiaohua asks if he knows how to drive. Confidently, Yebachin replies that he does. Then he explains that he learned a lot about the modern world from the library. Even though he's never driven before, he comments that it seems simple. Curious, she asks where he plans to go next. In response, he reveals that he needs to travel to H City because something of interest to him happened there. He also states that he wants to check the situation out personally. Zhang Xiaohua asks if he knows the way to their destination. He admits he doesn't, and she stays silent for a brief moment. Then, she surprises him by offering to guide him. The car speeds off down the street. Yebachin swerves around other vehicles as he rapidly advances down the avenue. Beside him, Zhang Xiaohua asks him to drive more carefully. Then she screams for him not to hit the car in front. Startled, he slams on the brakes. Trying to calm her, Yebachin explains he was just testing the car. Right after, he accelerates again and announces they're leaving. Time passes as they travel under a sunny sky. Finally, they reach their desired destination, H City. At the city entrance, men in suits set up a barricade in the middle of the street. One of them notices the vehicle approaching. Stepping in front of the car, he orders them to stop immediately. The door opens shortly after. Yebachin and Zhang Xiaohua get out and ask the reason for the stop. The man replies that there's been an accident and the passage is blocked. In a firm tone, he tells them to turn around and take another path. Suddenly, the barricade is violently hit, throwing the two men who were holding it. Two monstrous creatures leap towards the bodies lying on the ground. Recognizing the creatures in front of him, Yebachin reacts immediately. Zhang Xiaohua asks if the creatures are monsters. Just then, the bald man screams for everyone to get away, warning that they'll all die. Without hesitation, the two creatures charge, attacking the men who are already on the ground. Soon, one of the monsters turns and leaps directly at the bald man. He realizes he's done for and won't be able to escape. Suddenly, two men jump from a walkway, yelling at the creatures to die. They land with a powerful impact right in the middle of the monsters. One of the newcomers notices the danger as a creature prepares to attack, then fires a projectile that hits his weapon head-on. Annoyed, he curses and declares he'll fight with everything he has. Charging forward without hesitation, he unleashes a double strike with his blades. Just then, Yebachin approaches and tells the man in the suit to get out of the way. He'll handle the monsters. The man questions if Yebachin is looking for a death wish, pointing out that even cultivators couldn't stand a chance against those creatures. Meanwhile, one of the cultivators flees in desperation, screaming for help. Yebachin insists again for the man to move, saying it's already too late. Confused, the man in the suit asks what's happening and where the young man went. At that moment, the monsters leap towards the screaming cultivator lying on the ground. Desperate, the cultivator curses, saying he doesn't want to die yet. Yebachin charges forward at high speed, sword in hand. With a precise strike, he intercepts the creature creature's attack. The man in the suit wonders if the young man truly just rushed to his death. Without hesitation, Awakens raises his sword and orders the other monster to back off. Then, a single strike cuts through the air towards the creature. Astonished, the man in the suit can't believe this guy actually defeated the monster. The cultivator also wonders who this incredibly powerful man is. Amidst the swirling dust, both creatures rise again. With his sword raised, Awakens asks if they still aren't going to surrender. Then he tells them to go to hell. An attack sweeps across the ground, hitting both monsters simultaneously. The man in the suit comments that the young man is incredibly strong, admitting he underestimated him. The cultivator, meanwhile, is terrified and impressed by his power. Approaching them, Awakens asks who they are and why they're dealing with monsters. The man immediately apologizes for misjudging him, but Awakens ignores the apology, demanding a direct answer. The man explains they're part of an official task force, responsible for investigating strange cases that have popped up in big cities. The mention of this task force piques Awakens' curiosity. Zhang Xiaohua then asks if the monsters were the problem he needed to solve, and Awakens confirms he's also investigating details about them. Seeing this, the man invites Awakens to join their investigation. Awakens refuses, stating he prefers working alone. Even so, the other man insists, explaining that the task force has official resources, and Awakens' help would be invaluable. The idea of being able to use such resources catches Awakens' attention. Excited, the man celebrates and welcomes him to the team. The two then shake hands to seal the deal. Afterward, he invites Awakens to meet the vice captain, who is in a nearby building. Inside an office, a gray-haired man sits behind a desk. The man in the suit enters and greets Vice Captain Zhao. Zhao asks why he's returned, and the man quickly replies that the monsters have been defeated, and he's brought a new recruit. The vice captain then asks if he means the two young men. The man confirms that the young man beside him is the new recruit. Zhao reprimands him for bringing just anyone, especially students, into his office. Trying to justify himself, the man explains that despite them being students, the situation is different. Before he can finish, the vice captain cuts him off, ordering him to send both of them away, claiming he's too busy. Awakens remarked to the older man that they didn't seem very welcome there, suggesting it might be best for them to leave and not bother anyone. Just then, a bald man rushed towards them, urging them not to leave and promising to explain everything. He then turned to the vice captain, criticizing him for associating with a mere student. Another man quickly arrived, informing the vice captain that a new clue about the monster had been found. Hearing this, Awakens and the young woman turned to see what was going on. The subordinate reported a strange bronze gate located to the southwest, explaining their suspicion that the creature might have emerged from it. The vice captain simply asked if he was certain, and the subordinate confirmed with conviction. The vice captain then ordered him to gather the team, declaring that they would all go to investigate the site. The subordinate promptly affirmed. The mention of the bronze gate caught Awakens' attention. Intrigued, he decided he would also go have a look. Soon after, the group left the area, with the young man and young woman following closely. Two black cars sped down the road. Inside one, the vice captain rode in the passenger seat. The driver noticed in the rearview mirror that the two students were following them. The man in the back offered to go stop them, but the vice captain dismissed it. He stated that if the young people wanted to take risks, it wasn't their concern. In the other car, Awakens realized he needed to speed up to keep pace. He warned Miss Zhang to hold tight and floored the accelerator. Suddenly, a creature leaped over one of the lead vehicles, landing directly on its hood. The monster attacked the car, lifting it off the ground with the impact. The other two cars braked sharply to avoid a collision. Inside his car, the vice captain observed the scene, noting that the monster had reappeared. Three of his men leaped out, one announcing that their opportunity had arrived. Another prepared an attack in his palm, declaring it was time to hunt. Without hesitation, he launched his technique directly at the creature. His confident companions approached, asserting that the small monster was already defeated. The vice captain remarked that it was excellent, praising his subordinates for not disappointing him. However, the creature still moved amidst the attack, soon revealing itself to be completely unharmed. In response, the monster counterattacked, throwing all three men far away and violently slamming them onto the ground. Witnessing this, the vice captain exited his car, demanding to know what was happening. One of the men struggled to his feet, commenting that the creature's defense had been too strong for their attack. The monster then advanced towards the group. From inside the car, the driver screamed a warning to the vice captain. Gathering their strength, the three men regrouped and prepared another attack. Their techniques launched simultaneously, one of them ordering the creature to stop immediately. Even so, the monster advanced right through their attacks, repelling all three with a single blow. It stopped just a few meters from the car, kicking up dust from the impact. Paralyzed, the three men who had gotten out of the vehicle could only stare at the scene. Seeing this, the bald man declared that it was all over. At the same time, the vice captain wondered what else they could possibly do. His subordinate bluntly stated that they would all surely die. The bald man quickly corrected himself, remembering their master was right there. He turned, calling out to Awakens, and rushed towards the young man, begging him to save them quickly. He insisted that Awakens was their only hope. Incredulous, the vice captain questioned if the bald man had gone mad, asking for help from a student who was likely terrified. At that exact moment, the monster leaped toward the vice captain, Cornered, he braced for the creature's imminent attack. Before it could strike, Ye Bacon pushed him out of harm's way. The young man then positioned himself between the monster and the older man. Surprised, the vice captain asked why he hadn't fled, wondering if he didn't fear death. Without a moment's hesitation, Ye Bacon intercepted the creature's attack with his bare hands. With a precise spin, Ye Bacon flings the creature away. The bald man, impressed, comments on the young man's displayed strength. Witnessing the scene, the vice captain realized Ye Bacon wasn't just a cultivator, but also incredibly skilled. Ye Bacon remarked that since there were monsters in the area, they'd need to investigate more carefully. He then turned and asked the vice captain about the location of the bronze gate and the altar. Under the sunset glow, the vice captain apologized for misjudging him. However, Ye Bacon told him not to worry, saying it wasn't worth holding a grudge. Relieved by the response, the vice captain let out a subtle sigh. The young man then noticed a large door ahead and asked if that was the place they were searching for. The older man confirmed, stating it was precisely there. With a single kick, Ye Bacon smashed open the double doors. The vice captain and his subordinate were stunned by the impressive force of his kick. Immediately afterward, Ye Bacon told Miss Jiang to stay close and not stray too far. Hiding, the bald man silently wondered if more monsters were lurking inside. Impatiently, the vice captain pushed him aside, ordering him to get out of the way. Moving forward, he entered the area and found an altar in the center of the room. The stone structure stood prominently in the middle of the large empty hall. Without hesitation, Ye Bacon sprinted towards the altar. With a precise leap, he landed on the stone structure. Thoughtfully, he remarked that the place looked very similar to the Longxing group's altar. Soon after, he materialized an object in his hand, wondering if it would have any use. The relic activated, and Ye Bacon vanished from the spot. The group watched the scene in shock, with the vice captain questioning where he had gone. Suddenly, Ye Bacon found himself in a completely different room. Looking around, he tried to understand how he had arrived. He then began to ponder if all altars were portals to this very location. Just then, a small stone dropped to the floor at his feet. Recognizing it, Ye Bacon realized it was the same stone he'd used earlier to defeat the monster. He gripped it firmly, considering the item quite valuable. Without hesitation, he declared he would keep the object and then summoned his sword. Immediately afterward, he reappeared in the altar hall and heard a cry for help from outside. The young man turned towards the entrance, trying to understand what was happening. Outside, the group was surrounded by numerous monsters that had suddenly appeared. One of the creatures charged directly at the vice captain. In response, he drew his blade and ordered the monster to back off. Still, the creature bit his arm. Without backing down, Zhang Xiaohua threw an object at one of the monsters, declaring she would fight. The creature was hit and turned its attention to her. Before it could attack, Ye Bacon suddenly appeared and cut the monster down with his sword. Relieved, Zhang Xiaohua remarked that student Ye had finally returned. Ye Bacon assures her that no one will hurt her as long as he's around. Surrounded, the vice captain yells that it's not the time for that and begs for help. Then, Ye Bacon cuts through the group of monsters with a single strike of his blade. The two men watch the scene, commenting that the young man is scarier than the creatures themselves. At that moment, a shadowy figure appears before Ye Bacon, commenting that they meet again. The entity claims he was lucky to escape last time, but the young man retorts that it was the other one who fled. The shadowy being declares that without the old man around, Ye Bacon is finished. Soon after, a hand grabs his neck. Startled, Zhang Xiaohua shouts for him to be careful. Calmly, Ye Bacon reassures her, saying that it can't harm him. Then, he unleashes his power and repels the shadowy attack. One of the men ends up being hit by the impact and is thrown far away. The shadowy figure orders Ye Bacon to give up, claiming he's not its opponent. Without backing down, the young man replies that his adversary is the one who should surrender. Soon after, both advance against each other, and their powers violently collide. Ye Bacon attacks with his blade, cutting the shadowy tentacles. Keeping the advance, he continues to repel the enemy's attacks. Surprised, the being questions how he can possess so much power. In response, Ye Bacon asks if it's scared now. Then, he pierces the opponent's chest with his sword. Even wounded, the creature still questions the origin of that power. Fallen on the ground, it asks itself what on earth happened. Approaching, Ye Bacon questions why it's not so arrogant anymore. Then, he demands to know who it is and where it came from. The creature replies that it doesn't know its origin and that it's been trapped there since the beginning. When questioned about why it hurts people, it replies that a voice controls it. Faced with its refusal to reveal more information, Ye Bacon declares that it can die then. With a single sword strike, he completely destroys the creature. The vice captain and his subordinate observe the scene, while the older one comments that the young man is even stronger than the monster. Ye Bacon states that the problem is almost solved, but he still needs to find some people. Then he turns and leaves, commenting that Peach Blossom is also looking for them. Zhang Xiaohua approaches and asks where he intends to go. He advises her to go back and rest, while she asks him to be careful. Soon after, he arrives at the entrance of a cave and states that the old man must be inside. Advancing further, he stops before a pit of red liquid and orders whoever is hiding to appear. A long-haired man emerges and comments that the young man has finally found him. Then he asks if Ye Bacon has considered the proposal to join forces, but the young man replies that he wants to go somewhere else. Curious, the man questions what the destination would be. Ye Bacon reveals that he wants to go to Wanbao Pavilion. Without hesitation, the man agrees and states that he can take him there immediately. Soon after, both disappear from the spot. Ye Bacon appears before the man with the mustache, confirming this is the entrance to the treasure pavilion. The man explains he'd been there before but couldn't retrieve any of the sealed items. Ye Bacon responds that only members of the Qingyun clan can touch the treasures. He then activates an object in his hands, causing several orbs to spread across the room. Moments later, a portal opens on the floor, and both both are immediately transported inside the treasure pavilion. Inside, they find themselves floating among countless sealed items. The young man asks if this is truly the treasure pavilion, and the man with the mustache confirms it. Ye Bacon approaches one of the treasures, amazed by the abundance of high-level items all around them. When he tries to touch a flask, he receives a jolt of energy. Immediately, all other nearby items react similarly. The man, surprised, remarks that Ye Bacon managed to break the seals, to which Ye Bacon confirms that the Qingyan clan's treasures belong to his own. A bamboo scroll on a shelf catches the young man's eye. He approaches it, asking what it is. The man with the mustache explains that this scroll is also sealed, and no one has been able to see its contents. Without hesitation, Ye Bacon touches the object, breaking its seal. A form begins to materialize from the scroll, and Ye Bacon, recognizing it, calls the figure Master. The spirit declares that he has finally arrived and needs to listen carefully. In a serious tone, it warns that the world is unstable, as a hidden force is plotting something dangerous. As it speaks, the spiritual form begins to fade, urging him to remember everything. Ye Bacon tries to reach out, calling for his master once more. At that moment, the man with the mustache holds him, asking who he truly is. The young man replies his name is Ye Bacon, from the Qingyan clan. The man comments that he had always suspected a mysterious force was interfering with the world, and now he's certain. He then asks about Ye Bacon's plans. Ye Bacon resolves to confront those responsible. The man with the mustache suggests they return to plan everything calmly. After being transported out of the pavilion, a few hours pass until nightfall. Walking down a dark street, Ye Bacon thinks he needs to rest. Suddenly, a voice calls out, "I've finally found you." He turns and asks who's there. The leader of the Banshaman group appears with his men, stating he came to meet Lin He. Ye Bacon replies that he doesn't remember knowing anyone by that name. With a strange smile, the leader declares he will give Ye Bacon a welcoming gift, then lunges to strike. With a single gesture, Ye Bacon throws him high into the air. The other two men warn him not to forget about them and attack from behind, but they soon realize they only hit a residual image. The real Ye Bacon appears behind one of the henchmen, warning that he doesn't intend to kill anyone today. With a swift movement, he throws both of them away. Lying on the ground, the leader admits that Ye Bacon is as strong as the rumors claimed. Getting up, he formally introduces himself as Lin He, vice president of the Cultivator Association. Still smiling, he states the attack was just a prank, and that he came to discuss an important matter. Ye Bacon simply asks what he wants. He explains that the association contacted him for help with some issues that had come up at the new school. Given this, Ye Bacon asks what exactly is going on there. The leader reveals that the association investigates monsters and a mysterious force, but Ye Bacon wants to understand the connection to the school. According to Lin He, a key individual has appeared, and since the target is extremely strong, they need Ye Bacon to lure him into a trap. After reflecting on the complexity of the situation, the young man makes a decision. Ye Bacon agrees to help, and they shake hands to seal the agreement. Still, he warns that he's very tired and needs to rest, so he agrees to come back the next day. The next morning, the sun shines over the school buildings. In a corner of the courtyard, a group of students gathers discreetly. A young man is surrounded by bullies demanding money, while he insists his family can't afford it. The group's leader threatens him for ignoring his words, then punches him in the stomach. Falling to his knees, the boy begs to be left alone, stating he can't give any more money. In a cold tone, the aggressor asks if he really can't get the cash. He then steps on the fallen boy as his friends cheer. Hidden from view, Lin He points out the bully as the target, and Ye Bacon asks if he's really just a student. Lin He confirms it, but warns him not to underestimate him, as he recently gained powers and is difficult to deal with. He then reveals that he sent men to test the target's strength a few days earlier. On that occasion, the bully reacted to the surprise attack, and all the men sent were defeated. Intrigued, Ye Bacon questions how someone could suddenly gain powers. He explains there are suspicions of a mysterious force behind it. The bully notices their presence and accuses them of spying for some time. Approaching with his group, he asks if they also came to give him money. Surprised they'd been discovered, he tries to play it off, saying they were just passing by. Losing patience, the aggressor grabs him and threatens him with a knife, demanding money. Ye Bacon intervenes, grabbing the bully's wrist and asking if he's being ignored. Annoyed, the aggressor tells him to back off, saying he'll be next. In response, Ye Bacon squeezes his wrist tightly. The bully screams in pain, disbelieving that someone dared to break his bone. Furious, he raises the knife and swears he'll kill him. Quickly, he shoves Ye Bacon out of the way and warns him to be careful. Lying on the ground, he asks why he's hesitating. Ye Bacon explains it's not time to fight yet, as they might not be a match for their opponent. The bully declares that only he can intimidate others and that no one is capable of hurting him. His henchmen approach, worried, and ask if he's okay, while his arm begins to recover. Annoyed, he tells everyone to shut up. He then strikes both of their heads at the same time, and something is extracted from their heads through his hands. He observes the scene and comments that the guy seems to have lost control. The aggressor mutters to himself about having had his bone broken. Soon after, he creates 4 copies of himself. The bully and his clones surround the two, promising to make them pay 100 times over. With a simple gesture, Ye Bacon attacks 3 of the clones at once. The original spits blood from the impact. Lin He quickly holds him back and asks him to wait and not act on impulse. Ye Bacon asks what it all means. Lin He explains that since they're inside a school, they need to lure him outside and stick to the plan. Ye Bacon agrees to the strategy. The attacker, who had been knocked to the ground, gets back up and vows that their fight will only end when one of them is dead. He then charges forward, screaming, "I'll kill you all!" He shouts for them to run, and they both leap away. The attacker immediately prepares to give chase. As they move across the rooftops, Ye Bacon asks where they're headed. He instructs him to follow, telling him they're going to the trap, their attacker continues to follow close behind, yelling that they won't escape. Moments later, the two land on a deserted street. Lin He announces they've reached their destination. Yabation looks around asking, "Where's the trap?" With a subtle smile, Lin He replies, "You'll find out soon enough." Just then, their opponent leaps in front of them, challenging them to run. Suddenly, chains burst from the ground, wrapping around the attacker's body and completely immobilizing him. Satisfied, Lin He declares the plan a success. He then thanks them for their hard work and calls for the others to appear. 4 men emerge from the ground, surprising Yabation with their chosen tactic. One of them approaches Lin He, asking for permission to handle the target. Without waiting for a reply, he moves forward to subdue the captive. The man places his hand on the attacker's face. Suddenly he recoils, sensing something strange. In the next instant, he's violently thrown backward. Yabation and Lin He look up, trying to understand what just happened. Moments later, the attacker breaks free from the chains. Realizing the situation, Lin He concludes their target has gone mad, and his men brace themselves for a fight. They quickly charge forward, attempting to contain him. The attacker taunts them, saying, "You'll all become my food." He then absorbs the strength from the fallen men. Strengthened, he lunges towards the others, yelling, "I want more!" One of the men warns his companion, "Be careful, don't let him land a direct attack." Trying to stop his advance, one of them delivers a blow. The attacker easily dodges the strike. Moments later, he materializes 2 swords and declares, "You're too weak." He attacks one of the men with a blade, declaring, "You're no match." He then strikes the other with his second blow. Seeing this, Lin He realizes they've severely underestimated their enemy's strength. The attacker then leaps towards the two, screaming, "Keep dying!" To avoid the impact, Yabation and Lin He leap backward. On the ground, Lin He's men admit they can't defeat him and don't want to die here. The attacker turns to the two and claims, "You've been watching my every move!" Yabation draws his sword and orders him to surrender, stating, "I already know the truth." Lin He warns him not to provoke the attacker further, but Yabation assures him he can win. Skeptical, Lin He questions Yabation's confidence, reminding him that they were all defeated together. Without replying, Yabation leaps forward and attacks his opponent with his sword. The attacker crosses his swords to block the strike and orders him to back off. Watching the scene, Lin He admits the opponent is extremely strong. With a provoking tone, the attacker dares him to face his next blow. Moments later, their blades clash in a fast and intense exchange. Yabation steps back, realizing he can't let this rampage continue. He remembers the treasures he obtained from the pavilion. Convinced, he states it's finally time to use them. He throws one of the artifacts at the aggressor. The opponent tries to slash the object with his sword, but the artifact wraps around his body, leaving him confused about what it is. With the enemy immobilized, Yabation declares it's over. Without hesitating, he rushes in and lands the final blow. Lin He watches in disbelief as the attacker is violently slammed to the ground. As Yabation approaches, Lin He wonders who this powerful man really is. The surrounding men comment that while they all failed together, he managed to defeat the enemy alone. Yabation leaves the defeated man in Lin He's care, who promises to interrogate him. He then orders his men to take the prisoner away immediately. Exhausted, the young man yawns, mentioning he used too much energy and is sleepy. He says goodbye and asks to be notified if there is any news. Lin He and his men bow in respect. Upon arriving home, Yabation thinks he can finally get some rest. However, a voice calls his name. It's Zhang Xiaohua who runs toward him. Confused, he asks what happened. She explains that her father isn't recovering well and asks him to examine him. Yabation agrees to go immediately, and they leave together. About an hour later, they arrive at a large mansion. In the bedroom, Zhang Xiaohua tells her father she is back. She asks him not to move, assuring him he'll be fine now that Yabation is there to help. After examining the man, Yabation states he is weak, but not in life-threatening danger. He offers a pill, saying it will fix him up. The young woman takes the medicine, remarking she knew he would have a solution, and gives it to her father. As soon as he takes it, the man is surprised by the immediate effect, saying the discomfort has vanished. Yabation says that since he is recovered, he will go home to rest, as he is exhausted. Before he can leave, Zhang Xiaohua stops him. Holding him back, she suggests he sleep in her room since it's empty, leaving him confused by the proposal. Inside the room, she says he helped her a lot and she always wanted to repay him. Yabation replies that he doesn't think this is a good idea. Regardless, she pushes him onto the bed, saying he is the first man to make her feel this way. Leaning over him, she declares he will be hers tonight, while he questions if this is appropriate. Without answering, she kisses him. She asks him not to be shy, admitting she really likes him. Outside, the night passes silently. In bed, Zhang Xiaohua tells Yabation that he is her first man. A black car is parked in front of a large brick building. 2 girls comment on how beautiful the car is and how attractive its owner seems. As they walk past, Yabation remarks to his companion that the previous night was quite exhausting. She immediately scolds him, telling him not to talk nonsense. Further ahead, a group of men in suits blocks their way, declaring the area restricted. Yabation stops, wondering what's going on. Just then, a young man with a shaved head approaches, noting that Baiken has finally arrived. Yabation addresses him as Lin He and asks why the area is restricted, to which Lin He replies that it's a long story. Lin He then explains that they interrogated a young man last night and gathered some crucial information. 10 days prior, this same young man had been cornered by thugs demanding money, but he insisted he had none. One of them grabbed him by the neck, questioning if he was truly broke. Meanwhile, another raised a stick, threatening to teach him a lesson. After that, the attackers left, warning him not to forget his money next time. Alone, the young man got up, grumbling that he didn't deserve any of this and that the world was unfair. Suddenly, his foot slipped on a manhole cover and he tumbled into the hole. He explains that after falling into the manhole, the young man gained a strange power, leading them to suspect something hidden beneath the school. Hearing this, Ye Beichen asks if the restricted area is indeed the manhole, and Lin He confirms. He then adds that the association has assembled 2 teams of cultivators to explore the site. Finding the whole situation interesting, Ye Beichen comments on it, and Lin He asks if he plans to go down and investigate too. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen confirms, asking Zhang Xiaohua to wait for him. She in turn urges him to be careful. Soon after, Ye Beichen turns to Lin He and says they can go. Meanwhile, a group of men gathered around the manhole are informed that the mission is A-level. Lin He approaches with Ye Beichen and greets everyone, apologizing for making them wait. A blonde young man asks who his companion is, and Lin. He introduces Ye Beichen as a new friend interested in the exploration. Then, a red-haired young man questions if he'll be going alone. Ye Beichen confirms he has no team and will descend by himself. Both men warn him that it's an A-level mission, dangerous even for 2 teams combined, and advise him not to go. Without a word, Ye Beichen leaps straight into the hole, declaring that he alone is enough. From above, the others watch in disbelief, wondering if he has a death wish. Without wasting a moment, Lin He tells everyone to hurry up and follow him in. Inside the tunnel, Ye Beichen observes that the underground feels like a completely different world. When the others catch up, they tell him to fall back and stay behind the group. Just then, Lin He shouts a warning, noticing movement ahead. One of the men wonders if it's a group of monsters, while another points out they don't have enough people. Scared, they yell for Ye Beichen to come back, warning him that the monsters won't be gentle. The blonde young man shouts, asking if he's lost his mind. Suddenly, multiple swift cuts appear in the dim light. The ground begins to tremble, and one of the men asks if it's an earthquake. Another team member points ahead, telling the captain to look. Confused, the team leaders simply stare at the scene unfolding before them. Moments later, Ye Beichen steps away, commenting that they were just weak monsters, and he didn't find any clues. The 2 young men question incredulously if those creatures were truly weak, unable to believe he defeated so many by himself. On the ground, a pile of monster bodies lies completely motionless. The other cultivators draw their weapons and glare at Ye Beichen. The blonde young man comments, impressed, that he's very strong, while the red-haired one admits they all underestimated him. Ye Beichen advances with his sword in hand, leaving the monster's body behind. However, something strange catches his attention. Hearing an unusual sound, he turns around and wonders what it was. A shadowy creature emerges, complaining about yet another group of humans, Lin. He realizes, alarmed, that the monsters weren't actually dead. Preparing to fight, Ye Beichen senses that presence is familiar to him. The creature accuses him of killing its hosts and lunges to attack him. Without hesitation, Ye Beichen raises his sword and declares that it's time to settle the score. A dark substance quickly begins to envelop him. Lin He shouts his name as he watches him being dragged away by the darkness. In a panic, he turns to the other young man and questions if this can still be called an A-level mission. The blonde young man exclaims that the situation is way too terrifying. Ye Beichen finds himself completely enveloped by the dark substance. Soon after, the darkness dissipates, and he appears in a totally empty space. Looking around, he asks himself where he is. A beam of light cuts through the dark environment towards him. Surprised, Ye Beichen reacts to the phenomenon. Suddenly, a figure wearing traditional robes appears and questions what this place is. Shadowy figures advance towards the newcomer. At the same time, several humanoid creatures emerge from the darkness. Ye Beichen begins to suspect this might be the creature's spiritual world. The entities advance directly towards him. With a wide movement, he delivers a circular strike with his sword. The attack hits all the creatures at once. After that, Ye Beichen remains standing in the center of the void. Back in the tunnel, he realizes he was dragged into the enemy's spiritual world. In a low voice, he comments that he almost died in there. Ahead, he sees the shadowy creature attacking the other men and throwing one of them far away. The red-haired young man runs towards the monster through the tunnel. Then, he delivers a powerful blow with his sword. The creature glares at him, calling him insolent for overestimating his own strength. With ease, it absorbs the attack with one hand. Soon after, it launches the energy back at the attacker. The impact hits the young man squarely in the chest. Watching the scene, Lin. He admits that the enemy is just too strong. The other team members retreat, acknowledging they have no chance of winning. The creature turns to them and calls them mere ants. Then, it charges forward, yelling that everyone will die. At that instant, Ye Beichen appears in front of the group and blocks the attack. With precision, he defends against the multiple projectiles using his sword. Surprised, Lin He calls his name upon seeing him again. The creature questions how he managed to destroy its spiritual core. In disbelief, it refuses to accept that it's even possible. Ye Beichen states he doesn't know exactly what kind of monster it is. Still, he declares that today the score will be settled. Pointing his sword, he lunges into the attack. The strike hits the creature directly. Wounded, it accuses him of overestimating his own strength. Even so, it charges again, screaming for him to die. Ye Beichen responds with another precise strike from his sword. Advancing without hesitation, he apologizes to the creature. Raising his blade for the final blow, he hears the monster curse him. At that moment, Ye Beichen recognizes his opponent and exclaims that he now understands who it is. Confused, the creature recoils and questions what's happening. With a single decisive strike, Ye Beichen cuts the monster's body into several pieces. As the remains begin to crumble, he laments not having left anything behind to investigate last time. Still, he manages to grab a fragment of the creature and declares that, this time, he won't let anything get away. Next, Ye Beichen throws the fragment upwards, and it's immediately pulled into the gourd. Holding the object, he confirms the job is done. Lin, he remarks that if it weren't for Ye Beichen, they would all have been defeated. In response, Ye Beichen tells him to remember to seal the manhole when they leave, and Lin, he agrees. Soon after, Ye Beichen says goodbye, leaves the rest of the work to them, and jumps out of the tunnel. On the surface, Jiang Xiaohua wonders why he still hasn't appeared after so long. Suddenly, Ye Beichen leaps out of the manhole and announces he's back. She runs towards him, saying he's finally out, while he explains that it was dangerous underground, but he's sorted everything. Then, he takes her hand and says he'll take her to the apartment. As they walk, a paper talisman flies towards them. The object stops right in front of him, bringing bad news from Donghai. Ye Beichen holds the talisman and wonders why that old man decided to get in touch. Jiang Xiaohua asks if there are more problems, and he confirms it's something serious. Having no other choice, Ye Beichen states he'll meet him tonight and leaps into the sky. At an amusement park, Ye Beichen stands on a carousel horse. He announces his arrival and orders the other party to appear. A man in dark robes quickly emerges, and Ye Beichen remarks that he was fast. The newcomer asks why he's always on the run and if he has a plan. Ye Beichen shows the gourd, says he just captured a valuable spirit, and asks what the news is. The man explains he's tracking a specific person. According to him, wherever this individual goes, evil spirits appear in their wake. He also reveals that the fugitive is a man with half his face covered by a mask. Because of this, he suspects everything is linked to a mysterious force. Ye Beichen asks why they met at that location. In response, the man reveals that the target is hidden inside the park. Surprised, Ye Beichen questions if something like that is really happening. The man explains he lured him there so they could join forces and capture the fugitive. Hearing this, Ye Beichen understands there's finally a concrete lead. Without hesitation, he declares he won't let the enemy escape. Next, he releases his energy in a wave that spreads across the area. The force hits the fugitive's hiding spot, and he reacts to sensing the presence. Convinced, Ye Beichen states he already knows where he is. Soon after, he and his companion rush towards the indicated spot. Inside a cocoon, the fugitive tries to break free and yells that he's been found. The masked man turns as he senses their approach. Ye Beichen and the man with the mustache catch up to him. The man comments that Ye Beichen really managed to locate him. The fugitive asks if they're tired after chasing him for so long. The man with the mustache questions if he even knows who's hunting him. With disdain, the masked man replies that life is boring and he's just having fun with them. Ye Beichen points at him and demands to know who he is and why he summons monsters. In response, the man says his identity is beyond their comprehension. Then he creates several clones of himself and declares that the chase ends here. The man raises a defensive barrier that blocks all attacks. Soon after, he turns the defense into a counterattack and calls them insolent. The launched projectiles destroy all the clones at once. Ye Beichen manages to block the main attack with his sword. Even so, the force of the impact drags him backwards. The masked man asks where he thinks he's going, calls him naive, as Ye Beichen falls to the ground. Lying on the ground, Ye Beichen raised his hand, declaring he wouldn't be defeated that day. At that moment, a giant hand emerged from the earth, striking the masked man and injuring his arm. Even though he was hurt, the masked man remarked that the situation was getting interesting. Soon after, the man with the mustache summoned another colossal hand and commented on the technique's power. He then launched the attack at the masked man, shouting for him to die. The enemy was completely crushed by the blow. Ye Beichen watched the pool of blood forming and wondered if he was truly dead, as cracks spread across the ground. Suddenly, the man with the mustache yelled for Ye Beichen to be careful. Stone spikes erupted from the ground, making Ye Beichen leap backward. The masked man reappeared from the earth, and both Ye Beichen and the mustached man moved away to escape the eruption. Floating in the air, the masked man commented that the two of them would make interesting sacrifices, but he didn't have much time. The man with the mustache told Ye Beichen that the fugitive held many secrets and needed to be captured. In a threatening tone, the masked man warned them to enjoy their insignificant lives. Ye Beichen raised his sword and prepared to attack. His strike collided directly with the enemy's attack. At the same time, the man with the mustache also launched his technique, and the two powers clashed. A huge explosion engulfed the area. When the smoke dissipated, they realized the enemy had disappeared. The man with the mustache lamented that they had exposed themselves, as this could be used against them. In response, Ye Beichen revealed he had already anticipated this possibility. From a distance, the masked man ordered Ye Beichen to stay on the ground. He revealed that he had subtly placed a talisman on Ye Beichen's back. However, the talisman was now stuck to the fugitive's own back. Ye Beichen's companion commented that he was very clever, and Ye Beichen replied that these were just survival tricks. The man with the mustache urged Ye Beichen, saying they couldn't let him escape. Calmly, Ye Beichen told him not to rush. According to Ye Beichen, once the fugitive was exhausted, their combined strength would ensure his capture. Following this, the man with the mustache said goodbye, stating he would go prepare and ask to be alerted. Ye Beichen also bid farewell, calling him a cunning old fox. Later, Ye Beichen returned home, expecting Jiang Xiaohua to have already left. To his surprise, she appeared and said she had been waiting for him for a long time. She then pulled him inside, complaining that she was starving and demanding he cook. Upon entering, Ye Bacon saw a table full of food and asked why she had prepared such a large feast. Smiling, she poured him a glass of wine and said it was her treat, insisting that he drink. Without hesitation, he emptied the glass in one go. Holding the glass, he commented that the drink was delicious. Suddenly, he lost his strength and fell unconscious onto the table. Zhang Xiaohua approached and wondered if he had already passed out. She helped him up, commenting that he really couldn't handle his liquor. The next morning, Ye Bacon woke up in his bed, surprised to find Zhang Xiaohua lying on top of him. Sitting up, he asked what was happening, and when she had gotten into bed with him, she rose, questioned what the problem was, and moved closer to him. Finally, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Zhang Xiaohua told Ye Bacon there was no need to be ashamed, since they had already lived together as husband and wife. Then she stood up and said she was going down to make breakfast. Before she could leave, he asked her to wait, explaining that they would go out to eat together instead. As she got near the door, she asked what he was looking at, and he calmly replied that she would understand soon enough. She just commented that he had always been a very busy man. Alone in the room, Ye Bacon sat down to meditate. His memory of the previous day was incomplete, and this was his chance to clarify it. With an outstretched hand, he commanded the vision to open. In a deserted location, a masked man was feeding several animals, stating that they would all have a grand feast. The place was revealed to be a vast complex of traditional buildings. Back in the room, Ye Bacon wondered if the masked man truly was a state official. Holding a talisman, he confirmed that the location had been discovered. Standing near the window, he mused that he hadn't even contacted his partner yet. The talisman then flew towards the large complex of buildings. On the rooftop of the location, the man with the mustache informed Ye Bacon that their target from the previous night was right there, which surprised Ye Bacon. To prevent any escape, he decided to use a formation and threw 4 flags towards the courtyard. The flags planted themselves in the ground, completely surrounding the area. The man with the mustache commented that the Qingyun Gate hid countless valuable treasures. He then announced that the formation was ready and leaped from the rooftop, with Ye Bacon close behind. Inside the building, the masked man continued feeding the animals until he noticed something strange. Turning towards the door, he recognized the presence of the two. Ye Bacon and his partner stormed into the room at high speed. The masked man exclaimed, "It really is them." He commented that since their fight yesterday had no conclusion, they had come right to his doorstep. He then summoned the image of an enormous tiger and warned that this time he would no longer hold back. The man with the mustache observed that their enemy had grown stronger, but Ye Bacon affirmed that he could still handle him. Advancing swiftly, the young man sliced the creature in half with his sword. Immediately after, the man with the mustache launched his own attack, yelling for the enemy to die. An energy projectile shot directly towards their adversary. Suddenly, the masked man appeared behind him, asking about his true identity. A column of energy burst from the ground as he screamed for both of them to die. The explosion destroyed the building's roof and hurled the